Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Mastermind Luffy ate Mizu Mizu no My Devil Fruit and Master all Haki. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Wow, what a great story, Shanks. Take me on your next adventure, I want to be a pirate too, exclaimed the little raven-haired boy. Haha, you're still a kid, Luffy, besides you're probably not strong enough. I am strong, my punches are like pistols, yelled the little Luffy while punching the air. Then, put your money where your mouth is, Luffy. Punch me as hard as you can in my face. If you manage to move me from my spot, I will think about bringing you on my next adventure, said Shanks while showing Luffy his cheek. Alright, here goes. Luffy wound up his fist and concentrated all his energy into his fist subconsciously and hit Shanks with all he got, resulting in Shanks flying through the wall and onto the street. Shanks' crew jaw dropped and stared at Luffy awestruck. Shanks and his crew realized what Luffy had done. Luffy managed to use Haki. This left the red-haired pirate speechless. The best reaction of all was Luffy's face. He was horror-struck and kept switching glances between his fist and the hole in the wall which was caused by him. The only words he could muster out were, "Whoa." Shanks got up after recovering from the surprise attack and walked to Luffy. Shanks walked up to Luffy and just casually sat down beside him. Before he got back to eating, he just casually asked this. "Nice punch, where'd you learn to do that?" Still shocked, Luffy finally gained his composure and answered Shanks with a rather surprising answer. "I don't know. I think I just focused my energy and emotions into my fist and just punched you," said Luffy with a stuttering voice. Shanks immediately realized that what Luffy had used was the Busashoku Haki. Shanks was about to say something but was cut off by the bar doors slamming open, revealing a group of men in rags. "So these are the group of pirates I've been hearing about in town. They look like nothing but a bunch of pansies," said the apparent leader of the group of men. "What can I get for you today?" Makino asked, not seeming to be intimidated by the men. "We are bandits. We didn't come here to trash your bar. All we want are about 10 barrels of sake. Please." "Well, I'm sorry, but it looks like me and my crew have drunk this bar dry. I still have this bottle of rum that hasn't been opened if you would like it," said Shanks while offering the bottle to the bandit. The bandit looked at Shanks with a dirty look. He was not very pleased to hear that this group of low-life pirates had taken the sake that they wanted. The bandit reached for the bottle that Shanks offered him, and instead of taking it he smashed it, which spilled all over Shanks and the floor. "I am a wanted man worth 8 million, Billy, don't take me lightly." Shanks' emotion was covered by his eyes. A few seconds had gone by and by this time everyone was waiting for his reaction. After a few seconds which felt like hours, Shanks replied, "Well, look what you've done. Now the floor is wet. Sorry about that, Makino." Luffy was clearly upset and was shaking angrily at his friend being mistreated. Trying not to blurt anything out, he was clenching his teeth and just giving the meanest stare he could to the bandit, which was oddly cute coming from the little boy. The bandit drew his sword and slashed at the counter, shattering plates and sending Shanks to the floor. At this point, Luffy was about to snap and attack the bandit with every fiber of his being but was unable to as the bandit already left. Luffy was now focused on the red-haired captain lying on the ground with his straw hat covering his eyes. Just when Luffy was about to say something, Shanks snickered and then the whole bar burst into a laughing fit. Luffy's mind just snapped and yelled at the crew. Luffy was unaware of the power he had just released and looked up to the crew, somewhere on the ground unconscious, and the others were sweating violently. However, most of the crew seemed unfazed. The mood became all tense. However, completely oblivious to what he did, Luffy continued yelling at the crew. "That is so uncool. No matter how many there are, you shouldn't be afraid of them and fight back. Otherwise you can't call yourselves pirates. Luffy, he just spilt some booze on me. It's nothing to get worked up over. But more importantly, do you realize what you just did?" Luffy looked around the room and noticed the unconscious and sweaty bodies around the bar. He was in complete shock after hearing that he had done that. "Luffy, that was the Heishoku Haki. Only 1 in a million people are said to have that power." "Well, Suge, haha, but you're still a kid so you won't know how to control that power, and it's not like you could if you were an adult anyways," said Shanks jokingly to Luffy. "Shut up." Luffy punched Shanks again with the same force as the last punch. While Shanks was still distracted, Luffy eyed a small box with an odd-looking fruit in it. Being as hungry as he was, he didn't care that it tasted bitter and downed the whole fruit. While Shanks was getting up, he caught Luffy swallowing the fruit in the corner of his eye and rushed over there immediately. "Luffy, spit that out right now." Shanks swung his hand to Luffy's back in order to force it out of him, but it hit water instead. After he gained his composure, Shanks quickly realized what power that fruit had. Luffy was as confused as Shanks and was equally scared. "Luffy, you just ate the Mizu Mizu no Mai. It's also known as one of the devil fruits. You can now control water and your body can turn into water at will. However, I am not sure if you have lost your ability to swim since your body is made of water to begin with. Suge, this just means I became stronger. Shehei." Baka, you still haven't learned to control your power yet. For all you know, you could be weaker now. What? Shit, you idiot. The next day, Vakino is running around town trying to find the mayor. Luffy had gotten into a fight with the bandits from yesterday because he was defending Shanks' honor. The bandits had insulted Shanks when he wasn't even there to defend himself. So Luffy stood up for him and told the bandits to take back what they said. Mayor, come quick. With Luffy. Bastard, I'll show you not to make fun of Shanks, Luffy exclaimed while having a foot pressed onto his face. Oh, and how are you going to do that, kid? You can barely defend yourself, let alone kick my ass. Shut up. My punches are stronger than a pistol. I can kick your ass any day. Oh, really? Tell you what, kid, I'll let you have on free punch. The bandit leader was showing his cheek to Luffy while releasing the weight from his foot to free Luffy. Great, you're going to regret ever fighting me. Yeah, okay, like I'd regret fighting. Why? But he was cut off by a Haki-infused punch from Luffy and was sent flying back a couple dozen feet. After he recovered from the punch, he walked up to Luffy and gave him a death glare. Luffy turned stiff, realizing the situation he was in. He was thinking the same thing over and over again. I am going to die. The bandit got closer and closer, and all Luffy could think of was his own weakness. How Luffy could not even defend his friend's honor. How he couldn't even beat one of them. He could only think of how he had failed. But when the bandit was about to strike Luffy with his sword, he was blocked by Shanks' saber and a glare that could stop a weak heart. No one hurts my friends and gets away with it. The moment Shanks uttered those words, Ben Beckman clobbered all the bandits and left the leader for his captain. However, this was to be a mistake. The moment Ben stopped his assault, the bandit leader grabbed Luffy and threw a smoke bomb down and escaped. Crap. He took Luffy. What are we going to do? Shanks exclaimed, seeming utterly surprised. With Haguma. Ha, stupid kid. Let's see how you like becoming a Sea King snack. Your pirate friends won't be able to find us, so you won't get safe. Let me go, you stupid smelly bandit. As Haguma dropped Luffy, a Sea King the size of a ship appeared. Haguma gave out a terrifying scream before being eaten by the monster. However, the most surprising event was that Luffy was standing on the water. This was the result of his new devil fruit power. He had complete control over water, which meant he didn't face the handicap of other devil users. On top of that, Luffy could control the sea and use all its power if he mastered his abilities to such an extent. Luffy was zoned out, staring at the water beneath him. He then remembered the huge Sea King. It was now staring at him with hungry eyes. Luffy was extremely scared and freaked out. He unconsciously used his devil fruit powers, making the water beneath the Sea King to hit it in the face at extreme speed caused the Sea King to be knocked back, dazing it for about a minute. This gave Luffy enough time to run back to shore where he last saw Shanks. With Shanks, okay, half of you guys go to check the south and east side of town. The other half come with me and we'll check the north, west, and the harbor. Shanks was giving orders on Luffy's search and rescue. Hey boss, what is that thing coming across the water? Said Lucky Roo while pointing out to sea. Huh, that looks like a boy. Wait a minute. That's Luffy. He's running on the water. Shanks just looked at the boy with wide eyes. He had been surprised so many times the past few days that he would believe if someone told him they built a device that can do math for them. This boy had amazed him. After staring at Luffy for several seconds, he saw a dark shadowy figure right behind Luffy getting bigger and bigger. He then quickly realized it was a Sea King trying to make a snack out of his little friend. Immediately Shanks drew his sword and went to strike down the Sea King. In a motion that was unnoticeable by the eye, he cut the Sea King's mouth. The Sea King fainted from shock and the fact that Shanks also realized a wave of Heishoku Haki which made the Sea King flee in terror like a crying newborn before being knocked out. I almost thought I'd lost you there. You're really something, Luffy, doing things most people couldn't even hope of doing. Luffy was crying hysterically while in Shanks' embrace and was extremely glad to be alive and well. Later that evening, Shanks and his crew were getting ready to leave, stocking up on supplies, food, and water for their return trip to the Grand Line. Luffy was saying his last goodbyes to his friends. Hey Shanks, I've decided not to ask to come on adventures with you anymore. I'm going to make my own crew and go out to sea myself, exclaimed the little boy with a happy expression. Shanks stuck his tongue out and jokingly said, like I'd take you anyways. You're still too weak and still a kid. Luffy was now angry and just yelled, I'll become stronger than you. I'll find my own crew that's better than yours. And I'll find the greatest treasure in the world and become Pirate King. Oh, then I guess you'll need this to help you, Shanks said while putting his most treasured straw hat onto Luffy's head. Luffy was now crying under the shadow of the straw hat. He didn't want Shanks to go. He was one of the only friends he had and there would always be a void in his heart until they reunited. Well, I've been thinking about this for quite a while now. If you are going to become the Pirate King, I guess you will need special training, and who a better guy to train you than your old pal Shanks? Heh. Luffy was speechless. He was so overjoyed with happiness that he jumped up and hugged Shanks without a second thought. He cried tears of joy into his chest and was excited about this special training. He was totally ready for what Shanks had in store for him. I'll stay in Fuchsia village for 10 years and train you. However, I will only teach you how to control your haki and swordsmanship. After all, every king needs to know how to handle a sword. But as for your devil fruit power, you will need to learn to control it yourself, since I have no idea how to control devil fruit powers since I have none. Got that, Luffy? Luffy exclaimed. Luffy was overjoyed that his friend was staying for another 10 years. But also, he was happy that he was going to get stronger and be one step closer to his ultimate dream, becoming the Pirate King. He knew this was the start of something big. On a ship somewhere in East Blue. It was a beautiful day on the sea. There were barely any clouds, the sea was calm and the temperature was mild. However, there was an unknown danger lurking around the ship. The ship was a civilian cruise ship. It was about the size of a small marine ship with 3 sails and a large deck. It was a ship that hosted balls and parties for various occasions. The perfect target for looting and plundering. Just as the passenger ship was at the peak of its party, a ship with a skull and crossbones with a heart in the middle as its Jolly Roger was spotted coming closer to the passenger vessel. The ship was going to be under attack by pirates at any second. The captain of the vessel ordered everyone to the lifeboats and to not panic. A certain woman in the crowd took this as an opportunity to gain some quick money. While all the pirates would be busy raiding the ship, she would go over to the pirate ship and steal all their treasure. She gave a devious little smile at the thought of all that treasure just waiting for her to come and take it. She quickly changed into something to fit her persona, a thief. She ziplined down the passenger ship onto the smaller pirate ship. After sneaking around and making sure no one was on board, she was at the door that leads to the storage room where all the treasure was probably kept. Just as she was about to open the door, a pirate came out and she gave a cute little yelp and stepped back in surprise. The pirate looked surprised as she did. He began looking up and down the girl, trying to recall if he had seen her before. I don't remember seeing you here before, said the pirate as he was inspecting the orange-haired woman. Taking advantage of his distracted state, she quickly kicked him in the you-know-whats and the pirate was down for the count. She quickly ran past the unconscious body down to the storage room. What she saw gave her an expression of disappointment and excitement. She saw a pile of treasure of decent size. But much to her disappointment, it was not the best quality of treasure. However, not denying the free money, she was beaming with joy as she quickly ran to grab a bag and stuff the treasure inside. Meanwhile, on the passenger ship, a boy about the age of 13 walked into a room and said, Hello, is anyone here? Phew, thank God I don't have to fight anyone. The boy was short and scrawny. He had large glasses that covered his eyes and pink hair. He was wearing a white shirt with blue pants similar to that of a marine uniform. The boy looked around and searched for some supplies he could take. That boy, surprisingly enough, was part of Alvida's crew, the crew that is raiding the passenger vessel. Although if he wanted to be on the crew or not was yet to be decided. He continued looking around and then he eyed a barrel and tried lifting it up with no success. So being intelligent enough, he tipped it over and started rolling it away out the door and down the corridor. As he was about to exit onto the deck, he was stopped by a group of pirates. Hey Koby, what are you doing here? Don't tell me you were hiding from the fight, the big pirate said while freaking out the teenager. And no, it's not what you think. I was just getting this wine barrel because I thought we could use it since we are low on alcohol. Haha. The little boy was as pale as milk and was about to piss himself from nervousness. Good idea. Let's have some. I'm thirsty anyways. And no way. If Alvida-sama finds out, she would kill all of us. Well, she isn't going to find out if you don't tell her, right, Koby? The pirate was holding a sword close to Koby's neck, threatening him. Why, you're right. Okay, you guys open it up. I'm gonna smash open this barrel. Ready? The pirate raised his fist into the air and then smashed the barrel, revealing nothing but a puddle of water. This isn't wine, Koby. This is just a stupid puddle of water. The pirate was about to hit Koby in the face for his mistake, but was interrupted when someone said, I wouldn't call myself stupid. The pirate forgot about Koby momentarily and looked around to find who had spoken those words. He was confused for several moments, then decided to look down at the puddle because that was the only place he hadn't looked. His expression was priceless. He looked at the puddle wide-eyed with his jaw dropped to the floor. What he saw was a face in the puddle smiling at him with a wide grin. What the fuck is that? Exclaimed the group of pirates, all looking wide-eyed at the puddle. There was a smiling face with a grin that showed a big set of white teeth. Black eyes looked at them with their carefree expression. The puddle suddenly started churning and it turned into a boy around the age of 17. He looked scrawny for his age. He wore a tattered old straw hat, a red cardigan that showed off his toned chest and abs, blue shorts that went down to his knees with a yellow sash tied around his waist, all while rocking sandals. His most noticeable feature was a small scar under his left eye and the long katana tied to his left hip. But what really gave him the intimidating look was the long cloak on his back going down from his neck to his ankles. It was a white cloak with a hood which was probably meant for hiding purposes. There were brown spots covering the body of the cloak with a fuzzy lining on the bottom. This gave the young boy an intimidating look that could even frighten a sea king. The men just stared at the boy with unblinking wide eyes. They looked like they were about to piss themselves from the fact that they had just seen a boy appear out of a small puddle, and the fact that that boy looked extremely intimidating and gave off an aura that could knock a weak-minded person into a coma and turn them into a vegetable. That was a nice nap. I'm hungry. I wonder where I can get some food. The 17-year-old was looking around for some food before he was interrupted by the pirates. Hey, don't just ignore us. Who are you? The pirates exclaimed while holding out their swords. I'm Luffy. Okay, prepare to. Hey, I'm hungry. Do you have any food? Don't just ignore us. The pirates yelled at the boy who was asking Koby for food. Okay, kid, that's the last straw. You're going to die. The two pirates attacked Luffy while his back was turned. As they were about to stab him, Luffy just grinned and dodged both of the attacks effortlessly. As the pirates stumbled after losing their balance from the disappearing boy, Luffy reached for his katana and with a movement that couldn't be seen by a normal person he cut the pirates' swords in half, leaving them defenseless. After seeing his small display of skill, the pirates began freaking out and stumbled across the corridor, stepping on each other before running away as fast as they could away from the intimidating boy. Man, what's their problem? Attacking someone right after their nap. Koby was the only one didn't run away and just stared at the 17-year-old with a look of admiration. Koby was both amazed and terrified of the older boy. Koby was trying to gain his composure and managed to muster out a question. Who are you? Asked the little pink-haired boy. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Pleased to meet you, he said while holding his hand out for a handshake. And nice to meet you, Luffy. I'm Koby, said the little boy nervously, trying to make his words audible. Hey, Koby, say, you wouldn't know where I could get something to eat, would you? Luffy asked while holding his hand to his stomach, making the point that he is hungry. I guess there could be some food in the storage. Follow me. Cool. Thanks, Koby, said the happy Luffy. They walked for about a minute until they reached a dark room with an opening in the middle. Luffy walked over and peeked over the edge. His mouth then started pouring with drool once he saw all the food that was just sitting there, waiting to be eaten. He then jumped down and opened a barrel revealing some fruit and began happily biting the fruit. He looked over to see a nervous Koby and remembered that he was with those pirates and that they were about to hit him. He then began asking, Hey Koby, why were you with those pirates? Koby's head was flushed red from embarrassment. Koby was recalling how he ended up on the pirate ship to begin with, guessing that Luffy was a trustworthy guy, seeming as how he had that much power but didn't attack Koby. He decided that he could tell him. Well, I was out fishing, then I fell asleep. When I woke up I didn't know where I was, but I saw a boat nearby. So I rowed over to it and I didn't realize it was a pirate ship. They captured me and forced me to be their nakama, and I've been stuck here for 3 years ever since. Koby finished with a sigh of angst. Luffy just stared at Koby with unblinking eyes. It was awkwardly silent for a couple seconds before Luffy burst into a hysterical laughter. He was laughing so hard that tears were falling from his eyes. Koby didn't take it too lightly and began blushing furiously from embarrassment. While laughing, Luffy managed to say a couple words which only made Koby blush even more. You're an idiot, he said jokingly, and his laughter started to die down. Haven't you ever thought of trying to escape? I have, but the thought of being caught trying to escape from Alvida Sama stops me from trying every time. There was another long awkward moment of silence between the two. After a few seconds, Luffy burst into laughter again because of how cowardly Koby is. The thing Luffy said next shocked Koby, and if one could die from embarrassment, then Koby would surely be dead. You're a coward. I don't like you, Luffy said with a giant grin while laughing his ass off. Koby didn't say anything for a few moments and then asked a question which turned the atmosphere into a serious one. Well, when you were fighting those pirates, I bet you were scared too, Koby exclaimed at Luffy. There is no way I'd be scared by a couple of weaklings like those, and besides, if they were strong then I would not be scared of dying anyways. As long as I'm fighting for my dream, I don't mind dying. Luffy looked at Koby with a serious look that told Koby that Luffy was not bullshitting him. Koby was wondering what his dream was, so he asked him, So what's your dream, Luffy? Luffy took off his hat and looked at the hat with a proud expression and simply answered, I promise the person who gave me this hat that I will become a great pirate king. After hearing those words, Koby looked at Luffy with an angry expression. He couldn't understand why a person such as him would want to become a pirate. Sure, he was nice and all, but a pirate is still a pirate. Right? How could you want to be a pirate? They are all evil and hurt innocent people wherever they go. That is ignorance, kid. The world is a lot larger than you know. Just like there are bad pirates, there can also be bad marines and vice versa. Just because someone says they are a pirate doesn't automatically make them a bad person. Think before you speak next time. Koby was speechless. He didn't think that Luffy could be this wise. For the 30 minutes he had known Luffy, he thought that he was one of those people who act and speak on instincts alone and nothing else. However, Luffy had just proven him wrong and gave him a whole new perspective on how he should approach things. He was even gaining hope for his own dream. Without thinking, Koby began asking Luffy if he could accomplish his dream as well. Hey Luffy, you think I could accomplish my dream if I try and am prepared to risk my life? Koby asked with a quiet voice. I know you can do it, Koby. Sheh. Anyways, what's your dream? Luffy asked casually. I want to become a Marine, Koby said with words full of pride. A Marine? Luffy asked to confirm what he had heard. Yeah, it's always been my dream to catch bad people and protect society. That's cool. If you want, I could help you accomplish your dream of becoming a Marine. Really, Luffy? That would be great. But first we would have to get away from Alvida. Just as he uttered those words, he remembered that oversized woman. She was ruthless and unforgiving. She would kill anyone who said she wasn't beautiful. Talk about self-centered. But Koby had finally gained this massive hope of escaping from Alvida thanks to his new friend, Luffy. Just as he remembered his strength, he recalled him transforming from a puddle of water to a 17-year-old boy. He forgot about that whole incident with the pirates. Hey Luffy, how'd you do that trick with the water back with those pirates? Koby asked curiously, wanting to know his secret. You mean this? Luffy turned his arm into water and freaked Koby out. I ate the Mizu Mizu no Mai. It's one of the devil fruits. I can control water and turn my body into water at my command, said Luffy, not thinking the power was a big deal. What? You ate one of the legendary devil fruits? Aren't worried about not being able to swim? Koby asked, completely shocked that his new friend had such a terrifying power. Oh well, my teacher told me when I was training that normal devil fruit users would fall like a hammer in water. But he stated that since I have complete control over water, I can swim faster than anything in the ocean, even fishmen. I can also breathe underwater too. He told me that this devil fruit could possibly be the most powerful one in the world. How lucky am I? Koby just nodded at this statement. It seemed quite possible that having a devil fruit that can turn your body into water can nullify the handicaps the other devil fruit users face, which could mean that the devil fruit he ate was probably the strongest. After stuffing his face for about 40 minutes, Luffy finally decided that he should get going. Koby directed him to the deck where he saw it was empty. But then all the pirates came storming out of their ship with what looked to be a woman the size of an elephant. Luffy immediately thought that this was the woman that enslaved Koby to the crew for 3 years. Koby, who is the prettiest lady of them all? Alvida asked while looking angrily at Koby for abandoning his post. Luffy was suspecting that Koby would answer the way Alvida wanted to answer. Oh, but of course, it's you, Miss Alvida-sama. You are the most beautiful person on the planet, or something like that, Luffy thought. What Koby said next surprised Luffy almost as much as it made him laugh his ass off at what Koby said. Not you. You are the sperm your mother should have swallowed. You fat crazy bitch. What Koby said was so unlike him, but he probably had that built up inside of him for these past 3 years. Luffy couldn't take it anymore and was crying from all the laughing he had done. Alvida was boiling with rage and several veins had popped up on her head from stress. She ordered her men to begin her assault on Koby and Luffy. Koby was completely terrified, but Luffy just looked at them, looking completely unfazed by the large group of men coming at him. He decided he might as well milk all the fun out of this battle, so he closed his eyes and put his hands behind his back. Koby just looked at Luffy with puzzled eyes and was about to ask Luffy what he was doing before being interrupted by him. Koby, just hide behind a barrel or something. I got this, Luffy said while grinning at the frightened pink-haired boy. Koby nodded and ran for the nearest barrel to hide behind while poking his head out to watch the fight. Luffy was just standing there with his eyes closed and smiling a large carefree grin. As the pirates got to him, they started swinging their swords around, but only to be hitting air. Luffy was dodging all the attacks with no effort at all. This was all thanks to his Kenbenshoku Haki, which allowed him to predict the movements and emotions of everything around him. After Luffy was done toying around with the pirates, they were all exhausted from their relentless assault while Luffy just stared at them with a bored expression. Oh, come on, you little pansies. Are you tired from just swinging your swords around for 5 minutes? I thought you were supposed to be killing me, Luffy said while his eyes were still closed, because having them open would be too boring. The pirates got madder at him and began their assault again, but this time with more fury. Luffy took out his katana and just waited with this katana out. The pirates started attacking Luffy. This time the pirates were attacking with about 3 times as much precision and speed as before. Even still, Luffy was standing there blocking all their attacks with his eyes closed and a blank expression. People watching the fight could only see Luffy's sword moving around at extreme speeds and in perfect grace, knocking away the attacks coming to him. Luffy was now bored of playing around with them, so he decided to finish them off. So when he found openings, he just smacked each of them with the back of his katana, knocking them out. He did this in one swift motion and all of them were knocked out on the ground crying uncle. Luffy just gave a sigh that his fun just ended and sheathed his katana. Alvida was shocked to see her crew defeated so easily, by a kid no less. At this point she was fuming with rage and ready to beat the daylights out of the boy. Alvida jumped over to Luffy with a demonic aura that Luffy was unfazed by. Without a second thought, Alvida took a swing at Luffy's head, only to look wide-eyed as it went through him as he turned to water. What are you? Alvida asked, completely spooked by what had just happened. I'm a water man. I ate the Mizu Mizu no Mai, Luffy demonstrated by turning his arm into water. So the devil fruits are not just a legend, they do exist, Alvida boldly stated after she regained her composure. Nonetheless, I will still beat you, senseless boy, considering you couldn't hit me and that your nakama all got their asses handed to them while I was fighting with my eyes closed. I'd say you're wrong, Luffy said while chuckling. Stupid brat. Alvida took another swing at Luffy, only for it to be stopped by his hand. Luffy wound up for a punch and hit Alvida straight in the stomach with a Haki-infused punch and sent her flying for a mile into the ocean. Luffy just casually put his hat back on his head before grinning and heading over to Koby. Koby just looked at Luffy with wide eyes and a jaw that hit the floor. He didn't know that his newfound friend was this strong. So Koby, I think we should get out of here. There are some marine ships over there and I don't think they feel like talking. Luffy was pointed with this thumb behind over his shoulder to 3 marine ships aiming at the pirate ship and the passenger vessel. So let's go. With that being said, Luffy ran over to the nearest lifeboat and motioned Koby to him. Oh okay Luffy-san, since it's with you I'll know I'll be safe. That's the spirit, Koby, now jump on board. Koby jumped on and they released the ropes, suspending it into the air as the boat dropped 40 feet, crashing into the water. As the boat crashed into the water, it surprised a certain orange-haired girl that was securing the gold to her little boat. She let out a small yelp as she looked at the person who caused it. Their eyes met and time seemed to have stopped for a couple seconds before everything went back to normal. However, the girl didn't notice a cannonball coming towards her. When she did notice, however, it was about 30 feet from hitting her directly. Luffy noticed this moments before the cannon was even fired thanks to his Haki and was waiting for the cannonball to come closer so he could cut it. As the cannonball was closing in on the girl, he jumped onto her boat with his back facing her. Luffy effortlessly cut the cannonball in 2 and sent the pieces back flying at the ships. One piece smashing through 2 ships and causing them to sink, and the other completely obliterated the remaining ship. Marines firing at a defenseless girl, I hardly call that fair, Luffy said with his back still facing the girl. The orange-haired girl just looked at the person standing in front of her and then the wreckage of the 3 massive marine ships. Did he just destroy 3 marine ships without even trying? She thought. She just looked at the back of the boy standing in front of her, his cloak moving with the wind, his broad shoulders making him look more intimidating, his raven hair all messy, the straw hat dangling from his neck with his massive 5 feet katana in his hand. She kept staring at him admiringly until she remembered the situation she was just in. Thanks for saving me just then, she managed to muster out. Luffy slowly turned around and gave a heartwarming smile to the girl. He looked at her and stared right into her eyes. He was just staring at them, lost in their gaze. He managed to gain back his senses and replied, "Oh, no problem, you should be more careful next time," he said while smiling at her again. This caused the orange-haired girl to blush from both embarrassment and thinking that the boy who had just saved her was cute. She simply nodded and he smiled yet again, which made her heart flutter. He walked to his boat, which was right beside hers, and jumped on board. "Well, I'll see you later, bye," he said while walking to sit down in his boat and lowered the sail. She managed to wave at the boy as she was still staring at him, still amazed at his strength. "Get yourself together. You have to stay focused on your goal, remember." She mentally slapped herself as she finished securing her treasure and began sailing off. After a few minutes she was prepared and lowered her sail and began sailing off. "Back with Luffy. Man, that was fun," said Luffy as he was lying down on the boat with Koby opposite to him. He was thinking about his crew. He really wanted strong people that were also cool. Just as he was thinking about that, he remembered something Alvida mentioned during his fight. "Wait a minute, you're not bounty hunter Zoro," is what Alvida had said. Luffy was thinking, if he was this well known and was a pirate hunter, he must be really strong. Luffy grinned at this and decided he wanted him as a crewmate. "Hey Koby, what do you know about this bounty hunter Zoro?" Luffy asked, hoping to get more information. "He's a beast that can take down any pirates in his path. He is the most feared bounty hunter in the East Blue," exclaimed Koby, surprised at Luffy's question. "Gosh, he sounds pretty strong. I decided that he's gonna be my first crewmate." "Shihei," exclaimed Luffy with a wide grin, happy that he's found his first crewmate. "What? You can't be serious. He's a monster. He's not going to work under anybody," exclaimed Koby, completely shocked with Luffy's statement. "Don't worry, Koby. Zoro is probably a nice guy. He probably just acts like a monster to gain a reputation," said Luffy, utterly confident that Zoro is going to be like how he expects him to be. Koby didn't reply because he knew that Luffy wouldn't change his mind now. He just simply replied with a question. "So how are you going to find him?" "We're lost." Luffy just dunked his hand into the water and closed his eyes while concentrating. He then took his hand out and smiled at Koby. "There is an island about a mile that way from here. We could stock up and ask for directions there. Maybe there is a marine base and you could join them." "Shihei," Luffy said to Koby, knowing that that was his dream. Koby smiled and nodded while adjusting the sail and rudder, pointing them to that direction. Luffy did something that surprised Koby. With a quick motion of Luffy's hand he formed a fast current and they were rocketing towards the island at about 100 miles per hour. Koby was holding onto the boat for dear life while Luffy was just laughing like a maniac. Soon they reached the island and docked on shore. Luffy and Koby were strolling around town when Luffy asked Koby, "Hey, do you think these guys have heard of Zoro?" Everyone in the area looked shocked and just gave Luffy and Koby looks of surprise and terror. "I guess that's a yes," Luffy said while grinning at the town's shenanigans. I heard this town has a marine base under the command of Captain Morgan." Again, the town had the same reaction as when Luffy mentioned Zoro's name. "That's odd. I could understand them being scared of Zoro, but why a marine captain?" Koby said, looking genuinely confused. "Remember, Koby, like I said before, just like there are bad pirates, there are bad marine. There is a possibility that Captain Morgan is an evil man but flying under the marine flag," Luffy said wisely. Koby just nodded and they continued walking until they came up to a huge wall. On the other side of the wall was a giant marine base that took up 2/3 of the small island. There was a clearing and in the center was a cross with a man hung to it. The man had a drag black-green bandana, a white t-shirt with a green sash around his waist. From the looks of it, he was tied up for quite some time now, as his clothes were dirty and worn out. That's him. The pirate hunter, Roronoa Zoro," said Koby with a fearful voice. He's all tied up, I know. I'll just go over there and release him. He'll definitely be my nakama if I do that." Shihei. Luffy was grinning at the idea of him joining his crew and was excited. "But if you untie him, he'll kill you." Koby was shocked that his wise friend was this carefree and made such rash decisions. "Don't worry, Koby, I'm strong." Luffy gave him a blank stare. He was dead serious in releasing him. But just as Luffy was about to go and release Zoro, a ladder plopped beside them. A little girl climbed up and signaled them to be quiet by putting a finger up to her lips. After looking around to make sure no one was around, she jumped over the wall and ran to Zoro with something in her hand. "Hey kid, what are you doing here? Get lost," Zoro said coldly to the girl. "I thought you were hungry, so I made some onigiri with all my heart," she said while holding the rice balls out with a warm smile. "You better get out of here, kid. If the Marines catch you, then they'll kill you," Zoro said with concern in his voice. Just as he said that, a group of Marines came walking through the gate with a man in a suit walking in the middle. "Scaring little girls now, are we, Zoro?" asked the man in the suit. He walked over to the little girl and just looked at her. "That onigiri looks delicious. I'll just take one," said the man in the suit as he grabbed a rice ball from the girl. After taking a bite and chewing for a few seconds, his eyes widened and he spit the rice ball out of his mouth. He looked at the girl mad and said, "This is full of sugar. Onigiri must have salt, you idiot." "Salt? I'm sorry, I thought it would taste sweeter if I put in sugar." He grabbed the other rice ball out of her hand and started stomping on it, crushing it into a pancake. The little girl was filled with sadness as she saw the rice ball she worked so hard on being crushed into the dirt. "I worked on that with all my heart," the little girl said, tears building up in her eyes. "You know what happens to people who help criminals, don't you? They are punished by death. But since I'm feeling nice today, I'll just throw you out, literally. Throw her out immediately, or my father will hear about this," said the man in the suit. A Marine walked up to her, kneeled down and said, "I'm really sorry about this. Tuck up into a ball when I throw you so you absorb the impact." As he finished, he grabbed her and threw her over the wall, only to be caught by Luffy and be safely put down while Koby checked her for injuries. After the Marines left, Luffy jumped over to the wall and stood about 10 feet away from Zoro. "I'll untie you if you become my nakama," said Luffy, trying to get Zoro to join his crew. "No thanks, I want to show them that I can survive," said Zoro, grinning. "You're a pretty stubborn man, just like me, Shihei." Luffy was delighted to see that the crewmate he had decided on was determined. Zoro eyed the flattened rice ball and his stomach growled. He looked up to Luffy and asked, "Hey, you mind getting that rice ball and putting it in my mouth?" "What, this thing? It's more of a dirt ball now. Just do it." As he said that, Luffy put it in his mouth and began to chew. When he was done, he coughed a little and sighed. That was delicious. Luffy just left him there to meet up with Koby and the girl. Back in town. "What, he really ate the whole thing?" asked the little girl, delighted to hear that. "Yep, he ate even though it was covered in dirt and said it was delicious," said Luffy, grinning. "Is Zoro really a bad guy?" Koby asked, doubting his thoughts from earlier before. "No, Zoro Nichin is a good person. He's only in jail because of us," said the girl as she looked saddened. She then explained to Luffy and Koby how Helmeppo goes around terrorizing the town with using his father, Marine Captain Morgan, as a threat. One day he brought a coyote into town and in her mom's bar. The coyote began trashing her mom's bar as the little girl tried to stop it. The coyote then became enraged and tried attacking the girl, only being thwarted by Zoro, who threw a stool at it. Helmeppo became enraged and tried attacking Zoro, only to be knocked to the ground and have Zoro point his sword to his neck. Helmeppo then threatened to have the little girl and her mom to be executed if he were to continue to attack, unless he is imprisoned for 1 month. If he were to survive that month, he would be set free. Zoro accepted, and it had been 3 weeks since then. Luffy was now eating at the bar when Helmeppo walked in and sat at a table. He declared that he was going to eat here for free, which pissed Luffy off a little. But what really pissed Luffy off was that Helmeppo stated that he was going to execute Zoro tomorrow just because he was bored. This sent Luffy over the edge, and he punched Helmeppo to the wall. "What are you doing? Why did you punch me?" Helmeppo asked while holding his hand to his cheek where he had been punched. "This guy is trash," Luffy exclaimed, trying to hit him again but being held back by Koby. "My father will hear about this," Helmeppo exclaimed with tears building in his eyes. "So what? He'll have you executed. Why don't you do something about it instead of using your father's name to prance around, you little shit?" Luffy was visibly upset and almost felt like using his katana on him but managed to hold back. Helmeppo fled the bar and Luffy knew exactly where he was going. So Luffy ran out the bar and headed to the clearing where Zoro was being held. Luffy ran up to Zoro, who looked worse than yesterday. "Hey, after I release you, you will become my nakama," Luffy said while grinning. "You can't just decide that by yourself," Zoro yelled at Luffy. "Of course I can. I'm your captain," Luffy said with full confidence. Zoro simply sweat dropped and looked at the goofy 17-year-old. "Hey, by the way, you said you used a katana," Luffy stated questioningly. "Yeah, but that bastard Helmeppo took it. I'll go get it for you. And then you'll have to be my nakama shihihi. Luffy smirked evilly as he stormed off to the base. Is that kid really going to attack the base by himself? Zoro thought as he looked at the scrawny kid who was getting farther away. Using his haki, Luffy sensed that Zoro's katana was near the top floor. So he rushed in and ran as fast as he could through the hallways and up the stairs towards the room the sword was in. As Luffy was running, he saw someone very familiar. He saw that orange-haired girl he had saved before. The girl noticed him running towards her and their eyes met. Again, time seemed to have stopped as the two gazed into each other's eyes. After what felt like an eternity, they returned to normal and the girl went back to picking the lock she was trying to get into, and Luffy ran past her to the end of the hall where the room he was searching for was. When Luffy finally got to where he sensed the sword was, he was surprised. He saw 3 swords leaning on the wall. Not knowing which was Zoro's, he grabbed all 3 and jumped out the window. He saw that Marines were surrounding Koby and Zoro and had their guns pointing at them, getting ready to shoot. He quickly went over to them and stood in the path of the bullets. Instead of the bullets hurting him, they splashed into his water body and the bullets were floating around in his body. Zoro and the Marines just looked at the boy wide-eyed and wondered, what is he? They were then snapped back to reality as Zoro's binds were cut and he was set free. "Boy, what are you?" Zoro asked, demanding to know what the hell just happened. "I'm a waterman. I ate the Mizu Mizu no Mai, which is a devil fruit. I have complete control over water and I can turn my body into water at will." Zoro couldn't believe that this kid has the power of the devil's fruit and just nodded, knowing that this was not the time for a conversation. "I didn't know which sword was yours, so I grabbed all 3, Luffy said while holding the swords out to Zoro. "They're all mine. I use Santoryu," said Zoro while grabbing his swords. "That's unusual. Anyways, you can take care of that big captain guy over there. I'll get rid of the small fry. Since you saved me and returned my swords, I guess I'll join you. But remember this, if you do anything to jeopardize my dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, I'll cut you down," Zoro stated with a demonic aura. Luffy just grinned and nodded as he turned around and made quick work of the Marines, knocking them out with the back of his sword. As Zoro was about to strike down Captain Morgan, Helmeppo took hostage of Koby. "Nijiwara boy, sheath your katana and don't move a muscle or I will shoot the boy." Luffy just grinned and sheathed his katana. Zoro looked at Luffy wondering what he was plotting and was surprised at what happened next. Luffy just looked at Helmeppo and an indescribable force went through the air, hitting Helmeppo and the remaining conscious Marines. After feeling that force, they all fainted. All the while, Luffy didn't move a muscle and remained in the same position. After they all fainted, Luffy just grinned and turned around facing Zoro, who looked at him wide-eyed with a surprised and confused look. "I'll explain it once you're ready," Luffy said while grinning. While the Morgan was looking wide-eyed at what Luffy had just done, Zoro took this opportunity to strike down Captain Morgan and end this battle. The reaction of the Marines after Zoro defeated him shocked him. After Zoro defeated him, all the Marines began cheering that their captain was defeated. I guess they were just being forced to do all those things because of their captain. Zoro stated, "Come on Zoro, let's go back to town and pack up. I bet you're hungry," Luffy said with a toothy grin. Back in town, Zoro and Luffy are stuffing their faces full of food. "So Luffy, do you have a boat?" Zoro asked before drinking down some beer. "It's out in the harbor. It's small right now, but we'll get a huge one," Luffy said, imagining the huge ship he wanted. "Ha, and how do you plan on doing that?" Zoro said, laughing at Luffy's lack of planning. "I don't know, we'll figure that out later, shihihi." Just as they were enjoying themselves, Marines walked into the bar. They looked pretty serious and had more reinforcements outside just in case if things got ugly. One Marine walked up, who looked like the commanding officer. Is it true that you are pirates? The Marine asked with a serious tone. Yea, we're pirates. We are grateful that you saved us from Morgan, but we are Marines and must live out our duty of catching pirates. However, instead of capturing you, we simply ask you to leave, said the Marine, feeling somewhat guilty that they had to do this. The townspeople in the bar and outside were complaining that their saviors were being asked to leave and mistreated. However, Luffy didn't care and nodded to Zoro and started to pack up and grab some food for the journey. He thanked the little girl's mom for the food and made his way to the door. He then remembered something. This was a good chance for Koby to live up to his dream. So he walked up to the Marines and said, Hey, see that little pink-haired boy over there? He wants to be a Marine. Mind giving him a job? Said Luffy, grinning at the Marine. The Marine nodded and walked up to Koby. Koby was shocked that Luffy just asked him that. He knew that being a Marine was Koby's dream and he was about to fulfill his dream. So little boy, you want to be a Marine, do you? The Marine said with an intense gaze. Koby simply nodded. Well then, you'll start with simple jobs such as cleaning, work your way up. I'm sure you will be a fine Marine. Koby felt like he had died and gone to heaven. He was so happy that he finally accomplished his lifelong dream, and it was all thanks to Luffy. He felt like he was indebted to Luffy and was always going to be friend with him. As he looked up, he saw Luffy smirking and walked out of the bar with Zoro. As Luffy and Zoro were sailing out of the harbor, they heard the Marines. Men, salute. The Marine said as all the men saluted. Luffy just gave a toothy grin and waved back like a maniac. See you, is what Luffy said as him and Zoro were leaving their sight. This was an awesome start to my adventure, is all Luffy could think of as they continued sailing to wherever the sea would take them. Somewhere in the East Blue. Luffy and Zoro have left the town and are now aimlessly drifting out at sea. Luffy is sitting across from Zoro with a bored expression on his face. They are both quiet until Zoro asks, when are we going to reach the next island? Luffy dunked his hand into the water and concentrated for a few seconds. When he was done, he took his hand out of the water and said, I can't feel any islands near here. I'm guessing we're pretty far from land. That's a neat trick you got there. That devil fruit seems pretty handy, Zoro said, smirking. Yeah, it has a few useful tricks for sailing. There are probably a lot more I haven't figured out how to use yet though. Anyways, I'm pretty hungry and we barely have any food left. Luffy pouted while his stomach growled. Well, that's your fault for eating most of it when we sailed out, said Zoro in an annoyed tone. Whatever, we have the sea. I can just grab some fish and we can have sushi. Shahee. Luffy was now happy thinking of all the fish he would be eating soon. Oh, and how are you going to do that? We don't have fishing poles, yelled Zoro, who seemed very irritated at Luffy's carefree attitude. Calm down there, Zoro. I'll just get the attention of some fish. Without waiting for a smartass remark from Zoro, Luffy dunked his head into the water and was looking around. Luffy then caught sight of a fish and began yelling at it underwater. Surprisingly, the fish could understand Luffy and swam up to him. Luffy wasn't surprised at all that the fish could understand him and just asked it to get some seaweed. The fish nodded obligingly and swam down. It returned with a mouthful of seaweed and Luffy nodded and thanked it. However, the fish didn't know that Luffy was making sushi and still needed a fish, so he reached for the fish and plopped it onto the boat. Zoro was completely shocked that Luffy was able to get a fish and seaweed in the middle of the ocean without a fishing pole. Zoro shrugged it off as Luffy placed the seaweed on the deck. He placed the fish onto the seaweed and swiftly cut the fish into equal pieces and rolled them up in the seaweed. He handed Zoro the sushi and he happily took it. As they were about to begin eating, Luffy caught sight of a bird flying above them. Hey Zoro, you can have the sushi. I want some meat and that bird up there looks pretty tasty. Luffy grinned at Zoro and walked to the back of the boat. What are you going to? Mizu Mizu no catapult. Do. Zoro just looked at Luffy, who was flying straight towards the bird. Luffy used his devil fruit powers to shoot water at the back of the boat to catapult him to the bird. Zoro was now trying to make out if Luffy had made it to the bird. Just as when he caught sight of him, Luffy was screaming for help. He looked closer and Luffy was caught in the bird's beak. Zoro's sweat dropped as he began complaining and started rowing in the direction of the screaming Luffy and the bird. While he was rowing, he noticed a group of men floating in his path. He heard them yelling for help, but Zoro wasn't planning on stopping anytime soon for fear of losing sight of his captain. So instead of stopping, he just yelled at them to grab on and hope they don't get run over. Luckily, they managed to get on, but their auras changed to more demonic ones. The group of men told Zoro that they were pirates and they were going to take over this boat. Zoro looked over at them annoyed and kinda pissed. Haha, we're sorry. We had no idea that you were the pirate hunter Zoro. The group of pirates said with their faces covered in bumps and bruises from the beating they had just gotten. You idiots made me lose sight of my friend, so get rowing, yelled Zoro, trying to intimidate them so they would do their work faster. Back with Luffy. Luffy was still hanging by his head in the beak of the giant bird and looked pretty mad at the situation he was in. He didn't want to use his powers because he might harm the bird, so he just waited to see where it would take him. However, his train of thought was interrupted as a cannonball flew through the air and hit the bird square in the chest. The bird let out a scream which caused it to loosen its grip on Luffy. Luffy took this opportunity and jumped out, hurling towards the ground. Much to his luck, there was a town in the direction he was falling. Grinning and laughing maniacally, he was happy that he found a town and probably a new adventure. After a few moments, he came crashing down in the middle of a street. After a few moments, Luffy stood up from the smoke and rubble and sighed with relief. That was a fun trip, but I'm glad to be back on the ground now, haha. Luffy said while he didn't notice some onlookers. There were 3 pirates chasing a certain orange-haired girl but had stopped dead in their tracks once Luffy fell through the sky and crashed between them and the girl. The pirates were all thinking the same thing. There is no way someone would survive a fall from that high. But much to their surprise, Luffy just stood up out of the ground laughing like a maniac. The girl looked at the figure emerging from the dust and immediately recognized the person. It's that boy that saved me back when I almost got killed by a cannonball, she thought. She immediately thought up a plan and stood behind the boy and poked him to get his attention. Luffy turned around and once again met her eyes. But this time he saw that her eyes were fearful and she needed help. Luffy already knew what she was going to ask but asked her anyways. Hey, you're that girl I saved back at Alvida's ship, Luffy said, trying to sound surprised. So what is it? Luffy asked with a toothy grin which made the girl smile back in return. Well, you see, these guys were chasing me and almost caught up to me before you came. Could you stop those guys that are chasing me, she said while pointing to the 3 pirates that still looked shocked at the boy who survived the fall. Is that all? Just stand behind me and don't move, I'll take care of those clowns, Luffy said with a smile and an expression of utmost confidence. As he said that, the pirates became angry at the insult they just received. Without further question, they charged him and tried slashing him with their swords, only to be stopped by Luffy's katana. Luffy grinned and sheathed his katana. A split second after he sheathed it, he wound up his fist and punched all 3 of the pirates in the face, knocking them all out. Remembering the person who was behind him, he turned around and made sure she was safe. After a quick glance, he sighed in relief to see that she wasn't hurt. But just to make sure, he asked, "Hey, are you hurt? If so, then I guess I could beat these guys up some more if you want," he said with concern in his voice. She responded with a giggle and said, "No, it's okay, I'm fine. You're really strong. How would you like to join me?" The girl asked, thinking that having someone as strong as him would be good for her goal. "I have no reason to join you, so no." Luffy began walking away as the girl tried to run up and catch up to him. What was I doing again? As Luffy asked that, his stomach grumbled and he fell to his knees in agony. "Now I remember. I'm hungry," Luffy cried in a whiny tone and was slumping on the ground from hunger. "I know. How about I treat you and we could talk some more? My name is Nami, by the way," Nami said with a persuasive tone. But the only thing that Luffy was concerned about was that she would give him food. After hearing that, he jumped to his feet in joy and ran, and Nami led him to a house. Upon reaching the house, Nami took out some bread and ingredients to make sandwiches and started making some. Much to her surprise, the raven-haired boy's stomach was much bigger than he let on, as she quickly found herself making dozens of sandwiches. This annoyed her and she just stopped making them. As Luffy was munching down on the last few sandwiches, he asked, "So why were those pirates chasing you?" "I took this map from them. It's a map of the Grand Line," she exclaimed, sounding proud of herself. "Oh, a map. So you must be a navigator then," Luffy said, now interested in her proposal earlier. "I'm the best navigator in the East Blue, no doubt about it. You won't find my navigational skills to be matched by anyone else." She seemed pretty proud of her navigational skills. "Then how about you join me?" he asked cheerfully. Nami then had a happy expression since she just found an amazing bodyguard, but her joy was quickly replaced with anger and disgust at what he said next. "A crew of pirates, chihei." He laughed cheerfully, not thinking what he said was a big deal. "No way am I joining you then. I hate pirates. The only things I like in this world are money and mickens," she yelled angrily as she crashed her hands onto the table where Luffy was eating. Luffy sensed that something was wrong here, thanks to his Haki. He could read her emotions and thoughts quite well and was saddened at what he felt. The emotions outside of her were nothing like the ones she kept bottled up inside of her. Her happy and sly look she gave out on the outside was just cover-up for her feelings. She was very sad on the inside. Luffy knew she lost someone important to her, which caused her to act this way. But what really saddened Luffy is what she had to do after she had lost that person. She was forced to work for the person that killed her mother, and Luffy just felt sickened at the thought and could only think of how brave and strong-willed this girl was for staying alive and fighting to free her village. Luffy knew he had to do something to comfort her and say something. But first, he was going to tell her that he knew why she was so sad. "I know," he simply stated, and that caused Nami to raise an eyebrow in surprise. "It must be hard losing someone, then having to work for the person who killed her. But you still stayed focused and fought every day to save the people you love. I respect people like that," he said, hoping his words were reaching to her. Nami just stood there, eyes widened at what Luffy had said. "How does he know about my past?" is all she could think as she stared at Luffy in shock. "Oh, I forgot. My name is Luffy, by the way," he said while giving his trademark grin. I've heard about this Arlong guy. My teacher told me that fishmen have hatred towards humans for some reason. He didn't give me the details. But what they did to you is totally wrong. I can't find myself liking someone like him. I won't force you into my crew if you don't want to, I'm just asking. Anyways, enough about that. Who's the captain of the pirates that were chasing you? Nami was lost in her own thoughts. She was then brought back to reality as Luffy was waving his hand in front of her face. She stuttered and began to answer him. Their captain's name is Buggy, I think. Luffy's eyes widened a little as he heard her say that name. He remembered the stories Shanks had told him about how he and Buggy were both pirate apprentices on the Pirate King's ship. He then started to smirk, remembering that Shanks always made fun of his funny nose when they were young. Shanks had told Luffy that once he saw it, he would not be able to hold in his laughter. But then, Shanks had told him that he formed his own pirate crew and begun harming people and was a ruthless pirate who showed no mercy, a completely different person from when he knew him. Yeah, I heard about Buggy, he's a pretty mean guy. Yeah, but he has a lot of treasure that is just waiting to be stolen by me, she said, trailing off thinking about all the gold. You're a thief? Luffy asked, surprised. I steal from pirates, she yelled in her defense. But a thief is still a thief, he stated truthfully. Anyways, how about we make a deal? I'll help you get Buggy's treasure, and in return, how would you like joining my pirate crew? He asked, hoping for a yes. Oh, and before you make your decision, here is a little advice. Just because I say I'm a pirate doesn't make me a bad person. But I guess I'll let you be the judge of that, Luffy said, leaving Nami to her thoughts. Nami was thinking hard about this. If I go with him, he will get me closer to reaching my goal, but I would be joining a pirate crew. But he doesn't seem like a bad person. And besides, he knows my situation anyways, and I could tell he was speaking the truth about what he said earlier. He had saved me before, so I guess I can trust him for now. She then blushed a little, remembering what he did for her back at Alvida's ship. She had made up her mind and decided to go along with his plan for now. Okay, I'll accept. So what is the plan? How are we going to steal his treasure? It's easy, just say that I'm your old boss and then tie me up. Bring me to Buggy and say that you're tired of working for me and you betrayed me and asked to join his crew. Then while everyone is distracted, you have the chance to sneak in and steal their treasure, Luffy said with a grin. Nami was speechless. She liked the idea of the plan. In fact, it was flawless, except the fact that he would be tied up and at the mercy of a bunch of pirates. Feeling concerned for him, she asked, "What about you? You will be tied up and those pirates could kill you," she stated with a serious concern in her voice. Luffy just looked to her and smiled and said, "Don't worry about me, I'm strong, remember. If I can take down 3 marine ships with ease, I can handle a couple dozen pirates." Nami just nodded as she remembered his strength, although she didn't see what he was capable of yet. "Now then, let's get started," as Luffy said that he grabbed a rope and handed it to Nami. Nami nodded and began tying Luffy up with the rope, and they began walking to Buggy's encampment. At Buggy's camp, once they arrived, Nami hurled Luffy in front of the pirate crew as they all stopped what they were doing to stare at the tied-up boy. Nami walked up and just eyed Buggy as he was doing the same back at her. "Here is your map back, Buggy sent you," Nami said while she gave back the map. "What made you change your mind, girl?" Buggy snarled in an unamused tone. "This is my boss. I got tired of him always putting my life in danger, so I tied him up and brought him here. My name is Nami. Let me be a part of your crew," Nami asked in a monotone voice. Buggy and his crew just stared at the woman silently for a few seconds, which to her seemed like hours. Buggy then broke the silence by bursting out into a hysterical laughter which eased the nervousness that Nami felt. "I like you, girl. You got a lot of spunk," Buggy said in between laughs. "Men, we are going to have a party celebrating our newest crewmate, Nami," Buggy exclaimed while the rest of his crew cheered. Nami sighed in relief, seeing how the crew is not hostile anymore. Everyone was eating, drinking, and having a grand old time. Nami was still looking for an opportunity to sneak away and steal their treasure. She then noticed Luffy, who was sitting in an uncomfortably small cage while his arms tied. She walked up to him and he just nodded to tell her that he was fine. Buggy went up to her and began laughing. "This party is getting lively. Men, fire the Buggy bomb," Buggy commanded as his crew cheered. Everything went silent as a short pirate was carrying a cannonball with the Buggy Pirate's Jolly Roger painted on it. The pirate rolled the Buggy bomb into the cannon and rushed away. "What is that?" Nami asked, curious as to why they were all silent for one single cannonball to be fired. "Wait and see the destructive power of my Buggy bomb." Buggy snickered as he was waiting for it to be fired. The pirates then lit the fuse on the cannon and waited. Nami was tense, waiting to see what they were so riled up over. Then it happened. As the cannon fired, it took out a huge line of houses and damaged surrounding houses. The damage was incredible. Nami now feared the Buggy pirates more than ever and was only thinking of a way to survive. She was calmly thinking of a way to escape when Buggy turned to her and said, "Your turn to fire it." Nami was shocked and at a loss for words until she remembered that all the people of this town had evacuated and that she wouldn't be harming anyone if she were to fire it. But then her entire plan went down the gutter as Buggy told his crew to aim it at Luffy. Fire it at your old boss. You said you hated him anyways. Plus this is also a way of testing your loyalty to me," Buggy said as he placed a box of matches in her hands. Nami was now in the tightest position she had been in since 10 years ago. "If I don't shoot, they will kill me. And if I do, I will kill the boy who is trying to help me and I'll be no better than these pirates." She was going to try to buy some more time, but then a pirate grabbed the box of matches out of her hand and lit it. Nami's eyes widened, and without thinking she grabbed 3 batons that were hidden under her skirt, attached them together and then beat the pirate over his head to stop him. Luffy widened his eyes a little in surprise. He was impressed that she would go to so far of lengths as to not kill a life. The pirates then began attacking Nami. Nami raised her staff to block oncoming swords and then crawled away from the pirates. She then noticed that the fuse was lit and ran over to it. She put her bare hands onto the fuse to stop it, burning her hands in the process. Luffy was now enraged. Pirates were attacking this girl who risked her own life to save him. Angry that they were hurting his soon-to-be nakama, Luffy slipped through the ropes and bars by turning into water. As the pirates were about to slash at Nami, he quickly got over there and deflected all the oncoming swords that were about to hit Nami. Nami looked at the back of Luffy with a blush on her face. She had been saved by him again in a near-death situation. Luffy turned to her and smiled warmly. "You did really well, Nami. I'll take it from here. No one harms my nakama and gets away with it," he said as he turned his back to her, now facing the horde of pirates. As Luffy was about to jump in, Zoro jumped in out of nowhere in front of him with a smile on his face. "Don't worry, Captain. I got these small fry, and that Buggy the clown, his bounty would provide us a lot of food, don't you think?" Zoro said, smiling at Luffy. "Hey Zoro, can't believe you found this place, and yeah, that sounds like a good idea," Luffy said, nodding and grinning. Luffy then turned to Nami, remembering her burnt hands. He knelt down to her with his face a foot away from hers. He warmly smiled at her and looked at her hands. They were a bright red from the burn she received earlier. He was not very happy that his nakama was hurt like this. "Let me see your hands, Nami," Luffy asked with his hands out, giving her a gesture to allow him to see them. Nami nodded and put her hands in Luffy's with a light blush. Luffy looked deep in thought and just grinned after seeing them. "Nothing I can't fix," he exclaimed with a comforting tone. "This may freak you out, but I'll explain later. Hold out your hands." Nami nodded and held them out while Luffy turned his hands into water. Nami was shocked at what he had just done and felt like jumping up, but she trusted Luffy enough so far as to allow him to see them. Luffy smiled at her trust and began work on her hands. He moved his water hands and touched Nami's. This touch felt soothing and relaxing to Nami as the burning feeling in her hands disappeared. Luffy then solidified his hands and just laughed a little at his work. He then grabbed Nami's hands and turned them around to show them to her. Much to her surprise, they were completely healed and looked healthier than before. "How did you?" Nami began asking Luffy, but was cut off by him telling her that he will explain when she is in a safer environment. She felt a blush creep to her face at the thought of Luffy prioritizing her safety. "Luffy, did you just call that guy Zoro?" Nami asked, surprised that a bounty hunter would join a pirate crew. "Yeah, he's my first mate, and my only crewmate right now, unless I count you. What is up with this guy? First he saves me and destroys 3 marine ships. He saves me again from Buggy's crew, and now his first mate is pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro." Nami was amazed at Luffy's strength and the strength of his crew, even though it was just him and Zoro. "Zoro, I'll let you handle Buggy if you want. I'll just sit back and protect Nami." "TCH, sure thing, Luffy," Zoro said with a smirk and turned to Buggy. Zoro unsheathed his 3 katana and put the one with a white hilt in his mouth. He held the other 2 in both his hands and was preparing to attack Buggy. Zoro jumped forward and slashed Buggy into 3 pieces. Nami gasped and looked away in shock and disgust. Luffy just stared, looking unsurprised. After Zoro cut Buggy up, Luffy remembered Buggy's devil fruit power and that Zoro won't be able to win if he uses swords. Zoro didn't notice Buggy reforming behind him and was about to walk away. Buggy brought up his hand and stabbed Zoro in his sides from behind. Zoro fell to the floor grasping his new wound, while Luffy now became very upset that Buggy attacked Zoro from behind. Without thinking, Luffy yelled out, "Attacking from behind is cowardly, big nose." Buggy twitched and turned his attention towards an angry Luffy. "What did you say about my nose?" Buggy yelled in an angry tone. Luffy was just laughing and picked Nami up bridal style. Zoro was right behind them, running with his hand still on the wound to stop the bleeding. Nami was blushing furiously at the position she was in. Luffy was holding her from under her knees with one hand while his other hand was holding her back. They ran away from Buggy's camp and made it into the town and stopped to form a plan. Luffy put Nami down and noticed Zoro's state. He walked over to Zoro and knelt down. He gave Zoro a quick look of reassurance and Zoro relaxed. Luffy, instead of turning his hands into water, was controlling the blood from inside of Zoro. He quickened the blood flow so that the cut would be provided with more blood to heal. Seconds passed and the wound Zoro had began scabbing over and looked healed. "Although I healed your wound, you should get some rest, Zoro," Luffy said in a bossy tone to get Zoro to get some rest. Zoro knew there was no changing his mind, so he just shrugged it off and walked into a house and plopped onto a bed and immediately fell asleep. Luffy just grinned and walked back to Nami. Remembering what Luffy did, Nami turned to Luffy. How did you turn your hands into water and heal our wounds? Oh yay, I ate the Mizu Mizu no Mai. I can control water and turn my body into water at will. The healing is also a part of my powers. Water is a great healer, you know, Luffy said with a toothy and cheerful grin. What? You mean you also have devil fruit powers like Buggy? This means you can't swim anymore, right? Nami asked, still surprised that the devil's fruit actually existed. Oh, well, you see, normal devil fruit uses would sink like a hammer when they fall in the water, but since I am water and I can control it, I can swim. Actually, I am faster than anything in the ocean, and I can breathe underwater. And as a bonus, people who can't use their haki can't even touch me. Shahoo. Luffy gave his trademark grin as Nami was left with her jaw dropped on the floor. So pretty much what you're saying is you're invincible? Nami asked, still shocked that Luffy has this kind of power. Well, not if people use Haki on me, but I'll tell you guys about Haki after we beat Buggy, and don't think I forgot about Buggy's treasure. As long as you're happy joining the crew, I don't care what I have to do. Nami nodded and decided to continue this conversation after they defeated Buggy and got his treasure. Then both Luffy and Nami noticed a dog sitting in front of a pet food store. The dog was a small white dog that was staring right back at them. What's with this dog? Nami asked, looking at the unmoving dog. That dog's name is ChouChou and he's guarding his master's pet food store, said an old man walking towards them. Who are you, Asen? Luffy said with his head tilted. My name is Boodle. I am this town's mayor. My name is Luffy. And this is Nami, explained Luffy. Hey Asen, where is this dog's master? Asked Luffy. He wondered why the dog's master would just leave him alone in a town full of pirates. Ah, well, the dog's master died 3 months ago from an illness. Mayor Boodle looked at the ground with a sad expression as he explained it to the two. What? So this dog is probably here waiting for his master to come back, Nami suggested. No, it's not that, Nami. This dog already knows his master is dead. To ChouChou, this store is his treasure. He's protecting it with his life because of the memories he holds in it, Luffy said with a serious voice. How do you know, Luffy? Nami asked, surprised he could come up with that explanation. I can feel it with Haki. Like I said before, I'll explain Haki to you and Zoro after we beat Buggy, Luffy said in a cheery tone. Boodle was completely shocked at Luffy's words. That is exactly what Boodle had been thinking the entire time ChouChou was standing outside the shop. Just as he was about to ask Luffy how he came to that conclusion, they heard a lion's roar. Luffy turned around to see a large green lion staring at him with somebody on top of it. Luffy was just staring at them with unblinking eyes as he wasn't intimidated by them at all. The lion roared at Luffy as loud as it could, but Luffy did not move at all and stared back. What do you want? Luffy asked in an angry tone. We don't need your help, we'll take what we want. And right now Richie here wants food. As the guy riding on top of the lion said that, the lion swiped its paw at the store only for it to be blocked by Luffy with one hand. Luffy looked at the lion with hatred in his eyes. Luffy hated nothing more than people who destroyed others' treasures. With a voice that could make a normal person pass out from fear, Luffy exclaimed, You are about to destroy this dog's treasure. There is nothing I hate more than people who destroy other people's treasure. Just because you pissed me off, I'm going to use my fruit's powers on you. With that being said, Luffy effortlessly pushed the lion back 100 feet and prepared his attack. He turned his fist into water and expanded it so that it was the size of the lion. Using his powers, Luffy launched his fist faster than the speed of sound, which created a sonic boom. The lion and the man riding it flew for miles while screaming in pain at the top of their lungs. As fast as Luffy's rage came, it went away. He turned around with his trademark grin and walked towards ChouChou before sitting next to him. Nami looked at Luffy with amazement. There was a new hope shining in her soul now, a hope she thought would never come. As she watched Luffy and ChouChou with their playful antics, she couldn't help but let out a laugh. This laugh was the first real laugh she had managed to make in 10 years. Just as Nami was about to come talk to Luffy, Luffy sensed another buggy bomb about to be fired, and this time, it was in the row of houses behind Nami. Quickly, Luffy ran to Nami. He grabbed her and pulled her into an embrace while turning so his back was facing the blast. Luffy shielded her, knowing that he couldn't turn into water because if the pieces of debris flew through him, they would hit Nami. Luffy clenched his teeth in pain as pieces of metal and wood were hitting his back and creating wounds. Nami wasn't aware of the damage Luffy was taking and was blushing furiously as her head was nuzzled into Luffy's chest. Her legs felt like jelly and she would have fallen down if not for Luffy. Then suddenly Luffy began coughing and she looked up to see blood escaping his mouth. She was horrified and soon left his embrace and backed away. Luffy smiled after seeing she was okay and fell to the ground panting. Nami saw his back and looked at Luffy with a look of shock. Did he just take all that damage for me? She thought as she knelt down beside him. What she saw almost made her throw up. There were pieces of wood several inches into Luffy's back. He was bleeding heavily and she was terrified at the sight. Luffy just looked at the frightened Nami and gave her a warm, reassuring smile to calm her down. However, the wounds on his back were no laughing matter as he asked Nami for help. Nami, this may be hard for you, but can you take those pieces of wood out of my back? He asked as he stood up, dropped his cloak and cardigan and turned around to have his back facing Nami. Nami nodded and began taking a big piece of wood out of Luffy's back with a pained expression. Luffy flinched as she pulled it and other pieces out of his back. Once they were all out, Nami applied bandages to Luffy's back to stop the bleeding. Once she was finished, Luffy was sitting down and she took a seat beside him. Why did you take all that damage? Nami asked, feeling guilty that it was her fault he was hurt. You would have gotten hurt if I didn't block all that debris flying at you, he said while smiling. And besides, the lives and safety of my nakama come before my own. But you said you could turn into water. If you had done that, you wouldn't have taken that damage. Nami argued, still feeling guilty. If I had turned into water, the debris would have went through me and hit you. I can't let that happen. And Nami, it's not your fault. Don't worry, I've gotten injuries much worse than this, Luffy said while pounding his fist into his chest to show that he was all right. Hey Luffy, wasn't Zoro sleeping in those houses? Nami asked, now looking scared. Oh yeah, he was. Damn, they probably woke him up, Luffy said while laughing. What? I think they did more than wake him up, Nami yelled while bringing her fist down onto Luffy's head, which surprisingly made contact. How did I just hit you? Nami asked, confused. Seems like you subconsciously use Haki when you're mad. I will explain to you later. Right now let's go check on Zoro, said Luffy while getting up from his spot. They both walked over to the ruined house where Zoro was sleeping. Just as they were about to search for him, a pile of rubble moved and revealed a grumpy Zoro getting out of the pile. Damn, they ruined my nap, growled Zoro as he walked over to Luffy and Nami. Zoro noticed the blood on Luffy's body. Damn, what happened to you? You look in worse of a condition than me, said Zoro while staring at his wounds. Whatever, it doesn't matter, let's just go kick that Buggy's ass, said Luffy with his hat cover his face so Zoro or Nami couldn't read his pained expression. Don't worry, Mayor Asen, I'll kick Buggy's ass twice as hard for ruining this town of yours, so just sit back and have some tea, said Luffy in a low, serious voice. Now guys, let's go, said Luffy while he ran to Buggy's hideout. They reached Buggy's hideout. All right, here it goes, said Luffy while taking a deep breath. Big nose, Luffy yelled at Buggy, which surprised everyone. That's the worst thing to say, Nami yelled at Luffy as she punched him in the head. Don't worry, Nami, I got this. Wait, hold on, Zoro, there's someone coming down. You can take care of him, said Luffy, and as if on cue, a man on a unicycle with a sword came down in front of Luffy and Zoro. My name is Kabaji, Roronoa Zoro. As a fellow swordsman, I challenge you to a duel, Kabaji asked with his sword raised and pointed at Zoro. Ha, alright, let's get this show on the road, said Zoro as he unsheathed his katana and got in his battle stance. Luffy grinned and went over to Nami. He leaned to her and whispered into her ear. Okay, now since they are all distracted and coming at me, you can go to and steal their treasure. I'll fight Buggy. Nami nodded and ran off while Buggy and everyone else was distracted. Luffy then looked over to Zoro where he had another wound. Plus his older wound began bleeding again. Lying on the floor in front of him was an unconscious Kabaji. Luffy grinned and thought to himself that he chose the right person to be his first mate and turned to Buggy, who seemed angrier now that his second mate was defeated so easily. Buggy eyed Luffy and he then noticed his straw hat. Remembering his old friend and rival Shanks, Buggy spoke up. Hey kid, that straw hat looks familiar. It looks like the straw hat that bastard Shanks used to wear all the time. Luffy took off his straw hat and gazed at it with a proud expression. By this time, Nami got back with a bag full of treasure and was hiding behind the wall of a house not too far away from their fight. Shanks gave me this hat and it's my treasure. I care about this hat more than my life. He and I made a promise that when I become a great pirate I will return this hat to him, Luffy said while still gazing at his hat as all the memories flowed through his mind. He had his guard down and wasn't paying attention as Buggy's hand flew through the air with 3 blades in between his fingers. Buggy's hand shot at Luffy's straw hat and the 3 blades went through his straw hat, creating 3 holes. Then you should protect it better, yelled Buggy in his triumph. Luffy saw this and immediately, the temperature dropped 50 degrees and icicles began forming on walls. Luffy looked up at Buggy with eyes that were glowing a bright blue that made Buggy gulp in fear. Since you had the balls to do this to my hat, I will let you have 3 free swings at me. After that you can kiss your ass goodbye, Luffy said in a demonic voice that drowned out all other sounds. Nami was shivering in both fear and the fact that it was negative 30 degrees. She had never would have guessed that this nice, joyful and caring boy earlier could have such a dark side to him. That hat must be really important to him if he is this angry, she thought as she was still shivering. Buggy wasted no time as he brought his blades and swiped at Luffy. Buggy's eyes widened in shock as they went through him. He did this again and the same result, and then again only to have failed to make contact. Buggy was now extremely scared at what he predicted was going to happen next. Luffy looked up and unsheathed his katana. You say that a sword can't cut you, but looks to me like you can't even touch him. Now let's see if your theory holds true. Buggy. As Luffy said that he slashed Buggy with his katana, and Nami's eye widened at the blood spurting out of Buggy's chest. No way. How'd he cut him? This boy is crazy strong, thought Nami as she stared at Luffy with a look of fear and admiration. After Luffy cut Buggy, he sheathed his katana and prepared for his next move. Buggy was on his knees panting for breath. He looked up at Luffy and gave him a death glare. Luffy smirked back at him and turned his arm into water. This is for destroying Mayor Asin's town, for hurting my Nakama, and for damaging my treasure. Mizu Mizu no. Ocean Destroyer. As he said, he shot his arm forward. A column of water erupted out of his arm and sent Buggy flying for miles. After he defeated Buggy, his rage subsided and his eyes turned back to their normal selves and the temperature went back to normal. He straightened up and grabbed his hat. Nami turned from the corner and walked to Luffy. As she approached Luffy, she noticed a saddened look in his eye as he stared at his hat. That hat is pretty damaged, Nami said as Luffy walked towards her. It's okay, I can still wear it, said with a crack in his voice while he put his hat on his head with a smile, trying to hide his emotion. Nami then noticed a tear run down his cheek. Luffy quickly wiped it away, trying to look stronger for his Nakama. As he was about to say something, Nami quickly pulled him into a hug and said sweetly, "It's okay, I can fix that hat of yours, but it will cost you 100,000 billy." Luffy knew she was joking about the cost and returned the hug and nodded. They broke apart and began walking towards the sleeping Zoro. Luffy poked him and he stirred awake and stood up. "Ah, is it over already?" said a sleepy Zoro as he was rubbing his eyes to wake them up. They were walking around town while Luffy was holding Nami's treasure in his hands. As they were walking, they saw the mayor. "Oh hey Mayor Asin, those pirates won't be bothering you anymore. We got rid of them, shihee," said Luffy, laughing at the fun they just had. "I can't believe it. I can't thank you enough. Arigatou," said the mayor while he cried into his arm. There was a group of people running towards them and all they saw was a crying mayor. They seemed pretty upset by this and began yelling. "Hey you, what happened to the pirates that were in this town? And why is the mayor crying?" yelled one of the townsfolk at Luffy. "Oh, we beat him, and his crew ran away after I beat their leader," Luffy said. "Then who are you?" "We're pirates, shihee," Luffy said while laughing. "Why I get them," yelled the townspeople as they chased after Luffy and friends. "Why did you go and say we were pirates?" Nami yelled at Luffy while she punched him. "I'm a terrible liar. This is a good town," Luffy said with a blank expression. "What do you mean?" Nami asked, looking confused. "The people are fighting for the mayor just because he is upset. It's a good town," said Luffy while grinning. They kept running until they reached the docks. Nami was a bit upset that they didn't have a proper boat to sail on and just said that they should find a boat when they reached the next town. As they were in the water and about to leave the harbor, the mayor came running and stopped at the dock. As loud as he possibly could, the mayor screamed, "Kid, I hope we meet again someday." Luffy just laughed and waved back like a maniac. Unknown to Nami, Luffy left half of her treasure by the dock where the mayor was so they could fix their town. Luffy knew he was going to get an ass kicking for it later, but shrugged it off, saying it was for a good cause. They left the harbor and Luffy couldn't wait for their new adventure to begin. He had just found a new Nakama and was really happy. Shortly after, Luffy and friends left Orange Town. "You what?" exclaimed Nami while choking and slapping Luffy. "But Nami, the Mayor Asin would need my help if he and the people were to repair the town. Besides, you still have treasure left over, right?" said Luffy while pointing to the bag of treasure on Nami's boat. "Luffy, that bag of treasure you left behind was worth 5 million bully. It was supposed to be mine," yelled Nami, still choking Luffy. "And you forgot the problem I'm in. You're such an idiot," whispered Nami in a cracking, quiet voice so only Luffy could hear. After hearing this, Luffy widened his eyes. "I'm such an idiot. I forgot all about the problem she is facing with her village and I just gave away the treasure she needs. I need to apologize," Luffy thought. Before Nami could do anything, Luffy walked up to her. He kept getting closer and closer and put his arms around her and wrapped her up in a warm hug. At first, Nami was shocked and was about to push him away. But then, Luffy leaned in closer and put his mouth to her ear. He whispered, "I'm really sorry, Nami. I forgot that you needed that treasure to save your village. I will try to make it up to you when I can. I just hope that you can forgive me." Nami was now speechless at what Luffy said and just returned the hug. They were in their own little world until the moment was ruined by an interrupting swordsman. "Sorry to interrupt your little moment here, but I just remembered something." "Luffy, what in the fuck is this Haki thing?" yelled Zoro in both confusion and frustration. Luffy and Nami pushed each other away and were blushing furiously. Luffy turned and blinked before remembering that he would explain it. He grinned and dunked his hand into the water. He concentrated for a few seconds before turning back to his crew. He loved using those two words, his crew. "Alright, since I did tell you guys that I would explain what Haki is," said Luffy with his arms crossed and looking like he's thinking. "Alright, I'll go ahead and find an island where I can properly demonstrate it and explain it. Once I go find one, I'll come back and take us there. Any questions? Nami raised her hand and spoke. Yeah. How the fuck are you going to find an island? Screamed Nami. Well, since I am water, I can sense a disturbance or breaks in the sea. The big ones that I sense are islands. I just checked and there's an island nearby. I'm gonna head there now. Now any more questions? Asked Luffy while looking straight at Nami. Yeah. How long is it going to take? Asked Nami. Luffy grinned and replied, you'll see. As he said that, he jumped off the boat and Nami and Zoro were about to grab him but remembered his powers. However, they weren't expecting him to be walking on the water a few meters away from the boat. He ran a little away from the boat so he was at a safe distance to do what he was about to do next. Okay, both of you should hold onto the boat for dear life unless you want to fly a few feet, said Luffy, grinning at Zoro and Nami. They both just nodded and gripped the boat as tight as they could, not wanting to question what he was doing. Oh, and this might hurt your ears, but I'm sure you'll be fine, Luffy said while laughing. He got into a running position similar to Olympic runners at the beginning of a sprint. It was silent for a second and then the ground beneath Luffy began trembling. Luffy grinned and moved his leg forward. As he did this, he used his powers to shoot his leg forward and then the other. Within a second he accelerated to Mach speed. The sea split in half behind him due to the force he was putting out. There was a loud, deafening sonic boom that could have been heard for miles. Within a matter of seconds Luffy reached an island. He walked to the beach and stood there concentrating. Using his Haki, Luffy sensed that this island was uninhabited and had large animals he could use to demonstrate his Haki. Zoro and Nami were screaming and covering their ears after Luffy began running. They were trying their best to keep themselves on the boat until the water settled. They were both jaw-dropped and were thinking the same thing. First, I'm gonna get some answers from that dumbass, then I'm gonna kill him. As if on cue, their 17-year-old captain came running back at the same speed and stopped a few meters in front of the boats. He just casually walked on board and sat down. Yosh, I found an island that I can show you, Haki. What is wrong with you guys? You get attacked by a sea king just now. I was only gone for a few seconds, asked Luffy, fully knowing what happened while looking at Zoro and Nami, who were sprawled across the boats looking like they were just maul. This is your fault, you retard. They both yelled and Nami hit his head. I did warn you guys, Luffy said with a pout while rubbing the bump on his head. First, what the hell did you just do, Luffy? Nami asked, still wondering what the hell happened. Okay, I used my devil fruit powers to move faster. By propelling each of my legs forward with a large force, I can run at supersonic speeds. This creates a sonic boom, which was that loud-ass noise you guys probably heard, said Luffy while standing up. Now this time, there won't be a noise, but you guys should hold on tight. Luffy, why? But they were cut off as a huge wave appeared behind them and they began screaming. The boat was now moving at about 200 miles an hour. Nami clung to Luffy and was holding onto him for dear life. About a minute later they reached the island. Luffy was laughing while Nami was still frozen and clinging to him. Zoro was passed out on the beach from shock. Nami opened her eyes as the boat came to a stop and her immediate reaction was to hit Luffy. You dumbass. Warn us before you do something like that, scolded Nami. Okay, I will ... now then. Let's get started with this demonstration. As Luffy said that, a huge tiger about 10 times the size of an elephant came bursting out of the jungle and behind Luffy. Luffy, watch out, there's a huge ass tiger behind you, yelled Nami. Calm down, Nami, I got this under control. Okay, let's get this demo started. First, I will explain to you what Haki is. Haki is a dormant power that resides in all living creatures. However, it can also be in certain objects that have souls, such as swords, observation, fighting spirit, intimidation. It's like normal senses. However, usually people fail to notice this power or fail to control it. Luffy explained as the tiger got closer to him. The ability to remove all doubt. That is true power, said Luffy in a serious voice. The first type is the Kenbenshoku Haki. The ability to feel the presence of others. This allows you to see people that are concealed or too far away to see. However, if you are skilled enough, you can predict someone's action seconds before they make it. You can also sense the emotions, feelings, and thoughts of others. As Luffy was finished explaining, the tiger raised its paw and began bringing it down upon Luffy. Luffy. Nami screamed as Zoro grabbed his katana and was prepared to cut it. Don't worry, he's attacking with his paw from the right, Luffy said while he effortlessly dodged. Luffy was continuously dodging until he knocked it back a few meters to speak some more. Nami and Zoro were looking at Luffy with amazement. Now onto the second type of Haki. It's called the Busashoku Haki. Simply put it, it's like wearing invisible armor. If the armor is strong enough, it can be used offensively to deal out huge amounts of damage. You can also imbue objects with Haki, such as a bullet or a katana. The best part about this is that this is the only effective countermeasure to devil fruit powers. This is why I was able to cut Buggy even though Zoro couldn't. It also gives you the ability to touch Loja devil fruit users who have fluid bodies such as me. Now allow me to demonstrate. Luffy turned around to face the tiger that was about to hit him when he raised his arm and put it directly in the tiger's path. The tiger hit his hand and was sent flying back, roaring in pain. That is the second type of Haki. However, a select few people can use a third type. Luffy then turned around to face an even angrier tiger. Luffy looked at the tiger and grinned. He stared at the tiger, letting out a wave of Heishoku Haki at it. The tiger began sweating furiously while looking at the grinning Luffy. To the tiger he looked like Satan himself. The tiger began backing up slowly, still terrified, and walked around before it fell over after losing consciousness. Nami and Zoro were speechless. They looked at Luffy, who still had not moved from that spot. Who would have thought someone this strong would just pop out of nowhere into their lives? That was the Heishoku Haki. Only 1 in a million people possess that Haki. It's the power of intimidation. The king's disposition is what some people call it, said Luffy while grinning. The power to make all kneel before you. The true power of a king, don't you agree? Said Luffy in a serious tone. Wait, Luffy, how do you learn to control Haki? Asked Nami, hoping that she could learn it as well. It took me about 2 years to get the basics down. Some people are born with the ability to use it. I was one of them. However, my abilities were spontaneous and I couldn't control them until my teacher taught me how to. To unlock and control your ability, you would need to go through rigorous and long training, or go through extreme shock. However, I think you already have one type of Haki, namely Busashoku, but you just don't know how to control it yet. But I'm pretty sure you don't have time to waste learning the basics. As Luffy explained, Nami was disappointed. Luffy went close to her and whispered into her ear. After you solve that problem with your village, I could teach you, since you won't have anything to distract you. Shihei. Luffy grinned and looked at Nami. Nami yelped in glee and hugged Luffy, jumping up and down saying thank you 1,000,000 times over, causing Luffy to blush a bit. So what you're saying is that it took you 2 years just to master the basics, even though you were born with the ability? Zoro said, looking discouraged. Well, yeah, but I was only 7 when I started learning. I'm sure you will learn faster since you're older than that, but the training will be extremely hard on both your body and your mind. I don't have the time to teach you guys right now. Maybe when we get to the Grand Line we could start with the basics, Luffy said, giving his trademark grin. Zoro smirked, thinking that he is going to get stronger and one step closer towards reaching his goal. Man, we got sidetracked. I think we should go to an island and find a bigger ship to sail on, suggested Luffy. But before that, as he said that, his stomach began growling. I'm hungry, let's eat. Shihei. Nami and Zoro's sweat dropped and joined him in his little feast. They ate the tiger they just beat. After they finished eating, they headed over to the boat. Luffy ran past them and onto the water. Okay, I found an island. I'll run over there and see if it's habited. If it is, I'll run back here and we'll head there, Luffy stated. Nami and Zoro nodded and looked back to Luffy. Oh, and cover your ears. You forget what happened 30 minutes ago. Zoro and Nami cringed at what Luffy said and tried their best to not smack him. After Zoro and Nami covered their ears, Luffy jumped onto the ocean, and a split second later he was off running to the next island. Luffy reached the beach and used his Haki to look for inhabitants. He sensed only one town on the island. He ran back to Nami and Zoro, who were patiently waiting for his return. So, you find a town? Asked Nami. Yay, there is a small town on it and that's it. I'm pretty sure we will be able to get a decent boat there, Luffy explained while he walked to the boat and sat down. Alright, let's go, cheered Luffy as he created a current that would take them to the island. After all, he didn't want to get hit by Nami again, so he toned down the danger in his way of traveling. After a few minutes they arrived onto the shore of the island. There was only one place they could dock their boat. It was on a rocky shore. There was a cliff overlooking the sea near where they docked. There was a pathway going up through a break in the cliff, probably made by inhabitants. After they got out of their boats, they walked along the shore and reached the path. Just as they were about to walk up, some pachinkos flew through the air and hit the ground a foot in front of them. Luffy sensed someone was on the cliff behind a couple of bushes. Just as he was about to say something, dozens of pirate flags popped up out of the bushes. Nami and Zoro didn't seem fazed by this at all because they could see through the lie that was before them. Luffy grinned and decided to have a little fun with the kids. I am the leader of the pirate group that has conquered this island. They call me Captain Usopp. Prepare to be amazed, for I have 80 million men at my disposal. Now prepare to die, pirates. My skill with the slingshot is better than a pistol, yelled Usopp. Luffy, already knowing what he said was a lie, turned to Zoro and whispered, follow my lead, we're gonna have a little fun. Zoro smirked and faced Usopp. Well, since you mentioned pistols, bet your life on it, said Luffy in a serious and low tone. Usopp shuddered and was sweating furiously, similar to those who have been struck by Heishoku Haki. That thing in your hand isn't a toy to scare people with, it's meant for actions, said Luffy. This man standing before you is a real pirate, Zoro said, smirking at Usopp. Usopp knew that there was no turning back now. Doing the smart thing, he put down his slingshot and said, I surrender, do your worst. Luffy, Nami and Zoro burst out laughing after Usopp said that, which left Usopp confused. After the laughter died down, Luffy looked up at Usopp. Yasopp, isn't it? The name of your dad. Usopp's eyes widened at this comment and he immediately jumped off the cliff, plummeting 30 feet. He ran over to Luffy. How do you know that name? And yes, that's my father's name, Usopp asked and stated completely surprised. He always bugged me and told stories of his kid back at home. He was a good friend of mine. He was on Shanks' crew, he's the sharpshooter. I can tell you take after your father in that aspect. Shihei. Luffy grinned. Wow, so my dad is a great pirate aboard the legendary red-haired Shanks ship. This is great news. How about we go into town and grab some lunch and talk some more? Asked Usopp in a cheerful mood. Alright, food, let's go. In town. So how do you know that my dad is on red-haired Shanks' crew? Usopp asked Luffy. Shanks visited my village and that's where I met him and your dad. He kept annoying me and telling me stories about his kid back at home. Which was you? Replied Luffy while stuffing his face with food. Just as I'd expect of my dad, to disregard his own life and seek out adventures on the sea. He is a true warrior of the sea, Usopp said with a dazed look. Oh yeah, I just remembered. We came here for a ship. Do you know where we could find one? Nami asked. Oh, you're not going to find much of a ship in this small town, said Usopp. There's a large mansion on top of the hill. I bet they could help us out, Zoro said as Usopp flinched in surprise. No, you must not go up there, exclaimed Usopp. Well, I better get going. I remembered that I have to do something, Usopp said nervously while gathering his things. I know the owner of this restaurant very well, so order as much as you'd like. Bye, he said while running outside. That was weird. Whatever, more food for me. Shihei. Luffy grinned while grabbing Usopp's food. Just outside of the restaurant, a group of 3 kids were tiptoeing around town until they stopped at the restaurant. They hid behind the bushes to conceal themselves. Is this the place? Asked one of the kids. I'm sure of it. I saw Captain Usopp go in there with those 3 pirates. We have to go in there and rescue him. If we don't, he might get eaten by some Oni Baba. Alright, let's get go. They yelled as they raised their little wooden swords and barged into the shop. When the kids got there, they couldn't see Usopp and the 3 pirates were talking. They ran up. What happened next almost scarred them for life. The little boys walked up to the 3 pirates and yelled, "What have you done with Captain Usopp?" as they pointed their swords at them. Luffy was completely ignoring them and patting his stomach with a pleased grin. Ah, that was some delicious meat, exclaimed Luffy in a happy and cheerful tone. The 3 boys' eyes widened and they shivered at a thought they hoped would not be true. Nami saw the boys' reaction and was giggling at how scared and stupid they were. Zoro saw the scared boys and found this as an opportunity to get a good laugh. You want to know where your captain is? Zoro asked in a menacing tone. He was eaten, Zoro exclaimed with a demonic smirk. Luffy and Nami were bawling their eyes out laughing until the 3 boys looked at Nami and screamed Oni Baba. Nami was not amused and the kids earned 3 rather large bumps on their heads. Zoro and Luffy were laughing the entire time. After the laughter died down, they explained that Usopp left in a hurry after they asked him about that mansion on top of the hill. The kids calmed down after their explanations and just grinned. Oh, I see, he just went to go see Kaya at her mansion, said one of the kids. Huh, who's Kaya? Asked Luffy with his head tilted slightly. Ah, she's the girl that lives in that mansion on top of the hill. She's been very ill from depression ever since her parents died a year ago. Captain Usopp goes up there to cheer her up, explained one of the kids. Ah, I see, so if we go up there we can ask her to give us a boat. Yosh, everyone, let's go, exclaimed Luffy as he ran out of the restaurant. Everyone ran behind him to catch up. At Kaya's mansion. So how are we going to get in? We don't want to cause trouble and there are people guarding the gate. Nami asked. Oh I know, Luffy said while grabbing Nami and holding her bridal style. Nami, hold on to me tight. You guys should grab onto, Luffy said while tightening his grip on Nami. Oh oi, Luffy Matt. What are you doing? Asked Nami while blushing. I'm gonna launch us into her yard. However, we might fly for a few seconds, that's why I'm holding you. You better hold on tight, said Luffy as he tightened his grip on Nami. Nami nodded and hugged Luffy tightly and buried her face into his chest. She couldn't help but notice his chiseled features and was blushing furiously. Luffy turned to the others and said, You guys better grab on unless you don't want to come. Zoro nodded and grabbed Luffy's shoulders while the kids grabbed his legs. Luffy grinned and knelt down and turned his feet into water. Mizu Mizu, launcher. Luffy shot a column of water from his feet to the ground, launching them into the air. They were flying in the air above the mansion for a few seconds. Gravity finally kicked in and they began plummeting. Nami instinctively gripped onto Luffy tighter while screaming. Luffy was laughing the entire time but wrapped his arms around Nami farther to shield her from the fall. Zoro lost his grip when they were falling and was free falling without anything to cushion or slow down his fall. The kids fainted and let go of his legs when they were falling. Luckily for Nami, Luffy shot another column of water from his feet to the ground, slowing their descent. Once Luffy touched the ground, he saw Zoro and the kids unconscious on the ground. He gently placed Nami's feet on the ground. However, much to his surprise, Nami still had her face buried in his chest and was clutching his cardigan. She hadn't even noticed that they landed safely. Ooh, Nami, we landed safely. It's okay, you can let go of me now, Luffy said while gently lifting her head. Nami looked up to him still shocked. Quickly, she regained her composure and left his arms and muttered a thanks while trying to hide her blush. Well, that was a successful entry. Luffy laughed hysterically. No, it wasn't, yelled the boys at Luffy with shark teeth. Who are you people? Asked a skinny blonde-haired girl from a window on the second story of the house. You must be Kaya. I have a favor to ask of you, said Luffy while brushing off dust from his clothes. A favor, Sue? Kaya stopped talking as she noticed someone approaching from her garden. Kaya noticed the person was one of her caretakers. He had a black suit on. His glasses were round and kept sliding down his nose, and he was readjusting them regularly. Oh, Kurohatl, these people were just asking me a favor, please don't mind them, Kaya explained to Kurohatl from the window. You don't need to tell me. I will listen to your explanation later. For now, I would like for all of you people to leave this property at once. Or do you people have something you would like to say? Said Kurohatl while walking up to the group. Well, duh. We wouldn't be here if we didn't need something. We want a ship for absolutely not. Kurohatl cut Luffy, making him pout and slouch to the ground depressed. Usopp-kun, yelled Kaya to Usopp, whom almost fell off the tree. It's okay, Kaya, I just slipped, said Usopp while climbing back up the tree. Kuro looked up at Usopp in the tree. I've heard a lot of stories about you. I heard you're pretty famous in the village. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. The tales of my adventures have probably reached the Grand Line, exclaimed Usopp. Oh, so you have faced dangers before. That's quite something at such a young age, said Kuro with a blank face. Usopp grinned and placed a fist to his chest and said, You can just call me Captain Usopp. That will help spread my name around. I've even heard stories about your father, Kurohatl calmly stated while pushing his glasses back up to his eyes with his palm. Usopp clenched his teeth in anger. Nani? Usopp asked while glaring daggers at Kurohatl. Kurohatl, stop this right now, Kaya exclaimed after seeing Usopp's hurt expression. You're nothing but the son of a low-class pirate. Although anything you do won't be much of a surprise to me. But would you stop bothering Aju-sama? Kurohatl exclaimed at Usopp, which earned him 2 glares from Luffy and Usopp. You dare make fun of my father? Usopp growled at Kurohatl. You come from a totally different world from Aju-sama. If you want money, then name your price. That's enough, Kurohatl, Kaya yelled. Apologize to Usopp-sen right now, said Kaya while leaning out the window. Why should I apologize to such a barbarian as him, Aju-sama? Kurohatl asked, readjusting his glasses. I'm only speaking the truth, nothing more. However, I do sympathize for you. You must feel hatred towards your stupid father who abandoned you and your mother to search for treasure as a filthy pirate. Bastard, stop insulting my father or else. Usopp growled at Kurohatl with clenched teeth and shaking fists. Usopp jumped off the tree and stood in front of Kurohatl while glaring daggers. Why are so agitated? This is the appropriate time to do what you do best. Lie. Just say you have nothing to do with your father, or he's not your birth father, Kurohatl said nonchalantly. This comment made Usopp snap, and he ran to Kurohatl and punched him square in the side of his jaw. Shut up, Usopp yelled as Kuro was sent backwards. See that? He immediately resorted to violence. My point was proven. I guess it's understandable since his father is a pirate, Kurohatl said. Shut up. I'm proud that my father is a pirate. He is a brave warrior of the sea, and I'm proud of that. Although it's true that I'm a plain old liar, but the blood of a pirate flows through my veins. That kind of honor can't be simply imitated, Usopp yelled at Kurohatl. So, pirates are warriors of the sea. That is a pretty naive ideology. But this proves that you have the blood of a barbarian in you. You enjoy lying and resort to violence whenever something upsets you. Your ultimate goal is to acquire our Aju-sama's wealth, and that's why you got close to her, Kurohatl stated while once again readjusting his glasses. Whether or not you have ulterior motives, just the fact that your father is a pirate is proof enough, Kurohatl yelled. Usopp grabbed Kurohatl by the collar and yelled, You insulted him again. Usopp was about to hit him again until Kaya intervened. Stop it, Usopp-san, yelled Kaya from her window. Please don't resort to violence again. Kurohatl is not a bad person. He's only being overprotective of me. Usopp was hesitating but eventually loosened his grip and let go of Kurohatl. Please leave this property and never come near it again, Kurohatl exclaimed at Usopp. I get it. I would have left even if you didn't tell me to. I'm never coming back here again. As he said that, he ran away. The kids began yelling at Kurohatl and saying things like stupid and asshole. Kurohatl just glared at them and the kids all ran and hid behind Nami. All of you leave right now, Kurohatl yelled. One flashback about Kurohatl's past later. Nami, Zoro and the kids were sitting by a fence in the village. Hey, where did Luffy go? Asked Nami. Dunno, maybe he went to find the captain, Zoro said while leaning against the fence with his arms behind his head. The captain should definitely be there, said one of the kids. The other kid nodded and agreed. Yeah, he's probably at the coast. Whenever he is troubled, he always goes there. Wanna go check on them? Asked Nami to Zoro. No, I'll pass. Besides, Luffy can handle himself. I'm sure he's fine. said Zoro as he closed his eyes and was trying to get some sleep. Also, that reminds me, aren't you guys missing someone? Asked Nami to the two kids sitting down at the fence post. Tamengi. He always disappears to God knows where. Then he'll come out, running into town screaming, said both the boys. And as if on cue, Tamengi came running out of nowhere screaming things like it's horrible or how could this happen. He was running until he got to the other two boys and began panting to catch his breath. I saw a very weird man walking backwards, he yelled while pointing in a random direction. Meyer, the two kids chorused with blank expressions. It's true, see for yourself, exclaimed Tamengi as he was pointed to the road. Nami and the two other kids looked to where he was pointing and saw what he was and saw the reason of his outcries. There was a man approaching them but not in the normal way. No, this man was moonwalking towards them. The man had a black hat concealing the top half of his face. He wore a dark blue jacket and a long green dress pants. He had gray hair and was rocking red-tinted sunglasses with the lens shaped as hearts. The man turned around and looked at the group. Hey, who is it? Asked the man out of annoyance. Who's the guy who called me weird? He questioned. I am not weird, he calmly stated while doing what looked to be a weird sort of dance pose. Nami looked at the man with a blank expression. You look pretty weird to me, Nami stated without any emotion in her voice. Hey, that's not true. I'm just a hypnotist passing by. A hypnotist? That's so cool, exclaimed Tamengi. Show us something. They all chorused. Nanny, said the man with a glare. You expect me to just show my hypnotic skills to a bunch of strangers I've never met? Okay, just stare into this ring, said the man as he stood in front of the three kids. After I say 1, 2, Jango, you will fall into a deep sleep. Here I go, he stated before he started swinging the ring back and forth. The boys completely focused their eyes on the ring and were following its motion. 1, 2, Jango, the hypnotist stated before. After he said the last word, the three boys were knocked out and sleeping in the middle of the road. Unfortunately, the hypnotist didn't look away from the ring when he hypnotized the kids and was also knocked out. At the coastline, Usopp was sitting at the edge of a cliff under a tree staring out into the ocean. He seemed to be deep in thought as he didn't notice Luffy climbing into the tree. Luffy stuck his feet on the edge of the tree and dangled upside down in front of Usopp's face. This startled Usopp as he fell backwards. So this is where you were, Luffy said in his usual cheerful voice. Hey, can't you greet people normally? And what do you want? Asked Usopp with a sweat drop. Nothing really, Luffy said as he dropped from the tree flat onto his face. He quickly recovered and sat down at the edge of the cliff with his legs dangling off the edge. Usopp was looking at him, then his expression turned sad as he was brought back to the focus of his thought before Luffy interrupted. That damn caretaker, how dare he insult my father? Luffy looked back and stated, yeah, I don't like him either. It doesn't matter what anyone says though. I know Usopp and he is a great pirate. Isn't that right? In this pirate age, my father fearlessly sails the seas in search for adventure. I'm really proud of him, Usopp said, his mood having turned much more cheerful. However, his mood turned more angrier as he remembered Kuro had all. But that damn caretaker insulted my father. I can never forgive him. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Will you ever get to see that girl again? I know you like her, it's pretty obvious. Shihei, said Luffy laughing. Usopp looked at him and blushed in embarrassment from the comment Luffy made and shouted back, Oi, while attempting to smack Luffy only to have him dodge the oncoming fist. Relax, I can kind of tell when someone has feelings for another, Luffy said while giving his trademark grin. It doesn't matter if I like her. I won't be able to see her if that damned caretaker gets in the way all the time. Usopp yelled, both frustrated and angry. Oh, you mean that caretaker, right? Luffy said while pointing down to a rocky beach just below the cliff. Yeah, that caretaker. What is he doing here? Yelled Usopp, surprised as he ran to Luffy's side. Down on the beach was the caretaker from before, Kuro had all. But he was also with someone else. To his side was the hypnotist from earlier who bumped into Nami and Zoro. The meeting they had looked pretty shady and Usopp decided he would watch and see what happens. Kurohatl stopped walking to check his surroundings and checking to see if anyone was watching. Luckily for Usopp and Luffy, Kurohatl couldn't see them above the cliff and turned to the hypnotist to begin talking to him. Jango, I thought I told you not to attract attention while you were going through the village. But there you were, sleeping in the middle of the village. What are you talking about? I don't attract any attention. I'm not weird either, Jango calmly replied. So are the preparations for the operation complete? Kurohatl asked while readjusting his glasses. Of course, Jango replied. We can start at any time. The plan to assassinate Kaya, your Aju-sama. Usopp was speechless, couldn't believe his ears. Did he hear that guy correctly? Did he just say assassinate? Usopp asked, mostly to himself. Dunno, keep listening, Usopp. They might reveal more information, Luffy said, now listening to their conversation with interest. Don't say assassinate, Jango. That sounds too wicked, Kurohatl stated. Sorry, I meant accident. Jango replied, correcting himself. We can't just kill her outright. She has to die from an accident. Don't ever forget that, Jango. Well anyways, we just wait for your signal to attack the village and then kill the Anju-sama. Then you will collect her inheritance, Jango stated while sitting down on a rock. Baka, are you stupid? How can an outsider take her inheritance? Listen, this is the most important part, Kurohadol stated while raising his voice. Before we kill her, you will hypnotize her and make her write a will. And that will she will leave everything to the caretaker Kurohadol. I spent 3 whole years gaining trust from everyone in the village so no one would be suspicious, even if she leaves all her inheritance to me. You became a caretaker for 3 years just for this. It really surprised me back then. Captain Kuro, Jango said. You said you were going to quit being a pirate 3 years ago and then used a subordinate to trick the Marines into believing they executed the real Kuro. And now we're here at your last heist until retirement. Don't call me by that name again, Jango. I gave it up 3 years ago, Kuro said in a deadly tone. Alright Senchu, just give us the signal and we'll begin the operation. My men have been getting impatient. Okay Jango, I'll leave it to you. Boy, Luffy, this is bad. They're going to attack the village. What do we do? Asked Usopp in a shaking and panicky voice. I sensed an awful vibe coming from that Kuro guy when I first saw him. I knew he was no good. Listen Usopp, I'm going to stir up their plan a little and buy us some time. Stay here and don't do anything. If anything happens to me, I will be fine, Luffy told Usopp in a serious and commanding tone. Usopp just nodded and watched as Luffy got up and stood at the edge of the cliff. Don't you dare hurt Kaya, yelled Luffy down at Kuro and Jango. Usopp's sweat dropped from his simple, direct distraction. Kuro and Jango looked up annoyingly at the two on top of the cliff. Usopp was shaking and looked like he was going to faint while Luffy just had the most serious expression on his face. Kuro looked up and saw Usopp pulling on Luffy's arm. Well, if it isn't Usopp-kun, did you hear anything? Kuro asked in a dangerously low tone that told anyone in their right mind to keep their mouth shut. However, Luffy is not one of those people. I heard everything, Luffy shouted, still with his serious facial expression. Kuro and Jango looked at each other and nodded. Jango sighed and brought out his hypno ring and began waving it back and forth. Luffy stood there calmly, already knowing what he was going to try to hypnotize him. Luffy thought about it for a moment. If I let him hypnotize me, I will probably fall asleep and fall down the cliffside. They would think I'm dead and not be expecting me to try and stop them when they invade. Or I could defeat these two guys now. But I still don't know where their crew is. I can't sense them, so they must not be near the island. I guess I'll just fight their crew when they invade. I bet Zoro is getting bored and wants something to do anyways. After Luffy was done thinking, he began staring at the ring swinging back and forth like a pendulum. Jango said, 1, 2. Jango and Luffy's eyes began closing until he was in a deep sleep. Luffy fell forward and off the cliff, plummeting until he hit the rocky shore face first. Usopp was speechless and looking at the place where Luffy fell and saw that he wasn't moving. Thinking that he was probably dead, Usopp ran away, trying his best not to throw up at the sight. He ran through the forest thinking one thing and one thing only: I have to warn and save everyone. But unknown to him, Luffy was just sleeping peacefully in an awkward position and was not even close to death. With Nami and Zoro, Nami was still sitting on the fence, patiently waiting for Luffy to arrive while Zoro was just waking up from one of his 15 afternoon naps. Captain is running late, stated one of the children. So is Luffy, stated Zoro, rather annoyed that Luffy hasn't showed up yet. Oh hey, look, someone is coming towards us, yelled Tamenge. Down the road, they could make out a faint image of someone running towards them. After a few moments, the person came into view and they could make out that it was Usopp running towards them. What is this? Luffy isn't with him, said Zoro as Usopp came into clearer view. He could see that Luffy wasn't with them. Captain, the little boys yelled as Usopp came closer, but Usopp didn't stop to greet them and instead ran straight through them. The boys moved out of his way before they were trampled. Where's Luffy? Didn't he go to the coast with you? Nami asked. Usopp stopped for a second and decided it would be best to tell them the truth. Luffy was killed. That caretaker, Kurohadol, and some hypnotist killed him. I'm off to warn Kaya. Luffy's body is at the coast, Usopp said in a sad and angry tone. He soon began running off to the mansion. Nanny, said a surprised Nami. She had this horrible feeling of sadness in her heart that hurt more than any flesh wound could deal. Great, another person I've grown to like was taken from me, she thought. She tried her best to fight back the tears in her eyes as she imagined Luffy's lifeless body lying on the ground. Hey kids, take us to the coast, Zoro said to the kids. Zoro knew Luffy could not die so easily. Heck, he'd seen him take multiple bullets to the body and that didn't even scratch him. He knew his captain was alive and probably had some sort of plan, probably one involving him to have fake death. At the coast, this is the place. Captain comes here all the time to heal his wounded heart. It's really nice here, said Tamenge as they looked around. The Straw Hat Onii-chan isn't here, said Payman. Nami was standing at the very edge of the cliff looking at the view. She knocked a loose rock down the cliffside and noticed that it was quite steep. This place is pretty steep. she said, informing them of her findings. Zoro noticed Nami standing too close to the edge and told her to be careful. Nami gave a nod and was about to walk away when she noticed someone at the bottom. However, panic took over her as she noticed the straw hat on the ground beside the body. Look, she exclaimed, pointing at the dead body. Zoro and the others ran to the edge to see what she was pointing at and noticed the body lying on the ground. They all quickly rushed down to the base of the cliff to see what happened. When they got there, what they saw surprised them. Luffy's head was planted into the ground while the rest of his body was on the ground. Nami saw this and almost burst into tears at the sight of his dead body. She was using all her will to not shed a single tear and hide her emotion. He fell off the edge and died. That's what Captain Usopp meant when he said he'd been killed, yelled the three kids in unison. Zoro didn't bat an eyelash as this seemed too suspicious. He was checking the surroundings to find any clues as to what happened when he heard a faint sound. Quiet, I hear something, Zoro said, and everyone immediately shut their mouths. Was all they could hear aside from the waves coming from the ocean. Zoro immediately recognized the sound and grinned. He pulled out his katana and started poking Luffy with the sheath. When Zoro poked him, Luffy stirred awake and let out a huge yawn. Nami and the kids all backed away, scared that a dead guy was moving, but soon the shock turned into relief. As Nami got over the fact that Luffy was not dead, the relief and sadness she felt earlier soon turned into anger. Monkey D. Luffy, get over here, Nami growled in an extremely dangerous tone. Hi, Luffy said, as he knew that kind of tone was dangerous and he didn't need to use Haki to know that she was clearly upset. However, instead of turning to water, Luffy thought that he should just let her take her anger out on him to let her calm down. When Luffy finally made it over, he was immediately met with a fist in his face. Do you have any idea how worried I was? Nami screamed as she grabbed Luffy by the collar and started swinging him around. Instead of complaining about the thrashing and the pain that was being dealt to him like a normal person should, Luffy heard what Nami said and smirked a little. You were worried about me? Luffy asked, still with that devious little smirk on his face. Nami was blushing furiously at what Luffy said and tried to hide it as best as she could. Though of course I was worried. I can't let the only pirate that I like die, Nami screamed, still swinging him around. Right before Nami was about to send another fist into Luffy's face, Luffy grabbed Nami and pulled her into a warm embrace. Sorry for making you worry, Nami, Luffy said while gently stroking the back of her head to provide comfort. You bastard, you think a hug is a good enough apology? Nami yelled at him while hitting his chest with her fist but with barely any force put into it. Looks like I've already been forgiven, Luffy said with his trademark, toothy grin. Zoro saw this little show of affection and was grinning uncontrollably. He couldn't let this opportunity go to waste, so Luffy and Nami sitting in a tree kiss. But before Zoro could finish, he was cut off by a wooden pole into his cough by none other than Nami. While Zoro was getting the beating of his life from Nami, Luffy was laughing like a maniac. After the madness settled down, it was back to business. Luffy explained to everyone about the whole Kaya will soon be assassinated ordeal. Well, Kaya will be killed and the village destroyed. Are you sure you heard right, Oni-san? The kids yelled in utter disbelief. Yay, that's what I heard and I don't believe they were lying, said Luffy as he placed his hat back on his head. But that still doesn't explain how you ended up at the bottom of the cliff, said Zoro. Well, it was between two choices. Either I just defeat Kuro and Jango now but risk a surprise attack from the pirates since I don't know where they are, or wait until they decide to attack the village and just defeat them all before they reach the village. I decided that we should go with option 2. I knew you'd be bored, Zoro, so I knew you'd be up for it. I let myself be hypnotized, then I fell down the cliff while I was asleep. They thought I was dead, so that gives me the element of surprise. Hee, I see. I'm so glad that you thought of me, Senchu, Zoro said sarcastically. So what do we do now? Asked Nami. Well, Usopp was pretty spooked. I think we should tell him the whole plan since it involves his village, said Zoro with his arms crossed. After Usopp gets shot, rejected by Kaya, and chased out of the village. Oh, there he is, Captain, exclaimed the three kids as they saw Usopp standing in the middle of the road. Usopp covered up his wound, wiped his tears away and turned around with a fake smile planted on his face. Yo, what's up? Usopp said to the three kids. Yo, Luffy said nonchalantly to Usopp. Usopp gasped in shock at seeing Luffy here. He immediately ran over to where Luffy was and asked, Hey, you're still alive? Yeah, I just woke up. Anyways, Captain, we heard everything. Let's go warn everyone, exclaimed Tamengi. Usopp looked at the boys and thought that it would be better to keep them out of this conflict, so he decided he would do what he is best at, lying. I'm just kidding like I always do. I was just mad at the caretaker, so I went around calling him a pirate, Usopp stated as he started laughing. The kids started laughing as well and said, Oh, I see, you sure got Straw Hat Oni-san. As they started to walk away, the laughing stopped when they got past Usopp and he turned around to see what was wrong. I'm starting to lose respect for you, Captain, they all said in unison. Even though that caretaker guy is mean, We never thought that you'd lie to hurt someone else. To think we had so much respect for you, Captain." With that being said, they all walked away, deciding that it should be best that they returned home. At the coast during nighttime, Nami was applying first aid to Usopp's injured arm. She was just done disinfecting the arm and was now applying bandages to it. "Luffy, how come you didn't just heal his arm like you did Zoro?" Nami asked. "Oh, I'm no surgeon. I could heal his wound, but the bullet would still be inside his body, which would probably result in lead poisoning. It's best if he heals by himself right now. It's a good thing you knew how to remove the bullet," said Luffy with a grin. "By the way, why did you lie to them?" asked Luffy to Usopp. "'Cause I'm a liar," said Usopp. "No one would believe me in the first place. I was too naive." "Even if you were naive, the truth is still the truth," stated Zoro. "The pirates are going to attack tomorrow at dawn. But I will stop them and make sure that what I said really was a lie. Because even though they shot my arm, chased me all around the village, this is still my village, damn it. I love this village." "He never thought you'd be the type to just ditch your friend and fight by yourself," Zoro said with a smirk as he placed his hand on Wado. "Let me get this straight. All the treasure on that pirate ship is mine," Nami said with a straight face. "Yosh, we'll lend you a hand," Luffy stated, confirming the actions of his nakama. At the slope, the pirates are planning to attack from tomorrow on this very coast. However, this is the only route that leads to the village. The rest are cliffs, so there is no other way to attack. So if we stand our ground on this slope, we should be able to fend off the pirates," Usopp explained. "Sounds easy enough," Luffy stated. "Of course it sounds easy, but we need real battle strength." "What are you guys capable of?" Usopp asked. "Slicing, kicking ass, thieving." "Okay, then I'll be hiding," Usopp said. They all punched him in the head and screamed. "You will be fighting." "Okay, anyways, we should lay down some oil on this slope. They won't be able to get up if they keep slipping," Usopp said as he brought over some oil. After they finished laying down the oil, they decided that they would wait until dawn arrives to kick some ass. At dawn, they're not here yet. You sure this is where they were going to land?" Luffy asked. "They're definitely coming, I just know it," Usopp said. Luffy sensed a large group of people docking at a different coast. He decided it would be best to tell everyone. "Hey guys, I can sense a lot of people docking at the north side of the island. Are you sure this is where they were going to land?" Usopp. Luffy asked. "Sh'd. There's a slope just like this one on the north side of the island. I assumed they would be coming here since they met here. Shit, this is bad. We have to hurry to the north slope," Usopp yelled while he ran around, panicking. Just then Nami remembered an important detail. "Guys, our ships are docked on the north side. All of my treasure will be taken if we don't stop them now," yelled Nami. "Okay, then let's go. I can be there in a second," Luffy said and grabbed Nami. He held her bridle style so that it would be more comfortable to run. "Nami, hold on tight. This may feel weird, but it will be over in a second." While blushing, Nami just nodded and hugged Luffy as tight as she could and buried her face in the crook of his neck. Just like before, Luffy crouched on the ground and was prepared to run again. "Mizu Mizu, Godspeed." As Luffy said those words, he shot his leg forward with his devil fruit powers until he accelerated to Mach speed. Nami was screaming while she tried to not fall off from the sudden force. It felt like she had thousands of butterflies fluttering around in her stomach. As quickly as that feeling came, it went away as Luffy reached the destination. Luffy stopped at the top of the hill and gently put Nami back on the ground. He decided to wait for Usopp or Zoro before he would take action. "Nami, let's wait till Zoro or Usopp gets here. I'll move our ships so they don't find your treasure. I'm going to move them to that other coast we were just at." As Luffy said that, he created a small wave to give the boat a head start. Then he created a little sea current to direct it to the coast. "Alright guys, head for the village and attack," Jango yelled as he commanded the pirates up the slope. Nami began panicking as the pirates came closer. She was very uneasy about the situation since they didn't have the traps they set up. "Luffy, what do we do?" Nami asked Luffy for some reassurance. "Just stay behind me. This will be over soon," Luffy reassured her as she made her way behind him. Luffy stood there facing the horde of pirates running up the slope. Instead attempting to attack or defend himself, he stood in the same position, but this time with a huge grin implanted on his face. As the pirates reached the top of the hill, they were greeted by a flurry of slashes and pachinkos. Zoro and Usopp had arrived. "Yo Zoro, I'm surprised you didn't get lost trying to find this place, shih," Luffy said mockingly at Zoro. "Urusai, you're the one who ran off before we could follow you," yelled a mad Zoro. "Hey Captain, how are we gonna beat these guys? They just defeated some of our men like it were nothing," said a pirate to Jango. These guys are strong, so we'll just have to get stronger." That being said, Jango brought out his pendulum and began swinging it back and forth in a pendulum motion. Luffy raised his eyebrow as he knew what he was going to do next. Instead of using the hypnosis to his advantage, Luffy decided that it would be better to give him the handicap. It was more fun that way. So he closed his eyes and waited patiently for Jango to finish. Jango continued swinging the ring while his men watched intently. When I say 1, 2, Jango, you all will get stronger. Much, much stronger. Okay. 1, 2, Jango. It was quiet for a second and then all the pirates began cheering and roaring. One of the pirates even demonstrated their new strength by punching the cliff and shattering it to pieces. What the hell, he just hypnotized them. How does that make them stronger? Yelled Usopp and Nami. Oi Luffy, what do? We might need to try something other than attacking them head on, Zoro said while turning to Luffy. Luffy just stood there with his clothes, not paying attention until Zoro interrupted his train of thought. Oi, Luffy, Zoro yelled, which startled Luffy. Oh Zoro, don't worry, I can take these guys on. Here, hold my katana, Luffy said. He decided he wouldn't use his katana right now. He needed to get better at using his devil fruit anyways. But don't use it. You might forfeit your life, Luffy said in a dangerous and serious tone. Not wanting to start an argument in the middle of battle, Zoro just nodded and took his katana. Luffy walked over to Nami and started taking off his cloak. Once he had it completely off him, stood in front of Nami with the cloak in his arms. Hey Nami, wear this while I'm out fighting. It might get dirty if I wear it, Luffy said while handing her the cloak. And be careful with it. I got it as a birthday present, shihee, Luffy said while giving his trademark, toothy grin. Nami nodded and started putting the cloak on. She wrapped the string around her neck and looked behind her to see how it looked. It actually looked good on her and fit her perfectly, even though it was a bit long at the bottom. With the cloak on, she felt this indescribable warmth around her body. It was oddly familiar. Where had she felt this before? Then she remembered all those hugs and moments with Luffy and how they felt. That's what this feeling is. I feel so safe with this on, she thought as she was daydreaming. Her train of thought was interrupted by Zoro, who was yelling at her. Oi Nami, get back or you might get caught up in this. Nami nodded and began heading up the slope, taking one quick glance at Luffy, whom was waving at her with a smile as she headed back. She couldn't help the smile that crept to her face as she ducked down for cover while watching the battlefield. After seeing that Nami had found safety, he turned to Zoro and Usopp and said, I'll handle these guys for now. If any get past me and manage to get up the slope, feel free to take them out, said Luffy as he got into a fighting stance. Zoro and Usopp nodded as they prepared for their fight. The pirates began ascending the slope and getting closer and closer to their target. Luffy grinned and crouched down while turning both his arms into water. Mizu Mizu. Luffy shot forward at supersonic speeds and shot out huge jets of water from both his arms, slamming them into the oncoming pirates. Hydro cannon. Every single pirate was knocked out the moment that the blast hit them. An attack at supersonic speeds plus the force of the attack would have killed them all if not for Jango's hypnotism. Heh. Sorry guys, looks like I took all the fun. Shihei, Luffy said while rubbing the back of his head. Heh, whatever, but I get the next enemy. No questions asked. Got it, Zoro said while smirking. Yeah, whatever, I'll just be here. Shout out if you need any help, Luffy said to Zoro as he leaned against the slope waiting for more pirates. Jango was looking around at all the unconscious bodies of his men. He was really nervous about the whole situation, considering their captain would kill them right away if they failed this operation. Shit, that kid really screwed us over. Captain Kuro made a huge miscalculation. If Captain Kuro sees this, we'll all definitely be killed, said Jango while clenching his teeth, trying to figure out a plan to take down these kids. Hey, Butchai, look what happened out here, said an unknown person on the ship. What's all this? Said another voice that was also coming from the ship. Jango was surprised at first but remembered an important detail. We still have our trump cards. Come out, Nayabin brothers, Jango yelled. As Jango said that, two people jumped from the ship and landed onto the beach. You call captain, said the smaller of the two people that just arrived. Butchai, Sham, we must get past this slope, but as you can see our men are incapable of fighting and we have people in our way. Take care of that swordsman up there, said Jango as he pointed at an extremely intimidating Zoro. The two brothers cringed in fear and they looked as if they had just seen a ghost. That's impossible for us, Captain Jango. He seems way too strong for us to handle, and our responsibilities are only to watch the ship, not to fight on battles, the skinny one said as he and his partner were backing away, clearly showing fear. Luffy could see through their little act, using Haki of course. I probably shouldn't interfere in his fight though. I certainly wouldn't want anyone interfering in mine. Whatever, Zoro's strong, he'll beat them, Luffy thought as he sat down and leaned against the wall. Hey kid, are you not gonna back up your friend over there? Jango asked to Luffy. No, I'm gonna sit this fight out. Zoro has been bored lately, and I know I wouldn't want for someone to interfere in on their fight, so you don't have to worry, you're safe for a few more minutes. Besides, I can already see through your friend's act, said Luffy as he closed his eyes. Suit yourself, it's your friend's funeral, Jango said as he turned to look at Sham running towards Zoro in the weirdest way possible. Jaya. Get ready, for I'm going to rip you to shreds, Sham said while running at Zoro. Zoro just sweat dropped, not knowing what to do. Hey you, if you don't stop I'll have to kill you, Zoro yelled, not wanting to fight a weakling. Sham paused for a moment and said in a dangerous tone, "That's if you can kill me." As he said that, he grabbed the katana in Zoro's hand, blocking his attack. When Zoro wasn't able to stop him, he grabbed the 3 katana from Zoro, 2 of Zoro's and Luffy's katana. "You underestimated me," he said as he jumped back with the 3 katana on his back. Zoro was about to pull out his other 2 katana when he noticed they were missing. Luffy's was 2. Sham noticed the confused Zoro and smirked. "Lose something? I wouldn't know anything about it," Sham said with a devilish smirk. Zoro noticed the katana on his back. "Give those katana back right now. But don't you already have one in your hand? These will only get in the way," Sham said as he removed the katana from his back and threw them behind him. Zoro grew angrier now that his katana were being mistreated. He ran towards Sham with killing intent. "How dare you throw my treasures?" he said as he sliced through Sham. It seemed like Sham was cut, so Zoro ran past him and tried to reach his katana. Unfortunately, Sham played another trick and grabbed Zoro from behind and brought him crashing to the ground and pinned him. "Butchai, now it's your turn," Sham yelled to the bigger one of the 2. "Gotcha," Butchai yelled as he jumped 60 feet in the air. He then began accelerating downwards with his foot directly in the path of Zoro's head. Just when he was about to make contact with his head, Zoro broke out of Sham's grip at the last second and rolled away. Butchai used enough force to create a little crater where Zoro's head was just a few moments ago. "Shit, every bone in my skull would have been broken if I didn't break free," Zoro thought as he was panting heavily trying to regain his composure. "Damn, he got away," said Sham. "Hey, you have to keep him held down for that to work," exclaimed Butchai. "Whatever, he's not getting away this time. I'm not great at one sword style, but I'll have to manage for now," said Zoro as he got into his fighting stance and prepared for their assault. "Let's go, Butchai," yelled Sham as they both lunged forward at Zoro. They began attacking Zoro in a flurry of attacks. All Zoro could do was defend against the attacks. They kept the exact same pace throughout their assault, forcing Zoro to begin backing up while he blocked all their attacks. Seeing this, Usopp decided he should help Zoro, so he ran to the top of the hill where Nami was hiding so he could shoot from above, giving him the advantage. "I'm gonna shoot one of those guys so Zoro will get an opening," he said to Nami. "Lead star," Usopp yelled as he shot the pachinko towards the fight. Seeing this, Zoro moved into the trajectory of the pachinko, resulting in him getting hit in the back hard. He clenched his teeth in pain and stopped his blocking, giving the 2 foes an opening to strike. They both sliced into Zoro's chest, giving him big wounds all across his chest. He flew backwards from the attack, which gave him enough distance from the 2 brothers to get up and continue fighting. "Why did you hit our own people?" Nami yelled at Usopp. "No, it's not like that. It's like he let himself be hit on purpose," Usopp said, still shocked from what just happened. "Baka, do you want to die?" yelled Zoro to Usopp. "Could it be that we were the ones that were just saved? If you had hit them with the pachinko, we would have been their targets," Nami suggested. "Shit, if only I had another katana, I could mop the floor with these guys," Zoro thought as he continued to block all their attacks. "I got it. I'll just go steal back his sword so he can fight properly," Nami said as she began running down the slope. Luffy was sitting down while leaning against the slope wall looking at the fight with interest. He then saw Nami running down the slope. "I thought I told her to stay at the top where it was safe," Luffy thought. However, Luffy failed to notice Jango standing where Nami was running to. When Luffy did notice, it was too late. Jango used his ring to slice Nami's shoulder, causing her to fall down to the ground while screaming in pain. After seeing this, Luffy's rage skyrocketed and he began shaking. His eyes began glowing a bright blue. His aura turned into an extremely deadly and dangerous one that would make even the strongest of men cower in fear. He got up and began walking towards Jango and Nami. Nami didn't notice anything as she was still on the ground writhing in pain. Luffy finally made it behind Jango while Jango still didn't notice the extremely deadly aura behind him. "You hurt, Nami," said Luffy in an extremely angry and deadly tone. This caused Jango to turn around, and when he did, he began cowering in fear. He looked at the boy. His eyes were glowing a bright blue and he seemed extremely upset as he was shaking in rage. That is all Jango could see or think right before he met a supersonic, Haki-infused punch right into his gut, sending him flying up to the top of the slope. Luffy's rage subsided as he then knelt down beside Nami, who was still clutching her shoulder. "Idi," she said in a soft voice. She didn't even notice Luffy beside her. "I know it hurts, just bear with it for a few more seconds," Luffy said in a warm and reassuring voice. This alarmed Nami as she quickly turned her head in the direction of where she heard the voice. She quickly relaxed as she saw Luffy smiling warmly at her. She clenched her teeth in pain as he touched the wound, but the pain subsided soon after. Luffy began increasing blood flow to her shoulder, which resulted in the wound healing and scabbing over. "Now, just because I healed the wound doesn't mean you can go right back to lifting heavy treasure, and also it still needs to be bandaged. Now let's see what I can use." "Ah, I got it," Luffy said as he took off his cardigan. He sprayed it with water to thoroughly clean it. He ripped each sleeve off and began using it to wipe the blood off her shoulder. He used the rest to tie around her shoulder as a temporary bandage. There, that should do it, he said as he began grinning. But now, this left him without anything to cover his upper body. Seeing his half-naked body made Nami blush furiously and turn her head away from Luffy. Thanks, she said while her head was still turned in the other direction so she couldn't see Luffy. Luffy turned his head to look at the top of the hill and furrowed his brows when he saw what awaited him. There, standing at the top of the hill, was none other than Captain Kuro. Jango managed to get himself off the ground and looked up to see Captain Kuro menacingly staring down at him. Never thought you would be beat up by these kids. Guess the Kuroniko pirates are not what they used to be. Right, Jango. Kuro yelled the last part and everyone could clearly see that he was upset. Or rather, he was furious. But you say that these kids wouldn't be a problem? Jango said in an extremely nervous tone. Yes, I did. So what? I knew they would try and stop us, but what I didn't expect was for you fools to be so damn useless. How dare you call us useless, Captain Kuro? It's true that you were strong once before, but that was 3 years ago. When you were fooling around playing butler in a peaceful village, we were training and raided countless islands. Sham exclaimed. What are you implying? Kuro stated in a calm yet dangerous tone. Do you think you have enough strength to beat us now? Sham and Butcheye both exclaimed as they ran towards Kuro. While they were charging at Kuro raised his duffel bag into the air and began moving his feet extremely quickly. When Butcheye and Sham finally lunged for the kill, they found themselves slashing nothing but the duffel bag. Kuro moved quickly behind them and reappeared in front of Zoro in less than a second. Who are you going to kill? Kuro said in a menacing voice while also revealing blades that were 3 feet long and began at his fingertips similar to that of a cat. Turn around, both Sham and Butcheye exclaimed. But when they turned around, they saw no one other than Zoro standing there. There it is, stealth foot, said Jango, who retreated away from the battle down the slope. You guys are right. I'm not as fast as I once was, Kuro said as he appeared behind the Nyaban brothers and put his arms around both their shoulders, pointing the sharp edge of the blades towards their necks. I've become more humble after staying on this island for so long, so I'll give you 5 minutes. If they are all still alive after the 5 minutes are up, then. He began backing off the brothers. All of you here will be killed by me, he said while getting into fighting stance. 5 minutes. We'll manage to beat them in 5 minutes somehow. It's all him, the guy with the green bandana. We have to beat him, said Jango in a very nervous and panicking tone of voice. Luffy saw Zoro's current predicament and he decided to aid him but do it indirectly. He walked over to the katana on the ground. He picked his up and strapped it back onto his waist and he threw Zoro's towards him. Oi, don't throw my katana, exclaimed Zoro as he saw what Luffy did. Where's my thank you? Luffy said with a cheeky grin. Yeah, thank you, said Zoro as he grabbed the 2 katana and unsheathed them. He put Wado into his mouth and held the other one. Zoro got into a fighting stance with his 3 swords as he stood in position, waiting for the brothers whom were already approaching him with killing intent. Fool, you think having 3 swords will be enough to stop us? The results will be the same, they yelled as they got closer and closer to Zoro. Zoro got into a position where the 2 katana were perpendicular to Wado and were pointed downwards. Tiger, you guys just don't get it, do you? Hunting prey, he yelled as he lunged forward and slashed both of the brothers, killing them, or at least knocking them out and sending them flying behind him towards Jango. Having 3 swords and using 3-sword style are completely different, said Zoro as he began sheathing his katana. Butcheye grabbed onto Jango's leg and muttered, That bastard, I'll kill him, please hypnotize me, please, Captain. Zoro looked behind him and noticed that he was still alive. Must have been saved by all that fat, he muttered as he turned around to finish the job. However, what he saw shocked him. It looked as if Butcheye was going through a transformation as his muscles were growing in size and his pupils began blanking out as his eyes turned completely white. He got up and turned around facing Zoro, baring his teeth and going towards him with the intent to kill. Crap, this is going to be a pain. That guy could crush the ground in his normal state. I wonder what he could do now, thought Zoro as he got ready to go into another fight. Crap, Luffy, Zoro might be in trouble. You have to help him, yelled Nami. You're not going to be helping anyone, Jango yelled as he flung his ring towards Luffy's neck. Luffy already saw this coming seconds before Jango even begun his action, so he decided he would screw with everyone. As the ring began flying closer and closer to his neck, his serious expression turned into a toothy grin as he turned to Nami. Nami was shocked and yelled for him to watch out, but it was too late. The ring cut Luffy's neck and sent his head flying towards Nami. His head landed in front of Nami with his eyes still open and that grin still on his face. Nami saw this and let out a scream that could cause people's ears to begin bleeding as she fearfully backed away and put her head in between her knees to shield her eyes from the sight. However, what she heard next shocked her and everyone that was there. Luffy's head began laughing uncontrollably as his body was rolling around clutching its sides. After the laughter died down, the body got up, grabbed the head and then threw it in the air. The head turned into water and the water began reforming as a head where the body was missing one. Luffy's head was once again attached to his neck and he had that same toothy grin he wore before he was decapitated. He turned to look at Nami and the expression she had on her face was priceless. Luffy began roaring in laughter as he, once again, rolled around clutching his sides while laughing his head off. Ew, you should have seen the look on your face. Ha ha ha, it was priceless, he said while doubling over in laughter. Once the shock subsided, Nami began fuming with rage as she looked at the laughing Luffy. She went over there and gave him the beating of his life, one that was even comparable to Garp's. That's whack for thump scaring punch me, she yelled as she began panting with rage. Ha ha, that was worth it though. I wish I had a camera or something so I could have taken a picture of that face. Ha ha, exclaimed Luffy as he was still laughing his ass off. Alright Luffy, just for that, you have to go and steal the treasure on their ship and be back here in less than a minute unless you want to begin a debt that makes the United States debt look like nothing, Nami said with a vein popping out of her forehead and with clenched teeth. Aye, sir, Luffy said while giving a mock salute and ran to enter the ship at supersonic speeds. After a few seconds of storming through the ship he found the room filled with treasure. He grabbed it all and ran back to Nami as fast as he could. Well, there wasn't that much treasure, I think like 5 million bullies worth, he said while putting the treasure down next to Nami. No, it's completely fine. Arigato, yelled Nami as she ran up and hugged Luffy while he was grinning and rubbing the back of his head with a slight blush. Alright Butcheye, you take care of that swordsman over there, I'll take care of the Straw Hat Kid, Jango said as he was facing Luffy with his back towards Butcheye. Okay Nami, just have a little rest here. This will be over in a few minutes, said Luffy in a cool voice as he gently placed Nami to the side. He took his cloak from Nami and covered Nami with it like a blanket. Nami soon closed her eyes and began drifting to sleep as she knew it was safe to do so, as long as Luffy was there. By this time, all the members of the pirate crew began to stir awake and they saw the leaders of their crew preparing to fight the kids that were giving them a hard time. Someone was walking through the woods and made it to the beginning of the slope. Kuro thought that someone was sneaking behind him and so he turned around to attack the person. However, Usopp immediately recognized who it was and dove in to protect the person. He managed to get there in time before Kuro could hurt the person, but Kuro managed to slash Usopp before he managed to get to a safe distance from him. Kuro had a look of shock as he realized who he almost cut down. However, that shock quickly subsided and he regained his composure. Usopp-sen, are you alright? Said Kaya. The person who Kuro attacked was Kaya. Kaya, what are you doing? Usopp said while wincing in pain from the slash. I'm sorry Usopp-sen. I know that you might never forgive me for what I have done, but I can't believe that Kurohead is a pirate, Kaya said sadly. That doesn't matter now. I told you to run away, didn't I? He wants to kill you, Usopp exclaimed as Kaya was on the brink of tears. But you're still fighting even though you're hurt, Kaya exclaimed in a concerned voice. Kaya Aju-sama, why are you here? Kuro said in a calm voice. Please, stop this Kurohead, yelled Kaya. Mary told me everything. If you want my fortune, I'll give it all up. So please, leave this place. Right now, Kaya yelled, trying to solve this dispute peacefully with the least amount of casualties. I thank you for your offer. However, there's one thing that I desire, and that's the tranquility of my soul, Kuro said in a menacingly low voice while he readjusted his glasses. All I want is tranquility. I spent 3 years gaining the trust of the villagers, which made me feel unbelievably comfortable. Therefore, I'd like to keep this sense of tranquility with me forever, Kuro calmly stated. Kaya was shocked from this and began backing away, all the while trembling. She brought a gun out of her coat pocket with trembling hands and pointed it at Kuro. You're not Kurohead. Leave this village, Kaya said with still trembling hands. Oh, so you're pointing a gun at me. So that's how it is. You've grown quite a lot these past 3 years. I remember nursing you when you were sick from grieving over your parents' deaths. All that was so I could kill you someday. Today being that day, yelled Kuro as he took Kaya's gun from her. Tears finally rolled down Kaya's cheek as she bit her lip to keep herself from sobbing. Captain Kuro had to keep a smile for a girl whose nose always sniffled, he said as he dropped the gun. No matter how much I hated it, I tried to make you happy, he said in a disgusted tone. Usopp was looking at Kuro with all the hate he could muster and muttered, You bastard. Can you imagine me, the former Captain Kuro, doing such things? He yelled loud enough for everyone to hear. By now, Luffy was quite irritated by Kuro's thinking. Usopp picked the gun off of the ground and stood up quickly to catch Kuro off guard and shoot him. After Usopp shot, Kuro used stealth foot to avoid the bullet and went behind Usopp. Kuro surrounded Usopp's head with his 5 claws. I believe you still owe me for that punch you gave me earlier. You hit me pretty hard that time. Usopp was trembling in fear until he looked at the slope and noticed Luffy was getting into a fighting stance, but what Usopp noticed was his glowing blue eyes that sent a shiver down his spine. The next thing Usopp saw was a fist made of water flying at Kuro's face and knocking him back several meters. Since you hate punches so much, I'll give you 100 more for free. Luffy said as he grinned that cheeky grin of his with those same glowing blue eyes. What the hell is he? Yelled the crew as they stared at Luffy, mouths agape. Suddenly out of nowhere all the kids of the Usopp pirate crew appeared and began beating Kuro with various kitchenware and baseball bats. They were screaming things like give up and kill him. After they were done beating the crap out of him, they ran over to Usopp. Captain, you were fighting them all along. Why didn't you tell us the truth? They all exclaimed. Never mind that. You guys have to get out of here now. Usopp yelled. No, we're fighting. If we were to run, that would bring dishonor to the crew, yelled all three boys. Kuro got up looking unfazed from their little assault and stood behind the band of misfits. The kids began shivering in fear until they turned around, which turned their shivering into spasms and screaming. Instead of slicing them up, Kuro just walked past them back onto the battlefield. Not bad. That was a pretty good punch you managed to lay on me. So, you have the powers of the Akuma no Mi, don't you, boy? Kuro said with a glare. Yeah, the Mizu Mizu no Mi, I'm a water man, Luffy said with a cheeky grin. The entire crew was freaking out, saying things like, what? That's bad news. And those things exist. Kuro was silent for a moment and appeared to be thinking until he spoke up. Jango, I will take care of this kid. You take care of Kaya Anju-sama. Make her write the will as planned, then kill her. Also, the 3 ants over there. They're an eyesore, Kuro said as he prepared for his attack. Understood, Jango said as he began walking up the slope, only to be stopped by one of Zoro's swords blocking his path. Stop. I won't let you pass me, Zoro said calmly. Butch, yelled Jango. Butch was now growling loudly and jumped up into the air to attack Zoro. Cat kill, stump, he yelled as he quickly descended. That again, Zoro said as he jumped away to avoid the attack. However, what happened next caught him off guard. An entire section of the slope and cliff were destroyed from the raw physical power of the attack, due to the rocks crumbling. There was now a heavy smoke screen which Butch used to his advantage and grabbed Zoro's shoulder and pinned him to the cliff wall. Zoro managed to stick his foot out to Butch's face, preventing him moving any further to attack him. You've already lost to me once. Didn't I tell you not to bother me anymore? Out of my way, Zoro yelled as he kicked Butch in the face with his other foot. While Butch was dazed, Zoro brought out his other 2 katana and lunged forward to slash Butch across the chest, effectively killing him, or at least knocking him out. By now Luffy was ascending the slope as Kaya and the kids retreated into the forest. While Zoro was distracted, Jango had used the opportunity to go after Kaya and the 3 children. Usopp, you go and look for Kaya and the kids. Leave everything here to us, Luffy said. Usopp, who was on the ground bloodied and bruised, courtesy of Kuro, used what little strength he had left to pick himself up off the ground. He was trembling as he got up and managed to turn to Kuro. As he was about to walk forward, Usopp lost all his strength and fell back to the ground. After seeing this pathetic display, Kuro began snickering, which soon turned into an hysterical laughter. You really amuse me. Even if you do catch up to Jango, you'd be no match for him. It would be safer for you if you stayed here, Kuro said while laughing a little. Even if can't, I want to protect them. For I am the captain of the Usopp pirate crew. I am a brave warrior of the sea, and I will not let you lay a hand on any of the villagers, Usopp bellowed for the world to hear. Hee, well said, Usopp, Luffy said as he continued to glare at Kuro. The pirate crew down by the shore were watching and began saying things like, what the hell was that, and look, he's crying, how pathetic, as they all started laughing. After hearing this, Luffy's anger rose even more as he punched the cliff and broke off a huge piece off rock. He took the rock and flung it at the pirates, hurtling them backwards. What's so funny? Luffy yelled as his glowing blue eyes scared the pirates shitless. Luffy, I'm taking Usopp with me to find that hypnotist. Any problems? Zoro asked as he bent down and picked up Usopp. None. Get going, Luffy yelled back. As Zoro was continuing up the slope, Kuro spoke and said, Hey, who gave you permission to go past this slope? That would be me, Luffy said as he appeared in front of Kuro in a split second and tried to slash him, only to have his sword blocked by Kuro claws. He then tried punching him, but Kuro managed to use stealth foot and avoid his attack. Luffy knew Kuro was gonna attack him from behind, so he ducked and kicked his legs up to try and get a swing at him. But Kuro used stealth foot and dodged again. Crap, he's fast enough to even keep up with me. Oh well, at least Zoro and Usopp got away, Luffy said while he waited for Kuro to reappear. When he did appear, Luffy turned to him while thinking. Shanks told me that if I want to become Pirate King, I would need strong Nakama to help me along the way. But for my second dream, I would need a massive fleet of Nakama. I need to get Kuro to join my crew. I can already sense with Haki that he is not completely evil, and his brilliant mind would help greatly for my other goal, to avenge Sabo's death by destroying the world government. Hey Kuro, I've got a little offer for you, Luffy said coolly. Oh, and what would that be? Kuro asked, gaining interest. Well, how about a little wager? Luffy said with a devilish grin implanted on his face. And what would the stakes be? If I win, You and your crew will join me, no questions asked. And if you win, I will personally help you kill Kaya and take her treasure, Luffy said, fully knowing that there was no way he was ever going to lose. All right, and the rules: no killing each other's crew, and the victory goes to the last one conscious, Luffy said. And what makes you think that I would be suitable for your crew or that I would obey you? Kuro asked. I can tell you're not that bad of a person. You just need a more fun and relaxed environment, and it doesn't get more relaxing and fun than my crew, So, what do you say? Do we have a deal? Luffy said as he brought out his hand. Very well, I accept your offer. Kuro gave him a questioning look as he shook his hand. Oh, the name's Monkey D. Luffy, Luffy said while grinning. All right, Luffy. Haha, great. Now we'll start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Luffy said as he lunged forward and unsheathed his katana, attacking Kuro. Kuro managed to predict this and block the attack. You're pretty fast if you can keep up with me, Luffy said while grinning. Don't get too cocky, kid. It may be your downfall, Kuro said while grinning back. Whatever, let's get started, Luffy said as he leaped back onto the slope. Kuro lunged towards Luffy with his claw outstretched and ready to impale him. Luffy saw this coming and grabbed one of the huge boulders that were scattered around and put it into the path of Kuro's blade. Kuro couldn't stop in time and found his blade stuck in the boulder. Hey, looks like you can do more than just turn into water, Kuro smirked. Of course, I'm well trained to be a pirate, Luffy said as he crushed the boulder from both sides, grabbed it, and twisted it so Kuro's blade snapped. Take this, Luffy yelled as he swung the boulder, hitting Kuro square in the jaw. Kuro was knocked down and looked as if he was down for the count. Luffy was still holding the boulder while looking down at Kuro with a grin. Oh, come on. I know you're not knocked out. Get up, Luffy said while still holding the boulder with one hand. Heh, that was pretty good if I do say so myself, Kuro said while getting up. It seems like you only have 5 claws left, Luffy said while dropping the boulder. He was grinning like a madman, which irritated Kuro a little. I assume that is not all there is to your strength, right? Kuro said while staring at Luffy. Sure it isn't. I'm way stronger than this. After all, I'm going to be the Pirate King, so I have to be strong. Duh, Luffy smirked devilishly. Heh, I'm not going to lose. Stealth foot, Kuro said as he quickly moved his feet and disappeared. Right before Kuro was about to slash at Luffy, Luffy blocked the attack with his katana. Kuro seemed extremely surprised by this and stared wide-eyed at Luffy. How? No human should be able to keep up with my stealth foot, Kuro said, still shocked. I told you I'm well trained, and I can think of someone other than me who could easily surpass you in speed, Luffy said with a smirk as he deflected Kuro's claws away. Oh wait, if I use my sword, I might kill you. Luffy sheathed his katana as he got into a fighting stance. Humph, you seem pretty confident, perhaps a little too overconfident. Kuro prepared for his next attack. It doesn't matter, I know I'm not going to lose here. I'm going to end this really quick, so you will join my crew. Shihei. Luffy gave his trademark grin while snickering. A vein began popping out of Kuro's head as he began fuming in anger at his simplicity. Why he accepted his offer was beyond him, but it didn't seem that bad of an offer. Kuro had been stressed beyond measure these past 3 years. Maybe he did need some relaxing time. However, that doesn't mean he's just going to surrender and back down without putting up a fight. Take this, Kuro said as he swung his claw at Luffy's chest. Just when he thought it would connect, it phased right through Luffy and he found his claws dripping wet. What? Kuro questioned, confused. The reason I knew I wasn't going to lose was because I knew you couldn't even touch me. Shihei. I see. So it seems I had lost from the get-go, Kuro said as a smile formed on his lips. Mizu Mizu no gathering, Luffy said as he raised his hand into the air as water from the ocean and air started forming into a blob above his hand. Once the ball had reached a reasonable size for Luffy, he launched it a couple 100 meters into the air. Mizu Mizu no Suikyu. Luffy swung his arm downwards and the ball of water began plummeting at incredible speeds. I wonder what it's going to be like serving under a simple-minded guy like him. I guess time will tell. You really interest me, Monkey D. Luffy. Sure, though right before that ball of water collided with his head, knocking him out and then some. Luffy made sure not to put too much power into his attack, for obvious reasons. After Kuro got hit with the ball, Luffy began walking towards Kuro and knelt down beside him. Even though you're going to be having fun and relaxing in my crew, you might also go crazy. Shihei. Luffy gave his trademark grin and began laughing. Nami was still sleeping after Luffy won the fight. Luffy went over to her to wake her up and tell her the fight is over. He shook her gently and she began stirring awake. What is it? She asked while rubbing her eye. Fight's over, I kicked ass, and now it's time to get up. You can't expect to sleep all day and let me handle everything, Luffy said. Oh, and why is that? You are the captain after all, Nami said with her arms crossed while looking the other way. Nah, Luffy whined. All right, I'm getting up, Nami said as she began to get up. However, she soon froze as she looked at Luffy and noticed he was still shirtless. But first put a shirt on, Nami said while looking the other way, doing her best to keep an enormous blush out of sight and at bay. Well, that was kind of my only one, so I'll be like this until I get a new one or you sew it. And since I don't have any money, and you obviously need it more than I do, I guess it will be the second option. Luffy grinned. Nami huffed but then sighed. Fine, since you did get me more treasure, I guess I could sew your shirt back up. But first I'll have to clean it, unless you want blood stains all over your shirt. Thanks, Nami, Luffy exclaimed while giving her a hug. Nami blushed profusely and found herself unable to breathe due to his crushing grip. Luffy saw her blue face and let up on the hug as he rubbed the back of his head. Hee, sorry. Whatever. We should go and find Zoro and Usopp. No need, Zoro's right over there, and Usopp is probably not with him cause he has that whole villagers running him out of the village issue to deal with, Luffy said, pointing a finger to the top of the slope, where Zoro was casually walking. When Zoro got to them, he sat down at the other side of the slope and leaned against the wall. He took one good look at Luffy, then immediately closed his eyes. Luffy, put on a shirt, Zoro muttered. Don't like what you see. Luffy smirked evilly at Zoro. Shut up, Zoro yelled with a vein popping from his forehead. I kid. Anyways, how is Usopp doing? Luffy asked. He's with Kaya and the kids. I didn't know what they were talking about though, Zoro still said with his eyes closed. I see, well that's good to hear. Hey kid, what are you going to do with us? The Kuroniko pirates yelled at Luffy. Just wait there, I'll talk to you guys when your captain wakes up, Luffy yelled back. Luffy, what do you mean you'll talk to them? Nami asked. I'll explain when Usopp comes back. After Usopp got back, Luffy began explaining his little deal with Kuro. You what? You wagered Kaya's life, just so that Madman could join your crew, Usopp yelled. He was pretty mad. Calm down, Usopp. It was barely a wager, there was no way I could lose. Besides, it's in the past, Kaya is alive and that's all that matters, Luffy stated. Ugh, just don't go making deals behind people's backs, Usopp sighed. Boy Luffy, you sure about this? I mean, he seems like a pretty bad guy, Zoro questioned. Don't worry Zoro, I think he's just stressed and needs some time to relax. I can sense that he isn't that bad deep down, Luffy said. Whatever, you are the captain, Zoro muttered. Well, I guess I should go wake him up. Luffy stood up and began walking towards the unconscious Kuro. He knelt down and started poking his face. Hey Kuro, wake up, he said as he kept poking him in the face. Kuro stirred awake and smacked Luffy's hand away. Stop poking me, he muttered as he grabbed his head in pain. I see you're as lively as ever, Luffy smirked. Anyways, go tell your crew that you joined my crew and whatnot. We'll be leaving soon, so if there is anything you need to do, I suggest doing it now. Yeah, whatever, Kuro muttered and got up to tell his crew. So yeah, I lost a bet and now we are part of that kid's crew, Kuro said while still clutching his head. What? The crew yelled, which Kuro did not appreciate one bit. Shut up. I have a massive headache right now and your yelling is not helping, Kuro yelled. Sorry, the crew whimpered. So what, does that mean you're not our captain anymore? One of the crew members asked. I don't know, we'll see, Kuro said while walking away towards Luffy and the others. Okay kid, they know we're joining your crew, now what? Kuro asked. Well, I guess it's time to welcome you to our crew as the head of intelligence and commander of the Kuroniko division, Luffy said with a grin. Boy, what the hell? Why can't I have a cool position like that? Zoro yelled while pointing an accusing finger at Luffy. Well, you're the first mate of the Straw Hat Pirates, essentially the second in command, which means when I'm not around you're in charge of the entire crew, Luffy stated. Sounds like a fitting role for me. Zoro nodded as he leaned back against the wall. Sure, anyways let's go back into town, I'm starving. Luffy began walking up the slope, the others except Kuro following. Hey, aren't you coming? Luffy asked. No, there's something I need to do, Kuro said while looking away. I understand. Luffy nodded. In town, Luffy, Zoro and Nami had just finished eating, and were planning on leaving. Luffy finally remembered what he was here for in the first place. Crap, we don't have a ship, Luffy muttered. Just then, Kaya walked in and saw Luffy and the others sitting at a table and walked up to them. Nami noticed her. Is it okay for you to be up and about? Nami asked. Yeah, my illness was caused by my depressed state over my parents' deaths. Usopp-san took so much effort to cheer me up. I can't just stay that way anymore now, can I? Kaya said with a soft smile. I've caused you a lot of trouble. Thank you, and I also prepared a present that you all will like. At the beach, Luffy, Nami and Zoro were surprised to see the present Kaya had prepared for them. It was a small but beautiful ship, a caravel to be exact. Is this really for us? Luffy exclaimed. Yes, please accept it, Kaya said with a smile. It's somewhat old-fashioned, but I was the one who designed it, although I made a few adjustments. I changed the steering column into a steering wheel so it's easier to steer. Also, I added an extra multi-purpose room which can be used for living space or entertainment, etc. I call it the Going Merry. I hope you like it. Mary beamed. First let me tell you how to operate it, things such as turning and adjusting the power. Mary began but was interrupted by Nami. No, you only have to tell me how to operate it. Sure is a cool ship. I like the figurehead, Luffy exclaimed while staring at it. I've prepared everything that you would need for sailing, Kaya said with a kind smile. Arigato, that's really nice of you, Luffy exclaimed. Luffy heard screaming coming from the slope and looked over to see Usopp stuck to a giant bag, rolling downhill. Luffy said and walked up to where Usopp was going to roll towards. He stuck out his fist and waited while whistling and checking his fingernails. Usopp rolled right into his fist, face first. Gee thanks, Usopp muttered under Luffy's fist. With Usopp and Kaya. So, you really are leaving? Usopp-san, Kaya said quietly. Yeah, I should leave before I change my mind. Don't try and stop me. I'm not going to. I had a feeling you would be leaving. That's disappointing. When I return to the village, I'll be able to tell you lots of tales of my heroic adventures, and this time they will be true, Usopp said cheerfully. Kaya nodded. I'll be looking forward to them. Usopp looked up to Luffy and the others who were on the Going Merry. You guys take care too. I'll see you again someday. Why? Luffy questioned. You're really slow. I'll be a pirate like you, so we may meet up on the sea someday. Usopp yelled. The hell are you talking about? Get on board. Everyone is on except you. Zoro said. We're already Nakama. Luffy said blankly. I'm the captain, Usopp yelled while jumping up. Don't be stupid, I'm already the captain. Luffy yelled. Wait, Usopp-san. Before you go, Kaya said quietly with a blush. What is it, Kaya? Usopp turned around to face her. However, Usopp was in for quite a shock. Kaya had leaned up and kissed Usopp on the cheek. Both were blushing furiously as they looked away from each other. Usopp found the courage to wrap his arms around Kaya and pulled her into a hug. I'll miss you, Usopp muttered. I'll miss you too, Usopp-san, Kaya said with tears in her eyes. They pulled away and Usopp got on board the Going Merry as both ships, the Going Merry and the Kuroniko pirate ship, sailed away. Usopp has a girlfriend, everyone chorused, causing the sniper to blush in embarrassment. They all started laughing, even Kuro was chuckling quietly. With Kaya and Merry, he really left. That Usopp, Merry said. Merry, Kaya said quietly. It's really hard to lie. Are you referring to Kuro at all? Merry asked. Kaya shook her head. So you're implying you really did want to stop Usopp-kun from leaving, am I right? Also, I found this letter on the kitchen table a few hours ago. It's directed towards you, but it doesn't have a name on the envelope. Merry handed her the envelope with the letter inside. Kaya opened the envelope and began to read the letter. Dear Kaya Aju-sama, I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused you, even though this apology falls on deaf ears. I hope that you will somehow be able to remember the good times we had back when I was still your caretaker. I have decided I would join up with Luffy's crew and be their nakama. I hope to find relaxation and inner peace during my travels with them. I just wanted to say goodbye. Love, Kurohedol. Kaya now had tears in her eyes as she read the letter and held it close to her chest. Of course I won't forget you, how could I, she thought. Back on the ship. Hey Kuro, can I talk to you in private for a second? Luffy whispered. Sure. Kuro followed Luffy into the main room. Since you're the head of intelligence, I thought you should know what I have planned ahead. Luffy said. And, what is that? Kuro asked intently. I plan on destroying the world government, Luffy said in a cool voice. Kuro stared at him in shock for a second before chuckling a little. What's so funny? Luffy asked. Nothing. It's just you remind me of something I read in the newspaper a while back. A guy named Dragon is supposedly trying to do the same thing and the government has labeled him the most wanted man in the world, Kuro said with a grin. Well, I plan to be that and more. Shihei, Luffy said as he strolled out the door. It seems I have found myself an interesting captain to follow. Kuro grinned then sighed as he went out the door as well. Luffy and friends were sailing along, continuing their journey after they left Syrup Village. Usopp had just painted the new logo of their crew onto the ship's sail. Their crew would now be known as the Straw Hat Pirates, hence the big straw hat sitting atop the skull and crossbones. Now, Usopp was tinkering with the cannon that came with Merry and was trying to get its aim to work. Nami was lying in a beach chair, soaking up some rays, while sipping on some lemonade. She looked deep in thought but decided to not think about it too much as she yawned and closed her eyes, enjoying the warmth and lulled off to sleep. Zoro was doing the same thing as he was leaning up against the rail, Wado resting on his shoulder while his arm was wrapped protectively around it. Kuro was, surprisingly, relaxing on a chair while reading a novel. He seemed less stressed as he was calmly sipping on some tea that he made a few minutes ago. He was really happy that he made the decision to join Luffy's crew as he found this a lot calmer than having to plan a single action that was years ahead. Luffy, however, was doing something that surprised everyone. Instead of running around and making noise like the idiot everyone thought he would be, he was quiet and calm. Luffy was doing a handstand with one hand, his body straight and had his eyes closed. He was meditating. If anyone else had seen this, they would think he was sleeping somehow in a very awkward position. He still had no shirt on, for Nami still hadn't fixed it yet. Usopp saw Luffy and began snickering. He crept up so he was standing behind Luffy's back. He lunged forward, intending on tackling Luffy. However, he was in for a surprise as he phased right through Luffy and landed face first into the deck. If one could see Luffy's face, they'd see a sly smile plastered on his face while his eyes remained closed while meditating. Zoro was awake to see Usopp's fail and burst out laughing. Usopp got up and glared at Zoro, but then a devious smile graced his lips as he went into his bag and grabbed out an egg. While Zoro was laughing, he didn't notice Usopp readying his slingshot and firing an egg that was directed towards him. The egg splattered all over Zoro's face, and now it was Usopp's turn to laugh as Zoro was trying to wipe the egg off of his face. Zoro got up and began charging at Usopp as Usopp ran away and was heading towards the living quarters. While Zoro and Usopp were fighting, Kuro had gone inside the kitchen to put the dishes in the sink and was walking out. As he was walking out, he almost bumped into Usopp, who barged in the living quarters kitchen with a terrified look. The next thing he saw was a fist coming out of nowhere and socking him in the face. Who did that fist belong to? None other than Zoro, who barely missed Usopp. Now, Kuro was seething with rage, and you could almost make out steam coming off of him. Zoro saw that he was clearly upset and made a break for it along with Usopp. Kuro immediately gave chase to them as they ran back out onto the deck. All of the noise they were making caused Nami to wake up, and one thing was clear. Nami is never in a good mood after being woken up from a nap. Would you guys shut up? I'm trying to sleep. Nami screamed as she got over to the three in an instant and pummeled them into the deck. That's what you get for waking up my nap. Nami fumed. Nami's scary. They all groaned. What was that? Nami yelled. And nothing. They all replied. Luffy saw this and burst out laughing while still remaining in his handstand position. Shut up, this is all your fault, Usopp yelled. Soon the three of them went up to Luffy to give them a piece of his mind. Zoro went in for a punch, aiming to knock Luffy down, but Luffy quickly dodged by doing the splits. Usopp soon followed by trying to hit Luffy's legs, trying to knock him off balance, but Luffy quickly stood on his hands as his legs were now hovering a few feet above the ground. Kuro trying to kick Luffy in the chest, but Luffy quickly twirled his legs as he knocked Kuro down. This repeated for a good 10 minutes. Kuro, Zoro, and Usopp all trying to hit Luffy while Luffy gracefully dodged all their attacks. Kuro, Zoro, and Usopp were now panting heavily as they leaned against the railing, catching their breath. Hahaha, that was some good practice. Too bad you guys got tired though. Luffy, 1, Crew, 0. Urusai. The three yelled in unison. Suddenly a fist came down and knocked Luffy down into the deck while he was distracted. And now that's Nami, 1, Luffy, 0. Nami said while standing over Luffy triumphantly. All right, you got me, Luffy said as he rubbed the bump on his head. And put on a damn shirt. Nami yelled as she noticed Luffy was still shirtless. I can't. You still haven't fixed it yet, Luffy yelled back. Nami let out a deep sigh and then began walking into her room. Well, are you coming or not? I'm fixing your shirt now, Nami said while looking over her shoulder back at Luffy. Luffy nodded and ran after Nami into her room. When they were both inside, Nami finished sewing Luffy's shirt back together in 30 minutes. Thanks, Nami. Luffy had put his shirt on and was about to walk out onto the deck. Wait, Luffy. Luffy stopped and turned around to face Nami. Can I ask you, why did you even help me? I mean, you didn't even know me, Nami asked while looking at the floor. Well, because I wanted to, simple as that. Luffy gave his large, toothy grin. But, I mean, you had to have a reason. Nami still wasn't convinced. I don't know. I guess you kind of remind me of someone, Luffy plainly stated. Oh, Nami pressed on. Yeah, she had gorgeous, long orange hair, the most beautiful blue eyes you could ever see, and the most soothing voice that always lulled me to sleep. Wow, she must have been very important to you, Nami said looking down. Of course she is. She's my big sister. Chishishi. Luffy grinned sheepishly. You have a sister? Nami was shocked. Is it not normal for me to have a sister? Luffy tilted his head. No, I was just a little surprised to hear you have a sister. Someone related to you must be a monster. She gawked. Shishishi. Believe me, you have no idea. He grinned like a maniac. I have a sister too, you know. She smiled. Aren't sisters the best? They are always looking out for you. And now we have something in common. Luffy smiled as he went out the door. I guess we do. She returned the smile as she followed after Luffy. Out on deck. Oi, Usopp. What are you doing? Luffy walked up to Usopp, who was tinkering with the ship's cannon. I'm about to test the ship's cannon by shooting it over at those rocks. Usopp pointed to the outcrop of rocks that were about half a kilometer away from the ship. Here, watch. Usopp lit up a match to fire the cannon. At that same moment, Luffy sensed that there were people at the outcrop of rocks and the cannon. Just fired at them. Whatever, I'll just blame it on Usopp when they angrily come aboard. Luffy shrugged and walked away into the kitchen, feeling hungry. In the kitchen, Luffy and Usopp were talking about positions as Usopp was trying to get the position of captain from Luffy but failing miserably. Whatever, I'll let you have that position, but if you screw up I'll replace you, said Usopp. That's fine. Anyways, I've been thinking. To go to the Grand Line we would need one more position to fill. I was thinking along the lines of a cook, he explained. That's a pretty good idea. I'll do it if you pay me, Nami said as she was writing things down in her notebook. All right, our next crew member is going to be a cook, Luffy exclaimed. The next thing the group heard was the sound of a barrel smashing and someone yelling profanities. Come out, you filthy pirates, the person exclaimed, by which the crew deemed to be a man as his voice was low. Luffy walked outside and looked down at the person with a blank expression. The man had what looked to be a saber in his hand, and he didn't look like he was in a talking mood. Luckily, Luffy didn't give a damn and began interrogating the perpetrator. Who the hell are you and why did you smash our barrels? He asked as he saw their water supply lying all over the deck. Shut up. It doesn't matter who I am. With that, the man charged at Luffy, still pissed off. Luffy was not amused as the intruder broke a guard railing. Nami and Usopp were looking through the door window and were watching the whole exchange. There's only one. I feel sorry for the guy, Nami inquired as she saw the man trying to attack Luffy but miserably failing. I've killed a countless number of pirates in my day, but you, a no-name pirate, dares to try and kill my partner. The man was still throwing a bitch fit as Luffy was just sidestepping all the attacks coming his way. Luffy now knew that this man was probably one of the two people he sensed at that outcropping where Usopp fired the cannon. Not wanting to sell Usopp out, mainly because Usopp didn't know what the hell he did, Luffy just did the next best thing that came to his mind. Play dumb. What are you talking about? I don't know who you are, but stop damaging our ship, Luffy yelled as he grabbed the man and threw him against the wall. The man went face first into the wall and fell onto his back. Just at that moment, Zoro walked out of the cabin and saw what all the commotion was about. However, when he saw who was lying on the deck, he was surprised. Oi, Johnny, is that you? He asked, looking down at the man. The man looked up to see Zoro standing on the balcony. He immediately flipped over to get a better look at him. Zoro Aniki, he exclaimed. Why are you on a pirate ship, Aniki? Wait, where's Yasaku? Isn't he with you? Zoro asked. Johnny began explaining what happened and rushed over to the side of the ship. Zoro followed after and gasped at what he saw. There, lying in a small boat, was a man who seemed to be suffering from some sort of illness. He had pale blue skin and several of his teeth had fallen out. Why Yasaku is? Johnny began with tears running down his face. All Zoro could do there was put a hand on Johnny's shoulder and hope for the best. After they brought Yasaku on deck. He seems ill. What happened? He asked. It was perfectly fine until a while ago. Then he grew pale and his teeth started falling out. I don't know what to do. Johnny was on the verge of tears as he looked at his old friend's weak form. His old wound started to bleed and he lost some of his teeth. I didn't know what to do. So I took him to that rocky outcrop over there to let him rest. But then your ship fired a cannonball at us. Usopp's jaw dropped about a foot. He definitely was not expecting anybody to be there. And now this was all his fault. He immediately put his feet together and bowed. I'm sorry, he exclaimed as he had his head bowed. If all problems could be solved with a simple apology, we wouldn't need the police. Isn't that right, partner? Johnny cried as more tears rolled down his cheeks. Aniki, is Yasaku going to die? Johnny asked out of desperation. He wanted reassurance, any reassurance that would tell him that Yasaku wasn't going to die. PFFT, relax, he isn't going to die, Nami said as she walked up to Yasaku to check on him. I agree with Nami. From the symptoms you've told me, it's mostly likely that your friend here has scurvy, Luffy explained as he was standing there the entire time. How, Luffy? How'd you know? Nami asked. My teacher taught me the basics of survival and the most common diseases that people encounter while at sea, and he taught me how to treat them, he explained. From all these stories you've been telling us about your teacher, he seems like one hell of a guy, she said. Haha, you don't even know the half of it. Anyways, back to the scurvy issue. Back in the day, sailors couldn't carry around fresh fruit, so many people had succumbed to the illness known as scurvy due to lack of vitamin C. However, now that it's possible to keep food fresh on ships, people are not falling ill to this disease anymore. Your friend here just needs some fruit and he's good to go. Oi, Usopp, go into the storage. There should be some lemons there. Bring some out and start squeezing the juice into Yasaku's mouth. Luffy, surprisingly, had full control of the situation and knew how to handle it. After spending so much time with Shanks, he learned very useful tips and tricks to surviving out on sea, including basic first aid. Usopp ran into the cabin and returned with a bucket full of lemons and immediately began squeezing the juices into Yasaku's mouth. You sure seem to know your stuff when it comes to medical issues, Nami hypothesized. Nah, I just know the basics of survival. I'm nowhere near qualified to handle my own patients. This little experience just reminded me that we need a doctor, don't we? Luffy grinned. Baka, doctors are one of the more important parts of a crew. How could you forget to find one? She scowled. Haha, it's okay. We'll find one when we find one. He grinned while rubbing the back of his head. Geez, to think, being the captain and all, you would be more responsible. She shook her head at him. Whatever, it's fine now. He turned to Johnny. It will probably take your friend here about 2 or 3 days to completely recover. As Luffy finished explaining, the topic of their discussion rose up off the deck and stood up. or it will take about 5 seconds. He's probably still not completely recovered though, Luffy said with a sweat drop. Johnny and Yasaku were now running around like madmen screaming their heads off in joy. They stopped their tomfoolery and turned towards the crew in a very professional stance. My name is Johnny, and I'm Yasaku, and we're the bounty hunters, they said in unison. Zoro Aniki used to be one of us, but to think the infamous pirate hunter has become a pirate himself. It's nice to see you guys again. Zoro held out his hand and Johnny grabbed it. Yasaku went to grab it as well, but he then stumbled and fell on the ground knocked out cold. Yasaku, Johnny screamed. Like I said before, it's going to take him 2 to 3 days to recover completely. Luffy's sweat dropped. Let's bring him inside and let him rest. Luffy picked him up and brought him into the cabin and set him down on the bed. Later that night, let this be a lesson to all of us. This could happen at any time during our journey, Nami explained while writing things down into a notebook. Yeah, things like this usually happen in long trips. Zoro agreed, but we can't just rely on luck alone. We need someone that is good at controlling diets, she said. I guess that falls under the cook's role. Luffy had a thoughtful look on his face. Guess that means we need a sea cook. If you're looking for a sea cook, I know exactly where to find one. Johnny intervened. Oh, and where would that be? Luffy asked, fully interested. It's near the Grand Line, and the guy that Aniki has been looking for, Hawkeye Mihawk, is also around those parts, he explained. Luffy quirked an eyebrow when he heard Mihawk's name. Shanks had told him many stories of the encounters him and Mihawk had, like the daily duels they would get into or the drinking contests that they had regularly. There was even this one story that he was told, where Shanks and Mihawk went to a rib fest on an island and they woke up the next day, naked in the woods with nothing but rib bone necklaces around their necks and sauce everywhere. Luffy had to suppress a laugh as he remembered that last story for SH Chibukai. Mihawk is supposedly one hell of a guy when it comes to partying. Its direction is north-northeast. Johnny pointed to the direction. And with that, the crew prepared for the next part of their journey, to find a sea cook and get her to join their crew. Several hours later, I think I see it, Usopp shouted from the crow's nest. There it is, the floating restaurant. Baratie, Johnny shouted. Everyone gasped as they saw the classy ship that was floating just a few hundred meters away. What do you think, guys? Pretty cool, huh? Inside the cabin, Yasaku had woken up and he ventured out onto the deck to see what the commotion was about. Turns out that they had just reached a high-class restaurant and they were planning to stay. By now he had fully recovered, so why not go out and have some grub? He began drooling at the thought of all that delicious food just waiting for him. Just then, a marine ship sounded its bells and was sailing alongside the Going Merry. I smell trouble, Zoro inquired. You don't say, Zoro, Luffy joked. Johnny was quietly inching away as soon as he saw the marine ship and was finding his way to the cabin where Yasaku was. A silhouette appeared onto the deck of the marine ship. I've never seen your pirate mark before. I'm the Marine Lieutenant, Iron Fist Full Body, the man exclaimed, crashing his fist down onto the railing. Who is your captain? Show yourself, he yelled to the group of misfits in front of him. I'm right here, so what do you want? Luffy said while stepping forward. You guys seem like a pack of morons to me, he said, and noticed 2 figures hiding behind the cabin door. Although, I have seen those 2 before. You claim to be pirate hunters, don't you? He taunted the 2 pirate hunters. And Nami, they both exclaimed and came out from hiding. It looks like you finally caught yourselves some pirates. He taunted some more. We are. Johnny began and reached into his coat pocket. I'll show you just what we pirate hunters do. He threw a handful of what looked to be wanted posters all over the deck. He was trying to prove to the lieutenant that they were the real deal and were not just some lame joke. One of the posters had caught Nami's attention and she bent down to pick it up. What's all this? Nami asked as she picked up the poster. These are all people with bounties on their heads, Nami Ain-san. Johnny noticed that she was holding a certain wanted poster and began sweating a little. It means that if we get him, we get the money offered on their wanted poster. He explained some more. Isn't it great business, Ain-san? Yasaku joined their conversation as well. Johnny quickly shut him up as he saw that Nami was clearly upset. His theory was proven as Nami quickly scrunched up the poster and walked away. Luffy was observing everything and saw what happened. He knew Nami saw Arlong's wanted poster. However, now was not the time to talk to her about it. Having everyone around here listening would just make her mad and not help at all. He knew that. So, he decided that he'd talk to her when they were alone to give her privacy. By now, Full Body was walking off the deck with a beautiful woman. He turned to a marine. This ship is an eyesore. Sink it. The marine saluted and followed out the command. As the cannonball was being prepared to fire, Luffy jumped onto the railing to where the trajectory point was, or where he thought it would be. The cannonball fired and a ball of steel came hurtling towards the Going Merry. Luffy, having honed reflexes, turned his arm into water and let the cannonball phase into his arm. He turned his other arm towards a random direction and redirected the cannonball through his body and out that arm. However, the random direction he redirected the cannonball to happened to be the Baratie. Shit, I'm stupid. Inside the restaurant, head chef Zeph, are you okay? A cook asked to a man that was lying down in a smoldering heap. I'm okay, he said while getting up and dusting himself off. Get back to work this instant. He grabbed his extremely large chef hat and placed it back on his head. But, chef, you, don't make me lose my temper. Blood began staining the base of his hat where his head was. Our only duty is to cook for our guests. Are you trying to ruin our restaurant? He readjusted his extremely large mustache. Later, Luffy was being dragged by 2 chefs into the room where the cannonball hit and where the head chef was. We've got him, chef. They threw him inside and left so the head chef could decide on what to do. Luffy immediately bowed his head and said sorry. However, he then noticed that the person he was bowing to had a peg leg. Your leg, he cried. He still had some things to work on, like staying calm after being caught. Idiot, the chef yelled as he slammed his good foot into Luffy's face. This didn't happen to me just now, he explained as Luffy calmed down. What? Oh, so it wasn't me. However, I'm still injured. Medical and repair bills are going to be expensive, he exclaimed with a sigh as he leaned back onto his bed. I'm not going to bargain with you on that, Luffy replied. The chef quirked an eyebrow in interest. But, I have no money, he said truthfully. That's truly unfortunate. But, since you have no money, you'll have to work it off then, the chef said with a devious smirk. Oh sure, I can do that. You'll have to work here for 1 year. Oh, 1 year. On the merry. Luffy sure is taking a long time, Usopp inquired. Yeah, Nami agreed. If he'd just change his personality, this sort of thing would never happen. He's too honest for his own good, she sighed. Inside the restaurant, what appeared to be a waiter was walking towards a table with a wine glass. He stopped by a table which hosted the Marine lieutenant that the Straw Hats encountered earlier, and the beautiful woman he walked off with. The waiter began pouring some wine into each glass. Look, isn't that guy over there Lieutenant Fullbody? One of the diners said. Wow, you're pretty amazing. Everyone is looking at you, the woman inquired. Nonsense, they're just admiring your admiring, he replied smoothly. A toast to your beauty. He held out his glass, with which the woman replied by clinking glasses and taking a sip from their glasses. Hey waiter, this taste. He smelled the wine. This fragrance. It's the fragrance of Mikuyo City in the north. A bit sour and a bit spicy. Wurzburger Stein. Right, waiter, he exclaimed. By now the entire was listening with interested ears. The waiter took off the cloth from the wine bottle. Sorry, but it's not, sir. He took a spoon and placed it in the lieutenant's hand. Your soup's getting cold. Please enjoy it while it's still hot, he said as he walked away. By the way, I'm the assistant head chef, Sanji, not a waiter. He turned his head to talk to them as he walked away. All the waiters ran away after what happened yesterday. The woman began giggling as Sanji finally disappeared. Fullbody lowered his head in embarrassment. The entire restaurant had to try and keep in their laughter for fear of Fullbody going into butt-mad mode. Truth be told, Fullbody was very butthurt and he wanted revenge. Discouraged, the woman asked to Fullbody, "'Cause of the wine?" A little. He still had his head down. My tongue's a bit numb today. He tried to cover up his embarrassing act. The woman only continued to giggle further. Upstairs in the staff quarters. 1 week, please. Luffy held out a finger. What did you say? The chef continued to smirk more. 2 weeks. Luffy now held out 2 fingers. Hey, you ruined the restaurant and injured the head chef. The chef leaned forward to use his extremely tall chef's hat to bonk Luffy on the head. Do you think you can make up for that in just 2 weeks? Then it's decided. 3 weeks. No way. He began spinning and kicked Luffy. Of course, Luffy was caught off guard and wasn't ready for the oncoming attack, so he crashed into the wall. Luffy got up from the rubble and began dusting off his hat. I've waited and trained for 10 whole years to become a pirate. There's no way I'm staying here for 1 year. Then it's final. I'll work 1 week here. That's my final decision. Oh, you're that much in a hurry to become a pirate, eh? He began walking towards Luffy. Well then, how about this? Instead of 1 year, you give me one of your legs. He held out a hacksaw as it glistened in the sunlight. Time to screw with this guy, Luffy thought. Alright, that's pretty easy. Luffy took the saw from his hands and chopped his leg off. Good Oda, boy. I was just joking. What have you done? He backed away while looking in shock. Haha, so was I. Luffy turned his chopped off leg into water and it formed back onto his body. Ho, so you ate a devil's fruit. Huh, which one? He asked on with interest plastered on his face. The Mizu Mizu no Mai. I'm a waterman. Luffy turned his hand into water to demonstrate. That is a pretty powerful devil fruit you have there, boy. How in the world did you find one at the lojas in the East Blue of all places? From my old buddy Shanks, of course, Shishishi. He grinned sheepishly. Now my question is, how the hell do you know red-haired Shanks? Zeph was really surprised. A kid with a loja ability randomly appears in the East Blue of all places, and now he has relations with a Yonko. What is to come of this era? Shanks ported in my hometown for a year and I got to know him better. he found on an Akuma no Mi on one of his voyages and I accidentally ate it. Shishishi. He took off his hat and began staring at it thoughtfully. Then, before he was about to leave, he entrusted me with his hat, his treasure, and we made a promise that I would return his hat to him when I become a great pirate. And this hat has been my treasure ever since. He left the part out about Shanks training him because that information was best left unrevealed to people other than his nakama. That is some story there, kid. But it doesn't matter. You're still working for 1 year to pay this all of. He screamed and attempted to kick Luffy again. But this time Luffy is prepared and his kick just phased right through him. She, not this time. Awesome. Luffy stuck his tongue out. Why are you so hellbent on only working for 1 week? I already told you. And besides, the damage that I'm going to cause is going to make you want to throw me out maybe even before 1 week. He grinned devilishly. Whatever, we'll see what happens. Now go downstairs and get to work. We'll see if your threat holds true. He pointed towards the stairs. You are on. Awesome. Luffy stormed downstairs ready to tear shit up. As he walked down the stairs from the crew quarters, he noticed some commotion happening at a certain table. He observed what appeared to be the same Marine that ordered an assault on his ship, the woman he was with, and some blonde guy dressed in a suit. He assumed that was the waiter. He raised an eyebrow in interest and simply observed the events from atop the stairs. The Marine stomped on a bug while the waiter was walking away and placed it in his soup. Luffy noticed a sly smirk on the man's face as he called for the waiter again, rather loudly, probably trying to get the entire restaurant's attention. The waiter turned around and walked over towards the table once again. Didn't I already mention that I'm not a waiter? The man sighed. However, the man quickly ignored the Marine as he saw the beautiful woman dining with him. Though I can see that you've got great taste when it comes to your company. He grabbed the lady's hand. So what do you say, miss? Care to ditch this guy and have some wine with me? Fullbody slammed his hand on the table looking quite upset. Oi, does this restaurant serve bug soup to his customers? He pointed towards the bug that he put in his soup. Bugs? The man questioned as he looked at the soup. And what is this bug in soup? He questioned. That should do the trick. I'm very sorry, sir, but I don't know either, he replied back with a smirk. I'm not much of an expert on bugs. His smirk widened as the entire restaurant broke out into a fit of giggles and laughs. Obviously, the blonde man had won this battle of wits. Fullybody was obviously not taking the defeat in stride as he was clenching his teeth and clutching the table sheet. He was like that for a couple of seconds until he finally snapped. Stop mocking me, he shouted as he brought his iron fist upon the table and broke it in half. With the crew, the commotion could be heard outside, as Zoro, Nami and Usopp had docked outside a little ferry boat. They were going to see how Luffy was doing, until they heard what to them sounded like a table breaking. Back inside, the blonde man was now kneeling on the ground clutching the soup that had spilled over. If you had simply picked the bug out, it would have been edible. I spent 3 full days and nights preparing this soup. He was clearly pissed. A shadow was covering his face so one couldn't see his expression, but his tone of voice showed that he was not too happy. To add insult to injury, Fullbody stomped on his hand and began twisting his foot. Do you think you should be using such a tone against a customer? He added, which wasn't helping the situation at all. Luffy could clearly see that the blonde man was upset, and he didn't even have to use Haki to notice the deadly aura coming off of him. Can money fill your stomach? He asked the Marine with clear venom in his voice. Nanny, was only the Marine's reply. I said, can money fill your stomach? Then, in an instant, the blonde man was twirling his legs while on his hands. It seemed pretty stupid to the people in the restaurant, but Luffy was not so ignorant. He saw what he was doing and he was fairly impressed. The fight was over soon after, as the chef had landed several kicks to the guy's head and knocked him out. He was now holding him in the air by the neck. Under all the commotion, no one noticed Zoro, Nami and Usopp walk into the restaurant. They were surprised when they came in and the first thing they saw was some blonde guy holding up the scumbag that attacked their ship, all bloodied and bruised. Just then, a very large man came out of the hallway leading to the restrooms. He had a small rope tied around his head and a basic uniform with an apron. He seemed pretty upset as his face was contorted and he pointed his finger accusingly. Hey, you're at it again, Sanji. He began walking toward the chef, who Luffy now assumed was Sanji. What are you doing to our customer? Isn't that a Marine lieutenant? He yelled, angered. Not a problem, you shitty cook. And don't talk to me that way. He replied smoothly. A shitty cook like you has no right calling me shitty. To a restaurant, customers are everything. What are you thinking? Beating up our precious customers? Customer or not, it's no different. This guy not only ruined our food, he also insulted the chef right to his face. He dropped the man to the floor, whom let out a groan as he reached the ground. That's why I thought I should teach him a lesson. What is with this restaurant? Do you treat all your customers like this? How does it even stay in business? I'll destroy it. Your precious little restaurant, I'll destroy it. I'll contact my superiors. Fullbody exclaimed from his slumped position. Is that so? Guess I can't let you leave her alive. He began walking up to Full Body. Ever so slowly, each step felt like an hour for Full Body as he saw his approaching doom. However, the other chefs came running and suppressed Sanji so he couldn't move. The chefs yelled at Sanji to stop. "Let me go." He started it. He yelled in protest. The bastard started it. He continued his struggle against the chefs. "Just who do you think you are, huh?" He was clearly pissed. The glare he sent to Full Body was proof of that. Deciding he wanted to get off the sidelines, Luffy made his move. He walked down the stairs toward the commotion, each passing step bringing him ever so closer to his target. Full Body was unaware of the approaching danger. He was too busy paying attention to Sanji that he didn't even notice Luffy sneak up beside him. "Hey, you're the asshole that shot a cannonball at my ship." Startled, Full Body turned to his left to see the same boy with a straw hat standing in front of him. "What do you want, kid? Get lost," he yelled. He was in no condition to fight anyone right now. "I just want some payback for that cannonball you shot at my ship." Luffy cracked his knuckles with a malicious grin on his face. Before Full Body could respond, he was met with a quick fist to the face, sending him flying across the restaurant. "Aw, that's better," Luffy grinned. The entire restaurant was taken aback, including the chefs. "Who are you?" yelled Patty, the large man. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I was the one who did the damage on your ship earlier. Well, it wouldn't have happened if this marine guy didn't decide to attack my ship first. I'll be working here for a week to repay the damages." "Okay, kid, but remember the one rule that we follow here. Customers are gods. Got that?" Patty questioned. "What kind of dumb rule is that? If a customer like that jackass shows up, I'm not just gonna let him step all over me. I don't work under anyone's orders but my own." "Got that?" Luffy taunted, obviously not liking the idea of anyone giving him orders. "Well, then I will have teach you a lesson in discipline," Patty yelled as he swung at Luffy. Luffy simply blocked it with his forearm and pushed Patty's arm back right at him. "I'd like to see you try and fight me in live to tell the tale." He smirked as he began walking towards his crew. Everyone in the room was in shock at what just happened. How could that skinny little kid fight off that mini giant? He got to his crew with a great idea in mind. "Hey guys, I think I just found ourselves a cook." "Chishishi." He pointed towards the blonde guy. "Hey," all the Straw Hats yelled in surprise. To them, their captain was a strange one indeed. After being at the restaurant for half an hour, the boy already found someone he thought was worthy of being the cook. "Oi, Luffy, are you sure that guy is capable of being on a pirate ship?" Zoro was skeptical. Sure, the blonde guy seemed like he knew how to cook, considering Zoro overheard the conversation and apparently, the blonde guy was the assistant chef. But could he hold himself in a fight was the real question. Being on a pirate ship requires more than just skill in a particular role. You would need to be able to fight or you would be considered deadweight. As if sensing Zoro's thoughts, Luffy replied, "Don't worry, he's a good chef from what I've heard, and he's a more than capable fighter." His eyes moved to Zoro's for a split second, telling the swordsman not to worry. "Anyways, apparently, I'm going to be working here for a week to pay off the damages, so it will give me plenty of time to recruit Sanji." They all assumed Sanji was the chef, and it will give you guys a nice little break. A smile crept onto everyone's face after hearing Luffy mention the word break. One smile in particular was the largest. Kuro was smiling like a madman. Oh, how he loved this new lifestyle. "By the way, Kuro, approximately how long do you think it will take for the Kuroniko division to gather enough supplies to regroup with us?" he asked. "Oh, I'd say given the status they were in when we left Syrup, about a week, give or take a few days." All right. Tell them to just wait for further orders until I deem it necessary that we group." "Got it." Kuro nodded. "Sure, I'll send word later today. But do you have any specific reason as to why you want to wait for them to regroup with us? I mean, wouldn't it be beneficial for us to have strength in numbers?" Kuro asked, slightly confused. "I understand what you mean, but I'd rather our crew lay low during our time in East Blue, and I also have other plans." For a split second he glanced at Nami, more specifically the spot where the tattoo of the Arlong pirates was. The quick glance went unnoticed by Kuro, who merely shrugged. "I guess if that's what you think is best, then I guess I have to take your word for it. Now if you will excuse me, I've just been dying to try the food here." He smirked and walked past Luffy. Luffy chuckled slightly. To him, Kuro seemed to be having a fun time so far. Suddenly, the doors burst open, revealing the silhouette of a figure in the sunlight. The silhouette took several steps into the restaurant. It was revealed to be a male who seemed to be in his late 20s to early 30s, and from what Luffy could sense, was dying from starvation. There were murmurs among the customers, identifying the man there to be a pirate of Don Krieg's crew. He continued walking slowly. What seemed like an agonizingly long time for the customers was in reality only a couple of seconds as he finally reached the dining table and sat down. Kicking his feet up in the air, he said, "I don't care what it is. Just get me some food." Patty was there to greet him as he had on his trademark "customers are gods" smile on while clasping his hands together. "Welcome, you worthless bastard." His mouth barely moved as he said it cheerfully. The rest of the restaurant gasped as they thought that he was going to be killed for sure. I'll only say it again. Bring me some food or I'll have to use force. I'm sorry, sir, but we expect that you pay for the food here. Do you have any money? The man lifted a gun that he had in a belt holster into the air, pointing it at Patty's head. Is a bullet okay? He answered, clearly not amused, but Luffy could see that his eyes were faded. That man was dying, so I'll assume that you don't have money. Patty immediately brought both his fists down onto the man after uttering the sentence. A chair was broken as the man went crashing to the floor. The rest of the restaurant began hollering things like, "Way to go, cook." Wow, these guys sure take their business seriously, Luffy thought, not completely surprised by the violent solution to their customer problem. The man was kneeling on the floor clutching his growling stomach, his breaths becoming more harsh and shallow. "Oh, your stomach is growling, you damn filthy pirate. That was a fart. Hurry up, you jerk. Get me something to eat." He growled up at the man, growling stomach and all. "You're no customer, so get the hell out of here," Patty yelled, finally snapping. Meanwhile, Sanji had sneaked away from all the commotion and went into the kitchen. Luffy turned his head and observed him cutting vegetables. Interesting. Patty had begun his assault on the fallen man. He began kicking at the man's stomach while the man took it all. No energy to fight back, all he could do was clutch his stomach and groan in pain. Luffy felt sympathy for the man, as he could relate, having to fight for food every day during his training. Even having to go without food for days, Luffy knew what it was like to be starving. Though at the same, Luffy had no obligation to help him, so he simply observed. Patty soon stopped his assault and stood triumphantly over the man. "All right, everyone, please continue and enjoy your meal." He bowed as he picked him up and walked out to the back. He threw him on the ground and walked away, muttering about taking out the trash. He began rolling pain. Damn it, I wouldn't normally let anyone get away with that crap. By now, Luffy was on the upper level observing him. He decided to intervene. "Hey, you're starving, aren't you?" Luffy felt empathy towards the man as he recalled the many nights he went without food. Shut up. I'm not hungry in the slightest, he groaned back. "Whatever you say." Just then, Sanji came out of the restaurant holding a plate of what looked to be seafood and rice in his hand. He walked up to the man and placed the plate down in front of his broken form. He looked up and gasped in shock. Sanji had sat down against the railing and he took a puff of his cigarette. "Eat up." "Shut up. This is even worse. I won't accept charity. Take it away." Sanji sighed in annoyance. For someone who was starving, he was being really stubborn. "Stop acting so touch, just eat it already. To me, any hungry person is a customer. I can't pay for this. This vast sea is very cruel. It's awful not having food or water. Just awful. I understand starving people more than anyone. I don't give a shit if you want to die with dignity, but eating now, you could look forward to tomorrow, right?" He swallowed as he looked hungrily at the food. In an instant he grabbed the plate and began chowing down as much as he could. Tears were cascading down his face as he was finally able to eat in what seemed to him like an eternity. "This is so delicious, almost too good to be true. I thought I was gonna die." He began eating hungrily at his food again while muttering and rambling on how delicious it was. So you like it, huh?" Sanji smirked. The touching moment was broken as Luffy's loud laughter filled the air. "I definitely found my new cook. Hey you there, Sanji, how about joining me?" Both the man and Sanji looked up in confusion. "You'll be the chef aboard my pirate crew." "You're a pirate. Then why did you attack the restaurant?" "That wasn't my fault. That bastard Marine attacked us and the cannonball got redirected towards your restaurant." "Oh, so it was that shitty Marine, huh?" Sanji sounded a little more pissed. "Anyways, you should stop from causing any more damage to this restaurant. The head chef here used to be a chef aboard a notorious pirate crew. To him, this restaurant is worth more than any treasure." "Oh, so that Asen used to be a pirate. That's why he's so strong." "Well, most pirates in the East Blue like to come here a lot," Sanji added. "Yeah, this place seems to always be lively. It's why all of the waiters are gone. The constant fighting between the cooks and pirates scare them off." That's probably why that Asen wants me to work here for a full year. Too bad that's not happening." "Hey, so you going to join me or not?" "I refuse. I still have reason to stay here." "Nope, I also refuse." "Refuse what?" "I refuse your refusal. You're a good cook, and from what I've seen, a capable fighter as well, so you should join my crew." "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not coming with you just because you say you want me to." "Whatever, I know you'll change your mind, whether you want to or not." Luffy grinned mischievously. "Sorry to interrupt, but I'm part of Don Krieg's pirate crew. My name is Jin." "So you're a pirate too, huh? What's your goal?" Jin asked in interest. "That's easy. My goal is to become the Pirate King by finding One Piece. I'm headed for the Grand Line." Luffy replied calmly. Jin was shocked to say the least. This kid who looked no older than 18 said he was headed for the most dangerous place on the planet, and at such a young age. "How many people are in your crew?" "Around 106 including him." Luffy pointed to Sanji. "What? Why are you including me in your count?" Sanji yelled. "Because you're going to be a part of my crew." Luffy replied as if it was the most simple concept in the world. You just won't let this go, will you?" Anyways, why do you ask, Jin? Luffy went back to the more pressing matter. I've experienced firsthand what the Grand Line is capable of. Our crew was over 1,000 strong and we got annihilated. I don't mean this out of disrespect, but I recommend not going to the Grand Line. That place is hell itself. Jin looked visibly traumatized while he talked about the Grand Line. Apparently something horrible happened to him and his crew while they had ventured out onto those dangerous seas. Do you know a lot about the Grand Line? Luffy asked. No, nothing at all. That's why it's so scary. Are you sure you're one of Don Krieg's men to think he'd hire such chickens? Sanji took another whiff of his cigarette. Call me what you will, but I know what I witnessed. But I've wasted too much of your time. I really must get going. My captain is probably out there waiting for me. Jin stood up, now with a full belly of food. Sanji was nice enough to find him a dinghy that he could use to temporarily set sail and find his crew. He was standing on the dinghy facing the both of them. Well, I'll see you later. I'm still going to the Grand Line. Luffy said blankly. Yeah, do what you want. We're strangers, so I've got no right trying to stop you. But I have warned you. And Sanji-san, thank you very much for all you've done. You saved my life and that fried rice was the best. Can I come here again? He asked with a real smile. Anytime. Sanji replied back. Hey, waiter boy. Oh, here you are. Zeph called out from above them as he saw the empty plate of food and Jin, who had his strength back and was ready to float away. I'm so sorry. Now you're going to get into trouble for letting me eat here for free. Sanji began walking towards the plate of food. Whatever. He picked the plate up and dropped it over the ledge into the ocean below. Well, they don't have any proof now, do they? He smirked. Jin's eyes began welling up with tears as he bowed his head in complete gratitude. Arigato, Sanji-san. I'll never forget this. Jin soon drifted away past the horizon onto the great open sea. Oi, Sanji, waiter boy, get back to work. And soon, Luffy and Sanji went back into the restaurant. When Luffy walked into the restaurant, he saw that his crewmates were all sitting at a table enjoying mouth-watering plates of food. Oi, what the hell? I'm here working while you guys get to enjoy delicious food. That hurts, Luffy yelled as his stomach growled. Alright, I'm just going to have some food since I missed lunch. He picked up a fork and began eating from the plate closest to him, which happened to be Nami's. As Luffy was chowing down on Nami's food, which she didn't seem to mind at all, as she was done her fill, Usopp put a booger into a glass of water and handed over to Luffy. Here, Luffy, have some water to wash that all down. Usopp was snickering quietly as Luffy took the cup. He brought the cup closer and closer to his lips until it finally touched his mouth. By this time, Nami, Zoro, and Kuro were also giggling quietly, waiting for the tragedy to occur. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, Luffy smacked the cup against Usopp's lips and forced the water and the booger down his throat. You drink it. By now, the entire restaurant was giving dirty looks towards their table as their laughter was heard throughout the entire restaurant. Sanji, who was serving another table, looked over at the table where they all were. Are those idiots all part of his crew? He muttered under his breath. But then, he noticed a beautiful girl with orange hair among them. He handed the wine bottle he was pouring over to the customer. Pour it yourself. He then appeared in front of Nami with a rose in his hand, kneeling on the ground. Swooning, he said, Oh, Mother Ocean, thank you for arranging this encounter. Oh, my love, go on, laugh at me. As long as I'm with you, it matters not if I'm a pirate or a devil. But alas, there is such a great obstacle between us, he said, clutching his chest. Nami had no idea what was going on or who this guy was, but the flattery was sure as hell fine with her. To her, it seemed like he worked here. She quickly formulated a plan to use this guy to get as much free stuff out of this place as possible. Luffy just looked on with a blank expression, already having seen his flirtatious attitude. Just his flirtatious attitude, and her greed, nothing else. And that obstacle is me, right, Sanji? Zeph was standing behind the lot of them with a frown on his face. That's just fine. Why not just run off and be a pirate with them? Sanji turned around and glared at Zeph. We don't even need you here anymore. The other cooks began laughing from the kitchen as they were looking over the commotion. The other cooks don't like you anyways. Why don't you become a pirate or whatever you please? Why not just get the hell out of here? Zeph was dead serious. What the hell is this? I didn't do shit, and you're blowing your head off, old fart. He walked closer to the old chef. I don't care about your other excuses, but I will not allow my cooking to be insulted. I don't care what you're going to say, but I will continue being a chef here whether you like it or not. Sanji grabbed him by the collar. How dare you hit your own boss? Zeph grabbed a hold of his jacket. You stupid eggplant. He threw him across the restaurant. He landed on the crew's table. But everyone saw this coming and they each grabbed a plate to prevent spillage. Sanji groaned. Are you kidding me? No matter how hard you try, I'm gonna stay as chef here until you go to hell, he exclaimed from his slumped position. I won't die. I'll live for another 100 years, Zeph said as he walked back into the kitchen. Stubborn old fool. Sanji got up and dusted himself off. Well, isn't this great? The Asan wants you gone and I want you in my crew. This is a perfect opportunity to come join us, Luffy exclaimed. Hell no. When will you take no for an answer? Sanji yelled back. Same thing happened to us, Zoro and Nami said in unison. After about an hour of Nami milking Sanji for all he was worth, the crew decided to head back to the ship to get some rest. They were all standing around casually. It was eerily misty as they all stared out to sea, or what they could see of it. Man, I'm getting sick of this place. You think we'll be able to leave soon? Usopp sighed. Beats me, Zoro replied with a yawn. I don't know why you all want to leave this place. It's got free food, a nice atmosphere. Nami started but was interrupted by Zoro. You're the only one. Luffy walked out onto the deck of the restaurant carrying an oversized garbage bag. Oi Luffy, hurry up and get out of this mess, Usopp complained. You can't wait a bit longer. I've almost got Sanji in our grasp, Shishishi. Usopp begrudgingly accepted his proposal. Fine, but please hurry. Just then, Luffy sensed something approaching the restaurant. He quickly snapped his head into the direction of the incoming object, but to everyone else, it looked like he was staring at empty space. Oi Luffy, what's wrong? Nami asked. It seems like Jin's captain has decided to pay this place a visit. Luffy grinned. Apparently he's worth 17 million billion and commands a fleet of over 5,000 men. But from what I can sense, he only has about 200 with him, and they all seem to be dying. What? That's still a pretty high bounty. That's 2 million more than Buggy's. Nami half screamed. She hated her luck sometimes. Why did they always have to encounter the strong pirates? You really think I'm going to lose to some weak-ass pirate with that low of a bounty? Nami paused and stuttered out an answer. WWLH, his bounty is pretty high. He chuckled at her response. He almost forgot that the bounties in East Blue are not very high, given that it's the weakest and most peaceful sea. You don't have to worry about a thing. This fight is going to be more one-sided than anything. He grinned as the ship came into view behind him. Soon, the ship came closer towards the restaurant and it towered over the tiny ship, easily twice as big. Everyone inside the restaurant began to panic and began fleeing the restaurant. Oi, Luffy, what should we do? That ship is massive. Usopp screamed. Calm down, Usopp. Take a closer look. Luffy sighed. Usopp calmed down and looked closer as the fog dispersed. He let out a gasp as he saw the condition of the ship. Dents, scratches, and torn sails littered the ship, and even mast was tilting, barely held together. You guys, go inside the restaurant and stay there in case something happens. I need to talk to Nami about our next destination in case we have to make an emergency leave. Luffy jumped onto Mary. What? Are you mad? Usopp seemed rather scared. What's the matter, you chicken? Zoro teased. And no, let's go. Zoro and Kuro, you can go first, I'll cover the rear. Heh, figured as much. Let's go, Zoro-san. We might finally be able to see some action. Kuro walked past Usopp followed by Zoro. After everyone left, Nami turned to Luffy. So what place did you have in mind? We're not going there, you are, Luffy said. What are you talking about? Nami was confused. You're going to steal the Going Merry, Nami. Luffy was serious here. Why? I saw you looking at Arlong's wanted poster earlier. I know about you, remember? Luffy's expression softened. And that threat will linger, even when you're having fun with us. But couldn't you guys just come with me? Why do I have to steal it? I want to make everyone think you betrayed us. If Arlong thinks you're with us, he'll think of it as an act of mutiny and attack people on the island. It's better this way. He was quite happy with his plan. You can use the treasure on board the ship. We'll try and do this the peaceful way, to keep people involved to a minimum. And if that doesn't work, well, I'm always up for a fight. He grinned. Luffy, Nami muttered as she began tearing up. She did the first thing that came to mind. She wrapped her arms around his back and pulled herself to him. She began sobbing into his chest, saying thank you as many times as possible. She took it back. Her luck was truly amazing. Luffy laughed and returned the embrace. They pulled apart and Nami began wiping her tears. And Nami, don't worry. We'll come after you. I'll make sure of it, no matter what. I just have this feeling that shit is going to go down here. So, do we have a deal, Miss Navigator? He grinned and held out his hand. Nami laughed, nodded and grabbed Luffy's hand, giving it a firm shake. Deal. All right. Now I think it's time to set this plan in motion. Johnny and Yosaku are still on the ship. I think you're smart enough to find a way to get rid of them. He smirked and winked at her, knowing she knew the implications. Yeah, and Luffy, as if already knowing what she was thinking, he replied. Don't worry about a thing, Nami. I'm way stronger than that Don Krieg guy. You just focus on getting to Kakoyashi. I'll handle everything here. He smiled at her, jumped off Mary and ran into the restaurant. She smiled and turned around, preparing the ship to leave. One boy had managed to bring hope into her miserable life, and the hope was growing exponentially. If you were her Bellemere, how would you judge Luffy? He doesn't even act like a pirate. She looked out into the sea towards her home village. It was almost like a hidden instinct. She always knew where her home was and would always stare out in the same direction when gazing upon the sea. Inside, as Luffy walked through the doors of the restaurant, he noticed everyone standing in front of Jin and some big guy in metal armor. Must be the captain. There was yelling, something about not supplying food to him. He heard Jin yelling desperately, "Please, we promise not to attack this restaurant. We just need food for our crew." Jin was trying to be reasonable. "We want to hear it from your captain," one of the cooks argued. I won't do anything. I promise I will leave after I eat. So please, just spare some food." Krieg was on his hand and knees kneeling before the cooks. "Please stop, Captain. Don't beg." Jin tried to stop him from begging. How could his great captain do such a humble thing as to begging? His protests were ignored as Krieg continued. "Please, even leftovers, anything will suffice." His plea seemed to have fell on deaf ears as all the cooks still weren't buying it. Sanji, however, didn't listen as he set a bowl of food in front of the pirate captain. "Take it, Jin. Let him eat it." Jin looked up at Sanji in awe. It was hard to imagine that someone like this actually existed. Krieg wasted no time in eating as he said his thanks and began eating. "Oi Sanji, take that food away from him. Don't you know what kind of person he is? He's a snake. He once raised a marine flag on his ship and docked at a town and then pillaged it when the townspeople least expected it. What makes you think this is any different? You might have endangered all our lives," Karn warned. As Karn was finished his rant, Krieg quickly got up off the ground and punched Sanji straight in the jaw, sending him flying back several feet, groaning in pain. "Krieg, what are you doing? You promised that you'd never hurt these people, so I took you here. Besides, that man saved our lives." "Yeah, the food was good." Krieg got up and stood tall over everyone else. "I'm gonna cut things short. My ship is wrecked, and I want a new one, so since you gave me food, I'm going to be nice and let you collect your things and leave with your lives. Also, there's about 100 men still alive on my ship. I need food for all of them." "Like hell we will." "We refuse," Karn yelled. "Don't be mistaken. I'm not ordering food. I'm giving you an order that you will obey or else." Zeph suddenly appeared in front of Krieg with a giant bag. "Here's food for 100 men. Help him get it on board," he said with no emotion in his voice. "Head Chef Zeph." The staff chorused. "What is that old man doing feeding his enemy?" Luffy looked on with interest. "Did you just say Zeph?" Krieg asked as he stepped back a bit in shock. "Owner, what are you thinking? If the pirates get better, then they'll take over the restaurant," one of the cooks yelled. "That's if they have the guts. Isn't that right, Mr. Couldn't get through the Grand Line?" He looked over at Krieg, whose eyes were bugged out. "Ew, you're the red leg Zeph." Krieg looked on with bugged out eyes. This was a complete shock to him, as he wasn't expecting such a legendary pirate to be here of all places. "So, you're still alive, huh? One of the greatest pirates in history. So what? It doesn't concern you, and as you can see, I make my living as a cook now." Krieg began cackling in laughter. "That's one way of putting it. But to me, it looks more like that's the only thing you're able to do," he said as he eyed his peg leg. "So the rumors were true. You lost your leg in an accident at sea and now you can no longer do battle." Krieg smirked confidently, knowing that he had the advantage. "So, why would I need feet to cook? As long as I have hands. Now say what you really want to say." "You're the only man I know of that has returned from the Grand Line alive, and you probably kept a journal of your encounters during your voyage." "I want that journal." "Indeed, you are correct in assuming that I have a journal. But I'm not giving it to you." Krieg lost his smirk. "That journal is not mine alone. It's the pride of my entire crew. Someone like you would never understand its true value." Krieg was angry now. "Then you leave me no choice. If you want hand over the journal, then I'll just take it by force. I may have barely escaped the Grand Line, but I had the essentials going in: power, a giant crew, and ambition. The only thing I lacked was information. With this journal, I'll be able to create another fleet of pirates capable of conquering and ruling the Grand Line and find One Piece. Then I'll become the Pirate King," he declared to the whole restaurant. Luffy's eyebrow twitched in annoyance as he heard those words escape his lips. "Him, Pirate King? Huh." He walked up to the center of the room where the commotion was and faced Krieg. "Buddy, I don't care how large your damn fleet is. The person who is going to be Pirate King is me." He pointed an accusing finger at the Don. "What was that, kid? I'll pretend I didn't hear that." "You don't have to. I'm only speaking the truth. This is no joke, kid." "Of course not. I'm going to the Grand Line soon." "That's not funny, kid. It may have been just a lack of information, but my fleet of 5,000 men only lasted for 7 days. What makes you think you can make it?" "Because I'm not a weak-ass bitch like you, and my nakama aren't weak either. Sorry, but I hate your sense of humor. If you insist, shall I kill you off right now?" Krieg's armor lifted up to reveal multiple guns hiding under the metal. Luffy grinned maliciously as he unsheathed his katana and stared right back at him. Blue eyes stared the larger man down as Luffy awaited the assault. "Starting a brawl, eh, Captain?" Luffy turned his head to see Kuro and Zoro standing at the staircase. "It's not really a brawl. Well, not yet at least, until he makes the first move." He turned his head back and prepared for the fight. Krieg stared the young boy down as if sizing him up. However, he lifted up the large sack of food and began heading out of the restaurant. "I'll take care of you all later. Right now I need to feed my men. For those of you who don't wish to die, you'd best be gone when I come back if you know what's good for you. The only things I want are the journal and this ship." Though if you all have a death wish, I'd have to go out of my way, but I'd be more than happy to send you to the bottom of the ocean. Krieg walked out of the restaurant, leaving everyone behind. Hey, this is all your fault. If you hadn't had fed that pirate in the first place, he wouldn't be here right now. One of the chefs yelled as he pointed an accusing finger at Sanji. All of you shut up. Zeph exploded at the chefs. Do any of you have any idea what it's like to be starving to death? What it's like to not have food or water on this vast ocean? Sanji knows that feeling more than anyone here. Confused whispers were exchanged between the cooks. The difference between all of you and Sanji is that Sanji knows that feeling. All the cooks in the restaurant were standing there shocked. To think Sanji of all people had such a hard past. It's my job as a chef to cook for hungry people. Whenever I see that someone is hungry, no matter what their status, it's my duty to feed them. But don't take that the wrong way, Jin. After I fulfill my duty as a chef, I will kill anyone who tries to harm this restaurant, even you. He glared at Jin. Luffy grinned and stood at the two large doors. Finally, time for a decent fight. As Luffy stepped outside, Don Krieg's massive ship split in half and began plummeting into the dark depths below. Luffy grinned and looked out to see a small boat beside the ship. So he's finally shown himself, he said. Big bro. He looked into the water to see Johnny and Yasaku. Nami must have dumped them overboard and already made off with the treasure, he thought. He raised his hand and sent them flying out of the water and onto the deck. Nami, she stole this ship. Johnny screamed as Usopp, Kuro and Zoro came outside. What? The three of them yelled. Luffy stood there calmly and planned his next course of action. All of you, take Johnny and Yasaku's boat and follow Nami. She couldn't have gotten far, he said. It's him. They all turned to see Zeph looking out in the same direction where the boat was floating. Zoro immediately turned his head and saw a figure sitting in the boat. His heart began racing and pumping adrenaline into each and every muscle. Hawkeye's Mihawk, Zoro said through shaky breaths. His entire body was shaking with anticipation and anxiety. We'll deal with that later. We have to follow Nami, Luffy said. Just let it go, Luffy. That woman just spells trouble, Zoro sighed. No, I refuse to have anyone else navigating this ship. Luffy looked Zoro dead in the eye, laying down his authority as captain. After a few short moments, Zoro sighed. Man, what a pain in the ass. All right, Luffy, you win. Let's go, Kuro, Usopp. Zoro walked over to the boat where Johnny and Yasaku were waiting. Aren't you coming, Luffy? No, I have unfinished business here. Watch yourself then. Things here are abnormal. Zoro once again glanced over to the boat out in the water. Yeah, I will. The small little boat came further into view as it slowly made its way towards Don Krieg's ship. Zoro readied his swords, preparing for the fight that he'd dedicated his entire life to. He jumped onto the debris, making his way over to the group of pirates where Mihawk was. He saw a pirate shoot a gun at Mihawk, the latter of which had gracefully deflected the bullet with his sword. I've never seen such graceful skill, Zoro said as he walked up to the edge. Mihawk eyed Zoro. A sword with power alone is not powerful. Then I take it that this ship was also cut into pieces by that sword. He asked. Yes, it's clear then, you're the strongest. I've been sailing the sea to find you. Zoro took the bandana off of his arm and wrapped it around his head. What's your mission? Mihawk asked. To be the best. Mihawk grinned at Zoro. Fool. Zoro unsheathed his katanas and pointed them towards Mihawk. You've clearly got time to spare. Why don't we duel? Duel him? Don't make me laugh. Mihawk jumped off his boat and onto the deck of the destroyed ship. If you really were a fine swordsman, you'd know the gap between us. Challenging me, are you that brave, or just reckless? This is for my own ambition. Zoro put Watto into his mouth, and to fulfill a promise to a fallen friend. Very well then. Mihawk took off his necklace and removed the cross, which was revealed to be a small blade. Are you serious? Zoro asked. I'm unlike those fools who use all of their strength to hunt for rabbits. This is the weakest of seas, East Blue. Unfortunately, I'm carrying nothing smaller than this blade. But it will do. Whatever, just don't regret it when you die. Zoro charged at Mihawk. Onigiri. He slashed at him, but all three of his blades were stopped mid-strike by Mihawk's tiny dagger. There's no way that you're this far above me. Zoro charged at him again with more slashes. Mihawk kept on dodging and blocking them with ease. Zoro lunged forward at him and Mihawk sidestepped, causing Zoro to lose his footing. Mihawk struck him in the back of the head, disorienting him. Flashbacks of Zoro's life went by. His promise, his dream, all came rushing back to him, strengthening his resolve. Before he completely fell, Zoro regained his balance and faced Mihawk, breathing heavily. Why do you seek the ultimate power despite being so weak? Johnny and Yasaku got angry when he called Zoro weak and were about to leap into the fight, but Luffy held them down. He kept on staring at the duel with a calm demeanor as he held them both down. I can't afford to lose. Zoro stood straight. Tiger, hunting prey. Zoro lunged forward but was soon met with a dagger to his chest. Blood began seeping the wound immediately. Do you wish to have this go through your heart? Why do you not step back? Mihawk asked. I don't know. I'm not sure myself. But if I take a step back now, all those important oaths, promises, and many other deals until now would all have gone to waste and I wouldn't be able to stand before you ever again. Yes, that's called losing. Zoro chuckled. That's why I can't step back, even if it means death. I'd prefer death. With strong will, preferring death over defeat, Mihawk thought as he backed away and sheathed his dagger. Boy, what's your name? Zoro formed the hilts of his swords into a triangle. Roronoa Zoro. It's been a while since I've seen such strong conviction. Roronoa Zoro. As a gesture to another swordsman, I will wield the black blade, the most powerful sword in the world, to end your life. He took the blade off of his back. I appreciate the gesture. Zoro began twirling his blades. 3-sword style secret technique. 1,000 worlds. Mihawk and Zoro both lunged forward. There was a brief pause and then both of the katanas in Zoro's hands shattered as blood began seeping out of newly formed wounds on his chest. I guess I lost. So this is what it means to hold the title of the world's greatest swordsman. Zoro thought as he sheathed Wado and turned around, leaving his front side wide open for Mihawk. What now? Wounds on a swordsman's back are the greatest shame. He grinned. Magnificent. Mihawk slashed him across the chest, leaving a deep wound that immediately began gushing out blood. He cried out and fell into the water. Luffy's eyes began glowing blue after seeing his friend gravely wounded. Johnny and Yasaku both jumped into the water to save their friend. Luffy unsheathed his katana and shot off the railing, creating a sonic boom. Mihawk barely had enough time to dodge before he was met face to face with Luffy, eyes glowing blue and giving off strong waves of haki. You're the young swordsman's comrade. Thank you for not interfering until now. Luffy still continued to eye him, katana in hand, ready to go all out. Rest assured, your friend isn't going to die. Luffy calmed down and his eyes went back to their normal blue color, the waves of haki slowly dissipating. However, he still didn't let his guard down, still waiting for an attack. When he saw Johnny and Yasaku emerging from the water, his anger turned into relief. Johnny and Yasaku managed to get Zoro back onto the boat, where Usopp and Kuro immediately began applying pressure to his wounds while Johnny and Yasaku got bandages. It's still too early for you to die. My name is Dracula Mihawk. Find your true self, your true world, and become stronger. No matter how long it takes, I will await you in my strongest form. Surpass this sword. Surpass me. Roronoa Zoro. Mihawk turned to Luffy. Kid, what's your mission? He asked. Pirate King. Luffy replied. Mihawk grinned. That's a difficult path, even tougher than surpassing me. Like I care about that. I've already decided I'm going to be Pirate King. Zoro raised his sword in the boat. Luffy, can you hear me? He said through shaky breaths. Luffy smiled. Loud and clear, buddy. Sorry for worrying you. If I don't become the greatest swordsman in the world, you'd be in a dilemma now, right? I'll never lose again. Until I defeat him and become the greatest swordsman in the world. I'll never lose, Zoro said as tears streaked down his face. Any problems with that, Pirate King? None at all. Mihawk turned to Luffy and said, good team. I hope we meet again. He turned around and began walking away. Hold on, Hawkeye. Didn't you come for my head? The King of East Blue. Don Krieg jumped onto the platform. I did, but I've had my fair share of fun. You may have had fun, but I'm not finished my bit. He grinned as his armor opened up, revealing guns hidden beneath. Die before you go. He fired away. Fool. Mihawk turned around and unsheathed his blade. There was a huge explosion and Mihawk went back to his boat where he set off and went back to sleep. Luffy took this opportunity to launch himself back over to the Baratie. He landed on the railing and turned towards the boat where Usopp, Zoro, and Kuro were. Oi Usopp, Kuro, get going. Right, we'll get Nami back. You just make sure that Cook becomes one of us. Then we'll head out to the Grand Line. Usopp yelled back as they began sailing away. Luffy turned to Zeph. Yo, old man, if I get rid of these guys, will we call it even? Do as you wish. Luffy grinned. It was time for a fight. Men, as long as we have that ship, we'll be able to sail the Grand Line with ease. It'll be better than sailing in disguise as Marines. But Don, even if we can get to the Grand Line, what would happen if we meet someone like Hawkeye's again? Don Krieg gritted his teeth in anger. He shot the pirate that said that and he went flying into the water. What are you all still afraid of? Do you think a normal person could split a ship in half like that? It was obviously a devil fruit. Zeph obviously used some kind of strategy to have stayed there for a year with all those monsters. A strategy that he must have written down in his journal. Do you understand now, men? Let's get that ship. They all gave a battle cry. Sounds like they're all riled up. Luffy grinned. Go into the control room and bring up the fins. We can't have the inside of the restaurant turning into a battleground, Sanji said to one of the chefs. The chef nodded and hurried inside. The pirates began charging, jumping across the floating debris. Here they come. Finally, I was getting bored. Luffy grinned and jumped off the railing, down towards the sea. Oi, wait, what are you doing? You'll be a sitting duck in the water, Sanji yelled at Luffy. However, when he went over the railing to check up on him, he was surprised to see Luffy standing on the water. How? Devil fruit. Shishishi, Luffy laughed. Sanji decided he'd get an explanation later after all this blew over. Luffy unsheathed his katana. He swung and slashed the water below him, creating a wave that grew in size and speed as it traveled towards the oncoming pirates. What the hell? Where'd this come from? The pirates yelled as they were all blown away and knocked back onto the debris, some of them falling unconscious. You're the asshole that decided to attack this place even after they fed you when you were about to die. I'm gonna kick your ass. Luffy walked towards Don Krieg. Listen, kid, I don't know what kind of devil fruit that is, but even with that power, I know you won't be able to beat me. We'll see about that. Luffy grinned. There was a loud rumble as the water beneath the Baratie began rippling, and then two large wooden decks emerged onto the surface, creating a deck for everyone to stand on. The pirates quickly took this opportunity to rush onto the deck and begin an assault. The cooks, who were used to fighting pirates, tried to resist, but they ended up getting beaten and pushed back. Oi, what's with you guys? You're used to fighting pirates. How'd you lose so easily? Patty yelled at them. Don't compare us to those other lowly pirates. We're Don Krieg pirates, the crew of the King of East Blue. I don't give a shit who you are. You're not coming anywhere near this restaurant. Patty yelled as all the chefs gathered their weapons and once again charged at invaders. There was a large burst of water as a man jumped onto the deck, clad in iron plates. Who's this clown? Sanji asked. It is I, Pearl, the Iron Wall of the Krieg pirates. I've won all my battles without spilling even a single drop of blood. I'm invincible. You won't be invincible after I knock your ass out with these feet, Sanji said. Luffy was looking back towards the Baratie. Man, what a weirdo. If you have time to look elsewhere, then you should be able to dodge this. Don Krieg swung a mace at Luffy. However, Luffy had already foresaw this coming and the mace phased right through him. What? How did that not hit you? Don Krieg had a vein popping out of his forehead. I'm a water man. Your weak attacks won't even touch me. Meanwhile, the cooks were caught off guard as Zeph fell to the ground. Behind him was Jin pointing the barrel of a gun at his head. Sanji, please leave this ship. I don't want to have to kill you, he said. Sanji gritted his teeth. There's no way in hell that I'm leaving. Pearl suddenly jumped up behind Sanji and smashed his shield against his head, discombobulating him. He continued punching Sanji while he was still stunned and finally managed to knock him down. I'm the one who stole everything from that old man, so that I could live. His power, his dreams. This restaurant is the old man's treasure. If I don't place my life on the line as well, I won't be able to repay that shitty old man. Luffy's anger rose as he heard everything. There was nothing he hated more than people running over and ruining the dreams of others. He shot himself back onto the deck of the Baratie. Stop it. Don't interfere, Sanji yelled at him. Luffy chose not to listen. He unsheathed his katana and coated it with a thin coat of water. Mizu Mizu no Kato. He swiped his katana and destroyed the deck of the Baratie. Everyone was shocked and stood there with their mouths agape. Waiter boy, what the hell are you trying to do? Sanji got up and yelled at Luffy. Sink the ship. What the hell? Are you mental? But if I sink the ship, they won't get what they want. Do you have any idea the debt I owe to this place? Sanji grabbed Luffy. So you're gonna die for it? Are you retarded? Dying won't pay him back. Luffy grabbed Sanji's suit jacket. He sacrificed his life to save you and you're just gonna go and disrespect that by dying anyways. Only someone weak would act like that. He lifted him up. Then what the hell do I do? Sanji yelled back. Now, don't bicker. Fighting amongst yourselves at a time like this is laughable. Though you can't do anything as of right now since we have a hostage in our hands. How unfortunate for you that you have to face us Don Krieg pirates. Pearl began laughing. Shut up. Luffy shot a supersonic water blast at him, breaking his armor and sending him flying back into the water. Everyone was taken aback, unable to believe what they witnessed. I'm tired of playing around. It's time to get serious. Luffy's eyes began glowing a bright blue and he sent waves of haki in every direction. He began walking across the water while all the Don Krieg pirates went unconscious. What is this power? Jin asked as he was barely able to remain conscious. Sanji wasn't being affected by the haki because Luffy wasn't directing it towards him. But he could sense, intuitively, the power coming off of Luffy. Don Krieg was barely staying conscious as Luffy approached Don Krieg, agonizingly slowly. The aura coming off of Luffy was so strong he could almost see it. Do you know why you're still conscious? He stood over the armored pirate. Because I want you to witness all your dreams and ambitions being ruined, just like you've done to others. Luffy swiped his katana down and destroyed what little remains there were of the galley. You're a monster, Krieg said through shaky breaths. Luffy sheathed his katana and lifted Don Krieg up by his neck. No, I'm a pirate. Luffy grinned and pulled his leg back. Icorius Populatus. He sent a supersonic kick to his side, breaking his ribs and sending him flying off for miles. Luffy launched himself back onto the Baratie and stood in front of Jin, eyes still glowing. Jin felt like an ant in his dominating presence. I hope you realize you're no match for me. Jin lowered his head. Yes, I know. Do what you will. Hee, then join my crew. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.